The woman kneeling in the snow in front of me had about 4 minutes left to live, and she was still trying to lie to me. I have to respect that a little. Most people, once the black blood starts coming up, drop the act and go straight to bargaining. Not this one. Chen Li had swallowed a pill that turned her into something 2 ranks stronger than she had any right to be. She had lost. And she was still sitting there, in a red-lit ruin of her own face, doing the things servants of very old families are trained to do from the age of 6. Protect the young master. Say the shape of the truth, never the truth. Your Fenris family's elder great, I said. How are you sure that person is her son? Her eyes flickered. That flicker is the tell. That flicker is a person deciding which 9/10 to give you. When Elder Great eloped, she was 3 months pregnant. We can estimate from her age and appearance that the other person looked a lot like Elder Great when she was young. Sure, family resemblance. Very touching. Except, I had spent that same afternoon watching what these people did to my adoptive mother with nothing but their minds. And you do not tie a woman to a bed and take her apart for 2 days because you want to help someone meet his relatives. I put my head down and laughed at the snow. Then I stood up. Since you don't want your young master to live, I said, then I'll take advantage of his injury and kill him now. Wait, didn't you say you wouldn't harm the young master as long as I told you? You treacherous scoundrel, aren't you afraid of bringing shame upon the family? Bringing shame upon the family. I let that sit in the air between us for a second, because it was genuinely the funniest thing anyone had said to me all week. Yes, I did promise that, I said. As long as you didn't lie to me. Have you told the truth in a single word? She stared. She had, in fact, not. She had been lying the entire time, and she had assumed a 19-year-old in a mask would not be able to count. Then she gave it to me. Not because I broke her, because she worked out that the young master died if she didn't. Here's the thing. Our Fenris family has been searching for this young master for the past 20 years, but we haven't found him yet. Recently, there was talk in Shaw City that a member of the hidden families was missing. Our young master was training here. The family head sent us to help him find that person. Since the child was born to a woman who had already left home, I said, why go to such lengths? That was the question. That was the only question. Nobody spends 20 years and 4 elite killers on a bastard nephew nobody has ever met. She tried to route around it. You could watch her doing it, the way you can watch a bad driver deciding which curb to hit, because this person is very likely carrying the patriarchal token of my Fenris family. And that was the moment the floor went out from under me, because I was not carrying a token. I have never in my life owned a token. Everything my father left me when he died fit in one box, and what was in that box was money, gold bars, and one ugly chipped basin that cut my mouth when I ate out of it. That basin is the reason I'm still breathing. That basin is the reason I am not a frozen shape under 2 meters of snow in San Yuan City like the person I used to be. That basin has been fused to my soul since the 10th upgrade and cannot be taken, given away, or removed before I die. My pupils must have moved because she caught it. Of course she caught it. 20 years of watching faces. What's on your mind? It's nothing, I said, in the flattest voice I own. Please continue. She continued. She told me how her young master had found a fake Wang Min wandering around Shaw City wearing my name like a rented suit. How he'd had the fake followed, how that led them to my stepmother, and to the man she married after she helped murder my father, and how they had taken both of them apart until they produced a portrait of my actual face, which they now have, which is a fun fact to carry around. Then she coughed up a mouthful of black blood with clots in it, and the red light in her eyes went dim, and she said, I have answered your question. You can keep your promise now. I didn't say I'd only ask you one question, I said. Next question. What's the highest level of gene lock activation in your Fenris family? She was confused by that, which was the first real crack. Everyone in the hidden families knows what everyone else in the hidden families can do. Asking is like asking a man what country he lives in. She decided I was testing her honesty and answered. 5th rank? The strongest patriarch in our family is at the 5th rank. 5th. I was 3rd. I had been 3rd for about 11 days. 3 days earlier, I had been extremely proud of that. There are 4 of these families, and if the head of each one is the strongest thing in it, then there are at least 4 people on this frozen planet standing 2 full floors above me. And that is the optimistic version, because some of those families probably have 2. Then I did the arithmetic that keeps me warm at night. Those men spent decades getting there, in a world where the air had almost no source material left in it. I had done 3rd rank in about 6 months, in a world where the stuff is falling out of the sky like pollen, and I have a wolf that has already eaten his way through half the food chain, and I have a basin that copies things. Give me time. 5th is a waiting problem, not a talent problem. Are there higher levels after the 5th rank? That was the question that finished her. Not the mental attack, not the pill, the question. She looked up at me with blood coming out of her nose and her ears and her eyes all at once and said the thing she should have said an hour ago. You, you're not from the hidden families? I shrugged. Ah, we've been exposed. I wasn't even disappointed. Getting that much out of a professional before she bled out was already a good day. Her lips moved and nothing came, and then she died with her eyes wide open, glaring at me like a ghost taking down my license plate, because she had just realized that the oath she swore on her family's name had been sworn to a nobody in a mask from the west suburb. I stood there a while after, not out of respect, because I wanted to make sure there wasn't a second set of lungs anywhere inside my range. Then I put a 4-ton saber-toothed tiger corpse into my space, checked that she was actually frozen and actually finished, and went through her pockets. Do not misunderstand. I was not robbing her, I was shopping. She had given her young master a capsule earlier, and I wanted to know what was in it. I found two. One white, one red. Huh, I said. It's red? That is the exact moment my dog started screaming. Not screaming, barking. But the Shadowbane is a 3-meter tall wolf with one blue eye and one red one who has personally ended things that could bite a car in half. And when that animal makes a noise with fear in it, your whole body listens before your brain catches up. I turned around. Is there something wrong with this capsule? Woof. Then he lowered his head and wrote in the snow with one claw, which is a thing he does now, which is a sentence I have made peace with. Fenris wrote that he had watched the woman eat the red one. I looked at the capsule. I looked at what was left of her face, at the blood that had come out of every hole in her head at once. So that's why she was like this, I said. Because of this? So, a berserk pill takes a second tier and gives them third tier power with the pain switch flipped off, and about 10 minutes later, you die from every artery in your skull at the same time. Very generous of the hidden families to hand these out to the help. If the Shadowbane hadn't stopped me, I'd have filed it away as a bonus and eventually eaten it to see what happened. Instead, I put it in the space next to her body and made a note. This is what you take when you have already decided to lose. I patted his enormous head. You did a great job today. When we get back, you can try the tiger claws. His eyes lit up like a slot machine and he licked my entire face. Stop licking, I said, shoving 80 kilos of skull away from me, or I'll put chili pepper on your face next time. Fenris wrote in the snow again. 3 words. Fenris had licked the chili. I wanted on record that I gave him no comeback, because there isn't one. I sent him into the space because he was hurt, and because there was a new kitten in there he had decided he was in charge of, and I let the Miststalker out instead to be my ride home. This was a mistake. The Miststalker is a 3rd-tier speed build, and it had never, not once, been picked. The Shadowbane gets picked, the Shadowbane gets the barbecue and the head pats and the shotgun seat. So the second I sat down on this animal, it discovered ambition. It hit 180 kilometers an hour. I would like to describe the ride, but my memory of it is mostly white and mostly sideways. I had just spent most of my mental strength putting a hole in a 4th-tier tiger's brain. I was running on fumes. I was planning to have a nice little nap on the way home, and instead, I spent 20 minutes being fired through a frozen city like a sock in a dryer, while a leopard tried to prove something. We arrived at the mountaintop. I got off. I leaned against the door of my safe house and breathed carefully for a while. The leopard came and pushed its head under my hand, wanting to be told it had done well. I put it back in the space without a word. At that moment, I made a promise to myself that I have kept ever since. I am never riding the Miststalker again. Inside, I turned on the generator, turned on the heat, dropped my gear, took a cold shower because I was still overheated from the fight, dried my hair badly, fell into a beanbag chair, and had a look at the day's haul. The inside of my space looked like the loading dock of a slaughterhouse the size of a football field. 300 source beasts, give or take. 20-odd on the road in the morning, 60 at the Shanghai apartments, and then the entire wave the army had been dying to hold at the port, which the Shadowbane and I had gone through from behind, while everyone else was busy being heroic out front. 28 of them, 3rd tier, 53 2nd tier, and 1 4th tier saber-toothed tiger, the beast king of the tide, the thing that had come out of the mountains and turned a defended shelter into a story people tell. That is a haul most hunting teams do not manage in a year. I closed my eyes for 1 second to enjoy it and woke up in the dark with my stomach making noises like a drain. Dinner, right? Here is what feeding my household looks like now. 79 wolves, 1 panda, 1 leopard with a personality problem, 1 long-armed ape who only eats plants, 1 kitten the size of a shoe, and 1 wolf the size of a compact car who is above all of them and knows it. I threw 10 whole 1st-tier source beasts into the wolf pack to start with, on the understanding that if it wasn't enough, I'd throw more. I grilled 3rd-tier meat for the leopard and the panda, which is genuinely one of the great foods of this world. Crisp outside, tender inside, no seasoning needed, and even the ape, who has been a vegetarian on principle since the day I met him, ate several pieces the size of my head and pretended he hadn't. The kitten got a bowl of milk and a slab of raw meat the size of a wash basin, which she circled, sniffed, and refused to touch, on the grounds that she had never seen meat before in her life. I didn't push. Every source beast wants anything with source power in it the way you want air. 20 minutes later, she was gnawing on it with her whole face and getting visibly more enthusiastic per bite. Then I let the Shadowbane out to eat indoors, which required me to move most of my living room into the space first, because he has stopped fitting. I cut leg meat off the tiger, roasted it, brushed it with honey. For myself, I did tiger slices stir-fried with green peppers, glass noodles, and cabbage, and a pot of rice. I ate the whole pot of rice. Fenris ate 3 enormous pieces of roast meat and then an entire hind leg of a 4th-tier saber-toothed tiger, and then told me he was full while looking at me in a way that made it clear he was not. And then, sitting there, uncomfortably full, I felt something warm move through my body. I knew that feeling. That is source power growing, which was impossible, because my source power had been sitting at exactly 3,000 for days. 3,000 is the ceiling of the 3rd tier. You cannot put more water in a full bucket. I opened the basins panel, purely to prove to myself I was imagining it. Wong Min, 20 years old, male, Gene Locke, 3rd order. Source power in the body, 3,015 units. Mental strength, 217. 3,015. I sat up so fast I nearly took the beanbag with me. 4th tier meat breaks the cap. 4th tier meat goes past the wall that every human being who has ever hit 3rd order runs into, and just walks through it like the wall is a suggestion. And my mental strength had gone up by 1. Now, source power. I don't care about that much. Source power comes. You eat, you absorb, you hunt, it comes. Mental strength is the thing that has been sitting on my chest for weeks. Mental strength is the wall. You cannot open the 4th gene lock with a full tank and an empty head, and the only way anyone has ever built mental strength is by grinding your own mind against a rock every night until you feel sick, and I was 83 points short, which was 11 more days of that. So I did science. I cut 3 pounds of tiger, boiled it in plain water with nothing on it, and ate a pound while staring at the panel like a man watching a stock ticker. 12 minutes, 3,020. I ate the other 2 pounds, 10 points of source power, and a point of mental strength. 1 pound of that tiger is 5 points of source power. 3 pounds is 1 point of mental strength. I went to the storage room, dragged everything I had left of that animal onto an industrial scale, and stood there doing arithmetic with my heart going like a hammer. Skinned, 1 leg gone, a bit already eaten. 536 gin. 268 kilos. 2,680 points of source power. 178 points of mental strength. 11 days had just become 6. I want you to understand what that means. That means the thing that hunted a shelter to death and had an entire army writing wills is, to me, a nutritional supplement. 268 kilos of it. I sat down on the floor of my storage room next to a scale and made a solemn personal vow that no 4th tier source beast would ever again walk away from me alive. I don't know yet if it's all 4th tiers or just this breed. I intend to find out the fun way. That night I didn't sleep. I'd napped, I'd eaten well, and I had a number to chase. Overdraw the mind, rest 3 hours, overdraw again. 3 points overnight from the training. 6 pounds of tiger as a midnight snack for 2 more. 5 points in a night, and I woke up feeling better than I had in a month, which I'm fairly sure is also the tiger. 77 to go. Breakfast was tiger. 2 more points before I'd even fed anyone else. I was in a genuinely excellent mood, and I dropped my consciousness into the space to make everyone else's breakfast. And that is when I noticed that something was very wrong. My space is about the size of a football field, and my animals have been redecorating. There are wooden houses in there, hills, a mud pit, mud caves, a slide of sorts. It is a daycare with teeth. Normally, when I look in, 79 wolves and a panda and an ape are running around it, burning off the energy of things that were built to cross mountains. Nobody was running. Every animal in my space was crushed together behind one small hill, shaking, staring at the same spot. Not because the hill would protect them, because being in a pile felt better than not being in a pile. I followed where they were looking, and my chest went cold. Shadowbane. Fenris was lying in his doghouse. His fur was standing straight up off his body. Red light was coming and going in his eyes. Actual light. Enough of it that the blue eye had gone purple. His mouth was open, and his breathing filled the entire space. A huge dragging sound, and with every breath, his bones cracked and popped, and his body got bigger. The doghouse had already stopped being the right shape. Is this an advancement? I'd seen him advance before. Last time he took a nap and woke up a category larger. This was not that. This was an animal in pain in a way I couldn't reach. His teeth were getting longer. I could see them changing from where I stood. Long enough that I stopped having any doubt he could take an elephant's leg off in one bite. Long enough that his face was stretching forward and he was, in front of me, ceasing to look like a dog and starting to look like a wolf. Then the doghouse gave up and came apart with a bang, planks everywhere, and it was over. Fenris stood up, shook the sawdust off, and I finally got a proper look. The fur was back down, and thicker than it had been. The eyes were the right colors again, one blue and one red, and they had gone sharp in a way I hadn't seen before, and he had been 2 meters at the shoulder, standing on 4 legs. Fenris was now most of the way to 3. His paws were bigger than wash basins, and his front legs looked like they could hold a door shut. Then he threw his head back and howled, and every source beast in my space, all of them, including the panda who treats him as a peer and a wrestling partner, walked out from behind that hill in a line and put their heads down. Beast King. That's what I was looking at. In my own pocket dimension, a Beast King. Shadowbane, I said. The aura dropped off him instantly, like a man taking off a coat, and he became a sycophantic idiot wagging his tail so hard his whole back end moved. Woof! Owner? I let out a breath I had been holding for about 90 seconds. Whatever the 4th tier had done to him, it hadn't touched the part I actually needed. I went outside and called him out onto the snow, and he came around the corner of the safe house at speed, delighted, ready to play, and I had about a quarter of a second to remember that he was now a third again heavier before he put me flat on my back in the snow and washed my face. Stop it! Stop! Stop! I got him off eventually, got a towel out of the space, and wiped the drool off before it froze to my chin. Stop licking, or I'll put chili pepper on your face next time. Fenris wrote it again. Same 3 words. Fenris would lick the chili peppers. I felt his leg. The bone under it was twice as thick as it had been. The dog's legs are quite sturdy, I said, looking up. Which I now have to do, at my own dog, at 1.85 meters. Fenris looked down at his own legs and got visibly smug. It won't be easy to interrupt them anymore. Woof? I tried riding him, which was better than before because the fur was deeper, and then went downstairs and made him a level 3 wild boar for breakfast, because he does not get any more tiger. The tiger was for getting him to 4th tier. Fenris is at 4th tier. That tiger is my mental strength now, thank you. Down in the space there were 2 more surprises, both good. 2 of the 1st tier wolves had gone up to 2nd overnight without me noticing because I'd been distracted by the horror movie in the doghouse. And the kitten, after 1 meal of 3rd tier meat, had gone from 1st tier to 2nd in a single jump and was now approximately the size the Shadowbane used to be before the world ended. I picked her up. She didn't struggle. She has never struggled. She just sat in my arms and looked at me with these gold eyes that had exactly the same glint in them that the Shadowbanes have, and I thought, for the 2nd time, that I might be holding a source beast with a mental strength talent. I put the tablet on the coffee table and put on the primary school lessons that the Shadowbane has already watched 2 or 3 times. She jumped onto the sofa and locked onto the teacher like it was a bird feeder. I did not stay home to train that day. There is a very specific window open right now. The tide broke, the Beast King is dead, and every source beast left in Shaw City is a leaderless animal wandering around a city full of people who want to kill it. If I don't take them now, they go back into the mountains. And after a tide, the mountains are empty for months. Also, and this is the part nobody says out loud, copying solves food. Copying does not solve growth. A copy has no source power in it. If I want my legion to keep climbing, they have to eat things that were actually alive. So, I got on the dog and we went down the mountain. The city was busy. That was new. The shelter had emptied itself out into Shaw City. Soldiers everywhere, evolutionaries with them, going street by street, hunting single-source beasts, and finding survivors while they were at it. It turns out the leadership and I had the same idea on the same morning, which is either flattering or worrying. I passed a 10-man squad finishing off a 1st-tier monkey. Several gunshots, and it went down in the snow. The army has armor-piercing rounds now, and against a 1st tier that means the soldiers stay behind cover and shoot. And the evolutionaries only step in when things get exciting. Everybody was happy. Everybody was getting contribution points. Then one of them saw me. Shu Guang, I stopped. I would like to say I stopped because of tactical considerations. I stopped because someone had just shouted Shu Guang across a frozen street, and my brain refused to accept that it was aimed at me. Fenris came jogging over, waving like we were at a school reunion. Lin Hao. I'd traded 4 sentences with him at the logistics warehouse the day before yesterday. Fenris had spotted the Shadowbane from a very long way off, because the Shadowbane is now considerably larger and has mismatched eyes, and there is exactly one animal like that in this province. Good morning, Shu Guang. Shu Guang, I said. My mouth was doing something under the mask that I did not authorize. And then he explained it to me, at length, with obvious personal pride, because Lin Hao is a man who has never in his life had a piece of gossip this good. So, here is what happened. After I lured the saber-toothed tiger away from the wall, Zhao Lei, the officer, the chief's right hand, the man I dragged out of that mess, did not go home. Fenris stood around at the army snowmobiles refusing to leave, and when his squad asked why, he told them. Fenris told them I'd drawn a 4th-tier Beast King off him at the last second, and disappeared into the city with it. Fenris very carefully did not mention that a hidden family's killer had also been chasing me at the time, because Zhao Lei is not stupid and did not want to hand anyone a reason to look at me twice. So, the version the army got was the masked hunter saw a soldier about to die and pulled the monster onto himself. Then somebody else remembered that I'd also handed back a woman named Sun Yan to her unit alive, and had incidentally been the reason their mission against the tide worked at all. In one day and one night, every soldier in the official shelter knew the name Lin Yong, Shu Guang. The chief himself had apparently floated the idea of making me a specially invited officer, which is the kind of thing that happens to a person who has, in the same week, robbed a bank of 120 kilos of gold, executed the men who murdered his father, and personally eaten most of a beast king. By the way, said Lin Hao, remembering, our leader said if I saw you on the road, you can come to the east suburb shelter and claim your reward any time. Now that got my attention. Okay, I said. I understand. I told the dog to go around them, and we left. And about 10 meters down the road, I heard the entire conversation behind me, because I have very good hearing, and they have very bad volume control. Brother Guo, who was that? Yes, it's the one I mentioned yesterday. Shu Guang, the one who saved Commander Zhao Lei and Sun Yan's men. It really is him. That giant wolf must be his battle pet. Do you see the axe on his back? It looks heavier than me. How dare you talk to him? That wolf could swallow a person whole. That's right, deeply satisfied. Don't you know who I am? I spoke with Shu Guang yesterday. I immediately thought he was an exceptional person. Fenris is very easy to talk to. Don't be scared by the battle pet. That wolf is extremely intelligent. It won't attack unless provoked. And then, after a pause, in a much smaller and much more troubled voice. But I don't know if I'm remembering it wrong. I feel like that wolf is much bigger than it was yesterday. Good instincts, Lin Hao. Terrible timing. I hunted my way east and it kept happening. Squads would see me and stop and salute. A pair of soldiers found the same source beast I was walking toward, looked at me, saluted, and left, and gave me the animal. There is a very specific thing that happens inside your chest the first time an armed man salutes you and means it. I am not going to pretend it isn't nice. It's nice. I touched my nose about it. Behind one of those squads, 6 survivors were being walked in toward the shelter, staring at me the way you stare at weather. Who is that person? The monster he's riding is terrifying. Shh, don't talk nonsense. That's his battle pet, a tamed high-level beast. Battle pet? What's a battle pet? Can those man-eating things really be tamed? One of them, a woman named Zhou Jing, did not ask any questions at all. She just got a very thoughtful look on her face and filed the words away somewhere. Her son had opinions. I'm an evolutionary now, said Gao Feng loudly. I'll be just as powerful as him in the future. Gao Feng is 19 or 20. Failed his university entrance. Spent the last 2 years of the old world at home, playing games and reading web novels while his parents worked, and has just, in the middle of an apocalypse, unlocked the first order gene lock and discovered that he is special. The soldiers made faces at each other. They knew what I was. They knew that going from first to second is hard, and that second to third breaks most people. But nobody said anything, because young people need to go through some things. And the other survivors, who did not know that evolutionaries came in sizes, praised him to the ceiling, because in 3 days they were going to be living in that boy's shelter, and it costs nothing to be nice to a soldier's future officer. Xiao Feng is really amazing. Fenris will be an officer someday. I really envy you having such a successful son. I wish my son were still alive. Xiao Feng, if you don't mind, how about I acknowledge you as my older brother? Fenris beamed, and then, quietly to himself, watching me and my dog disappear down the street. Don't think I don't know you all look down on me. I, Gao Feng, will definitely become even more powerful. Just you wait. Remember him. Fenris is going to matter later, though not in the way he thinks. We swept east all morning, 70-something more. Source beasts, 13 second tier, 2 third tier. Kill it. Drag it somewhere with no witnesses. Put it in the space. Repeat. The Shadowbane's nose does most of the work, and I do most of the paperwork. Eventually we got to the villa district where I'd parked a child. There was a second-tier wolf sitting at the basement entrance exactly where I'd left it 3 days ago. I had been slightly worried about that. I had told the Shadowbane to memorize its scent in case it decided freedom sounded better than the job. Turns out I'd wasted the worry. This one was from the original pack, it likes me. And when it saw me, it did the full body wriggle and shoved its head into my ribs like a Labrador with a personality disorder. I gave it a piece of third-tier meat, told it that it was extremely good, put it away, and knocked on the hidden door panel. 5 knocks. Our code. The panel lifted about 2 centimeters, a pair of eyes. Then the whole thing came up. Dage, you're back! Come out, I'm taking you to the official shelter. Okay, I'll pack my things right away. Fenris came back up 30 seconds later with a backpack, and the first thing he did was hand me back my own supplies. Bread, water, a candle, matches. I'd left him enough food and water for several days in a pitch-black basement. Fenris had eaten 2 pieces of bread and drunk half a bottle of water in 3 days, and he had not lit the candle once. Xiao Yu is 11 or 12. Fenris has been alive in the extreme cold long enough to know exactly what a candle is worth, and he did not believe, not for 1 second, that anything I gave him was actually his to use. Also, he was scared of the dark, and he sat in it anyway to save wax. I looked at the bread in his hands for a moment longer than I meant to. "I won't take back what I've given away," I said. "Here, we're leaving." I walked out before he could say anything else, which is a technique. Outside, he found me sitting on a wolf the size of a delivery van, with a leopard waiting in the snow next to it. His eyes had gone red. I pretended not to see that either. "You ride it," I said, pointing at the leopard. "Hold on tight once you're on. It runs very fast." Fenris nodded with his entire body and climbed on very carefully. "Hold on, let's go." The leopard left. I want to be clear that I did not warn him properly, and that this was on purpose. I had, less than a day earlier, been personally humiliated by that animal, and I am a small man in some ways. His scream faded east over about 4 seconds. We caught up easily, because after 4th tier, the Shadowbane is faster than a speed-build leopard, which the leopard has not yet accepted. A few minutes later, we were outside the official shelter. The leopard stopped. Xiao Yu came off it sideways, went down on his knees in the snow, got up on shaking legs, and threw up. Fortunately not on the leopard, or we would have lost him. The leopard removed itself at speed, went and stood next to the Shadowbane, looked back at the boy, and communicated something. I could read it off its whole body. "Bro, look at that human. Fenris is disgusting." The Shadowbane swatted it, once hard enough to move it 2 meters, which I understood to mean, "That's my brother's guest." The shelter's doors were shut that day. They saw us coming from the wall anyway, and there was a small commotion up there, and someone shouted something I have still not gotten used to. "Quickly report to the leader. Shu Guang is here." Inside the office block, a soldier apparently ran up and started to say Wang Ying, got most of the way into the word for hero, corrected himself mid-syllable, and settled on Lin Yong is here. Zhao Lei was in the room and left it like a piece of weather. The gate opened and he came out at a run. Fenris looked me up and down twice, all the way down, and then let out a breath like a man putting down furniture. "Thank goodness you're all right." Fenris genuinely thought I had died for him. Fenris waited by the snowmobiles. He'd gone back with his squad, and he had been carrying it around ever since. I let him have it. It cost me nothing, and it was more or less true. "Yeah, it's nothing," I said. I hadn't run far when the woman got caught by the tiger. I took the opportunity to get out with my battle pet. Fenris nodded, understanding, and did not push. Then he leaned in with the expression of a man about to give you the best news of your week. "Brother number 2, you're a celebrity in our shelter now." "I know," I said. "I found out on the way here." They stop and salute. Who else gets that? Generals and the men at the very top of a shelter. Then the main gate opened properly, and Li Chang came out to meet me, and I finally got to stand in front of the man who runs the largest surviving concentration of human beings in Qiming country. First thing you notice is the size. I was 178 before the world froze, and 3 activations of the gene lock have taken me to 185, and I still had to tilt my head back. Second thing you notice is that one of his eyes is gone, not missing, clouded, dead white, and it puts something in his face that no amount of good behavior ever takes out again. "Comrade Lin Yong, I've long admired you." Fenris put his hand out. No squeeze, no test, no speech. "Comrade 6 is here to collect his reward. Come on, since you're here, come in and sit." "My battle pet has to come in with me," I said. Silence. Everyone looked at everyone. Bringing the Shadowbane inside the shelter was, to them, exactly like bringing a wolf into a sheep pen and asking the sheep to be adult about it. And that was before you counted the leopard. They all looked at Li Aichong. Fenris put his head down for a second. Then he came back up smiling. "Comrade 6 has quite the majestic battle pet. All my underlings are drooling over it. I wonder if I could have the honor of petting it." I blinked. Fenris wanted to know whether it was actually controlled, or whether I was just the person it hadn't eaten yet. Fair. I looked at the Shadowbane. Fenris looked back. I nodded. "Can?" And Li Chang walked toward a 3-meter wolf. Alone. Unarmed. Behind him, his officers came apart at the seams. "Leader! Leader!" Fenris waved them off without turning around. Fenris walked all the way up. And then, to my dog, in a completely normal and completely sincere voice, he said, "Hello. I am the leader of this shelter. My name is Li Chang. May I touch you?" The Shadowbane lowered his head and studied him. There is a thing that goes through those mismatched eyes when he's thinking, and it went through them then. And everybody in that gateway who wasn't me stopped breathing. Then he turned his head away and brushed Li Chang with his tail. Li Chang's hand went along it, and this enormous scarred one-eyed man got a smile on his face like a kid at a zoo, and every scrap of command presence fell off him. "Thank you," he said, to the wolf, meaning it. The Shadowbane glanced back with an expression of pure aristocratic contempt that said, I accepted your thanks. You still don't get to touch my head. Li Qiang came back to me looking genuinely envious. Come on, let's go inside and talk. Your battle pet can come along too. Then, by the way, what's its name? It's called the Shadowbane, I said. And it's my partner. Haha, what a great partner. And the name sounds really cool. That is the moment I decided I liked him, which I want on the record as a mistake I would make again. Inside the walls, it was a city. Tents and sheds down both sides of the old supply route. Soldiers on patrol, survivors sitting in groups butchering source beast carcasses, making things, fixing things. Whole families working. Li Qiang explained as we walked, because he had noticed me looking. The beast tide came suddenly, so the survivors who were supposed to collect supplies stayed here. This tide has made us decide to bring Shaw City's survivors into the shelter. They're not free. They have to complete assigned work first. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair to the people who already moved in. And we're putting the existing residents on a work system. Labor for food and supplies. These soldiers are here to keep order and prevent, somebody screamed. Down the line, a man processing a carcass folded over sideways with blood coming through his hands, and the woman next to him started making a sound that got everybody's attention. Li Qiang's face did not change. His eyes went about 10 degrees colder. And prevent anyone from taking advantage of the situation, he finished. Processing beast meat is one of the jobs you can do to earn your way in. And people steal from the pile. So the rule is that anyone caught stealing food is killed where they stand. And even with that rule, one or two of them still show up every single day. Sorry to have embarrassed you, Brother Wang. I nodded, because there was nothing to say. I have seen worse shelters. I have lived in worse shelters. Shaw City feeds its people every 7 days, which is generous by the standards of this world. In other places, they were eating things a long time ago that I'm not going to describe. And here's the thing about the men stealing meat. They weren't starving. There is a rumor going around now that eating source beast flesh turns you into an evolutionary. So, people are gambling their lives in front of armed men on a folk remedy because being an evolutionary means status forever, and being ordinary means dying whenever the world feels like it. I looked away and stopped thinking about it. That's not a problem I can solve with an axe. Then we went through the passage into the inner city, and I stopped walking. There is a building in there. It is a single cylinder. It is built like the round Tulu houses that certain minority families have been building for centuries, except that this one is taller than the city wall and has no windows on the outside at all, just a few enormous doors. How about it? Said Li Qiang, enjoying himself. Does it look familiar? This was built in imitation of a round building. The outer walls are cold-resistant material and very thick. It handles the wind, and it will take a super blizzard without complaining. 6 floors above ground, 3 below. More than 2,000 single rooms per floor. How many people? 50,000, and there's a shelter under it. We're 10 meters down already, and we're going to keep digging. If the surface keeps getting worse, we may all end up living underground. This was built to be humanity's last habitat. I want you to sit with that sentence for a second, because the man saying it was not being dramatic. Fenris was reading a spec. In the middle of the ring, there's an open space the size of a stadium, with a few normal buildings on it, where the officers and the researchers live and work, and the rest is just ground. There were people on it walking for exercise. There were children building a snowman. If you took away the fact that the air outside will kill an unprotected adult in about a minute, that space looked more like the world before than anywhere I have been in a year. Then somebody looked up, saw a wolf the size of a truck coming out of the passage behind me, and screamed, and the entire square went back into the round building at a dead run. Soldiers ran after them shouting that it was Lin Yang's battle pet, which helped nobody. The braver ones got up to the second floor gallery and peered down over the railing. Li Qiang laughed out loud. Shadowbane, if you come here often, these survivors will stop being afraid of you. Fenris kept talking to my dog, all the way in, like they were colleagues. The Shadowbane glanced up at the terrified faces on the balconies with an expression of open disdain, and Li Qiang laughed again, harder, and that was when I worked out what I was dealing with. This is the nominal head of the largest shelter in the country. Fenris looks like a mountain with a grudge. In practice, he is approachable, easygoing, and a bit of a goofball, which is, of course, exactly the side of himself he wants me to see. If the man were actually that simple, he would not be running 50,000 people. But you don't fake charisma that specific. Whatever else Li Qiang is, he is genuinely likable, and that is the most dangerous thing about him. The Shadowbane had to stay in the plaza because he no longer fits through doors. I gave him some instructions and went up. The officers and soldiers left behind with him spent the next hour standing at a polite distance, being extremely nervous, and he lay down and ignored them completely, which I am told several of them found insulting. In the office, Li Qiang sent Zhao Lei off with a shopping list. Hey kid, go get my share of charcoal and tea for this month. And every gene pill the research institute has made in the past 2 days. Then he sat down opposite me and got straight to it. Comrade 6, Zhao Lei should have already conveyed our intention to recruit you. I said I'd think about it, I said. I haven't made up my mind. Fenris got up. Fenris locked the office door. Fenris sat back down and put his crossed hands on his lap. Then he told me that we might all be about to stop existing. I'm going to come back to that conversation because it deserves room and because 10 minutes later, Zhao Lei came in with a box and derailed it. Chief, this is all the Research Institute can offer right now. Li Chang opened the box. So little? Zhao Lei gave him a look that only a man who has served under someone for 15 years can give a superior. Chief, the gene-based medicines we traded out last time were most of the stockpile, and we've used a lot in the last 2 days. We have plenty of source beast corpses now, but processing takes time. 500 gene pills stacked in neat rows. 500. That's enough, I said. Let's leave it at that for now. I need to get back before dark. In that case, I'll see Brother Wang off. Zhao Lei looked at his chief, then at me, then at his chief again, with an expression I enjoyed a great deal, because these two had gone from comrade to brother in the time it took him to walk to a warehouse and back, and he could not work out how. We came out of the office building into the square. The Shadowbane was exactly where I left him and stood up when he saw me, and every officer assigned to watch him let out the breath they'd been holding for an hour. Chief Xiao, you're busy, I said. Please don't see me off. Fenris laughed and hit my shoulder hard enough to move me. Then let Zhao Lei see you out. Come often, and give us a good chance to consider being a specially invited officer. I nodded and turned to go, and after 4 steps, I stopped. Zhao Lei noticed. What's wrong? Now? Back up half an hour because there was a second thing happening in that building while I was upstairs drinking tea I didn't touch. On the way in, I had made an arrangement with Xiao Yu. When we got here, the story was that we met on the road, that I was a stranger who'd found a kid in a basement and brought him in, and that we had never seen each other before in our lives. That story cost him. It meant he came in as nobody. But it also meant that if anyone ever came looking for people connected to me, his name wasn't on the list, and there was still, at that moment, a hidden family cell sitting inside this shelter like a tumor. Zhao Lei had come down and collected him. You're the child Lin Yong rescued on the road. Come with me. And because I was the one who'd brought him, Zhao Lei hadn't dumped him in the outer city work rota. Fenris found him a room, registered him, and handed him to a soldier. The soldier's name was Wu Bo, old army, the kind of man who has stopped explaining things to adults. Fenris explained things to Xiao Yu the whole way up. From now on, you live in room 976, 3rd floor. The shelter's rules come from the chief. You cannot steal, kill, set fires, or abuse women. Lightest punishment is being thrown out. Heaviest is being shot where you stand. Remember that. Xiao Yu nodded so hard his head nearly came off. The shelter doesn't support idlers. Even at your age you work. Adults need 8 work points a day to eat. Children under 18 and people over 60 need 4. Then the part he actually stopped walking to say. And most importantly, if you don't know anyone here, never trust anyone. There are rules and we patrol, but it is not the first or second time we've found stiff bodies in the hallways in the morning, and people have died in their own rooms for no reason anyone could explain. You're young. Don't open your door at night. Not for anyone. The world's different now. If you trust people the way you used to, you'll die of it. Zhao Yu, who had spent the last month alone in a basement not lighting a candle, said, I understand. Thank you, uncle. And Wu Bo, who is, by his own account, more or less out of feelings, looked satisfied and smiled a little, because the boy had actually listened. Room 976 is 4 or 5 square meters, a bed under a meter wide, a toilet, a ventilation window too small for a person, and nothing else. Xiao Yu thought it was wonderful. Fenris thanked him again. Wu Bo gave him the key and left, and crossed the corridor, and almost walked into somebody, and stopped and straightened up. Sir, Zhang Xin was coming the other way, pushing a wheelchair she had found somewhere. Now, Zhang Xin, 2nd order evolutionary, 21, very good at people, and the only person in Sha City who knows my actual name. She'd been reinstated as an officer the day before, though not as squad captain anymore, deputy, and something had happened in this shelter the previous night that Wu Bo apparently still had feelings about, because he flinched when he saw her. She nodded at him. That was it. And she went to room 977 and unlocked the door. The smell that came out was old blood. There was a person in the bed. Backlit from the doorway, you couldn't see a face. I'll take you to change your dressing, she said. No answer, no movement. Only the blanket going up and down. She reached down and took the person's hand. From the wrist, you could tell it was a woman. From the bandages and the blood coming through them, you could tell what had been done to her hands. The woman screamed. Not words. She kicked, threw the blanket on the floor, and made short, flat sounds, because the mouth was not producing words anymore. Zhang Xin squeezed her hand. It's me. The woman went quiet. Zhang Xin got her sitting up, dressed her, carried her to the chair, wrapped a scarf around her neck, and pushed her out, down the stairs, across the square, toward the medical building in the middle. And the sun in that square hit the woman's face. Bandages over both eyes, dried blood around them, most of the face covered, and I recognized her anyway, from 30 meters, coming down the office building steps behind Li Chang, my adoptive mother, Gao Feng. Here's the thing you should know about me. When I found out this woman had helped kill the man who raised me, I decided to kill her, and then I found out somebody else had gotten there first and was doing a much more thorough job, and I let it go. I stood in a corridor 2 days ago and watched the Hidden Families use her as a practice dummy and felt fine about it. I did not expect them to let her out. And if she was out, where was He Jian? My hand twitched at my side. The Shadowbane, 40 meters away, made a low sound in his chest that had nothing to do with anything he could see, because he could feel it coming off me. Every soldier in that square turned around. Li Qiang, who has spent his entire adult life reading Killing Intent in a room, put himself politely in my path. Brother Wang, is there some misunderstanding? And I want to be honest with you. For about half a second I was going to walk through him. Then the part of my brain that keeps me alive came back online and pointed out 3 things. 1, there are still hidden families in this shelter. 2, they have my portrait. 3, if the masked hunter everybody loves walks up to a woman in a wheelchair and kills her in a public square, then anyone with a brain works out in one step that the masked hunter has a personal history with her. And my name is written on that history in large letters. So the murderous intent went out of me like water down a drain, and I kept walking, and I said the first thing that came into my head. Isn't that the woman from the warehouse yesterday? When I got back, I found she never returned the gun I lent her. She must be trying to steal my gun. Everyone relaxed so fast you could hear it, which is the moment I'd like to formally introduce Jiang Xin's real talent, which is not the gene lock. She was 30 meters away. She heard a masked stranger accuse her of stealing a pistol. She had, in fact, borrowed a pistol from me the day before, in front of Zhao Lei, which she knew he'd remember. She did not blink. She did not look confused. She turned around with an apologetic expression already on her face and started pushing the wheelchair toward me. Zhao Lei was already jogging over, saying, I probably forgot in the rush yesterday. I'll go ask. Li Chang put a hand out to stop me from going anywhere. Brother Wang, this must be a misunderstanding. Wait here. If Jiang Xin really took your gun, I'll make her return it and apologize to you. Underneath which, I could hear him thinking, this girl is second order. She has been here for months. She is extremely good at handling people, and there is no version of her in which she steals a pistol off a stranger. Something else is happening, which was fine. Suspicion I can survive. Then Gao Feng was pushed to a stop 3 meters in front of me. The hand at my side twitched again. I ran the math. Eyes gone. Mask on. She hasn't seen me since I was 15. The only thing that can give me away is my voice, and I have been speaking quietly since I got here. Jiang Xin stepped out from behind the chair and bowed to me, deep. I'm so sorry. I borrowed your gun yesterday, and then the soldiers came to pick me up, and I forgot to return it. I treated my wound when I got back, and then some other things happened, and I almost forgot about it entirely. The other things? Yes, we'll get to those. The doubt went out of Li Chang's face. Xiao Xin, since that's the case, why don't you return the gun to Brother Wang? Yes, Chief, but my gun's at my residence, and I have other matters to attend to. And she glanced down at the woman in the chair. Li Chang frowned for a moment. Then his face cleared, and he turned to me with the easy generosity of a man solving a small problem. Brother Wang, how about I get a few guns from the warehouse and send them to you? Xiao Xin is taking her mother to the medical institute, so it's probably inconvenient for her to go back for it right now. Just tell me what model. I did not hear the second half of that sentence. Her mother. Gao Feng is Jiang Xin's mother. I want to explain why my face nearly came off. Jiang Xin's parents are dead. I know they are dead because I watched Jiang Xin kill them. That is not a figure of speech. In the first month of the extreme cold, I watched that girl put down the 2 people who raised her, and I have carried the image around ever since as a data point on what she is. So, either Li Chang was wrong, or the couple she killed were not her parents. My pupils blew wide open. If I hadn't been wearing a mask, 4 people would have seen it. Fortunately, every eye in that square was on Li Chang, waiting to see how he'd settle a dispute about a pistol. I got my face back under control and said, in a voice I am quite proud of, I hate being lied to. Since she forgot, I'll let it go. Why don't you take your mother to see a doctor first? Is it her eyes? Jiang Xin gave me a look of pure gratitude, and then, glancing down at the chair, answered the question I had actually asked. Not just her eyes, her ears, her tongue, and the tendons in her hands. Jiang Xin. Zhao Lei, cutting across her, fast. Since you're taking your aunt to the medical institute, hurry. There are a lot of injured these days. You might not get in line. Zhao Lei is not stupid either. Yes, I'm really sorry. If you'd like to wait, I can return the gun when I get back. Good, I said. And to Li Chang, I'll wait for her here. I'll have to bother Chief Xiao a little longer. Ha ha, it's nothing, it's nothing. Come on, let's go back to my place. I'll make you a pot of my favorite hot tea. So I went back upstairs and drank tea I did not drink for an hour in the office of a man who commands 50,000 people, while somewhere below me, a girl wheeled her blind mother into a clinic. There was a knock. Chief, may I come in? She handed me a pistol wrapped tightly in coarse cloth. An old Type 54, scratch stock, not a model the Army issues anymore. I'm so sorry to have kept you waiting. Here's your pistol. Li Chang smiled. What kind of pistol has Brother Wang so worked up? Can I take a look too? Of course, I said, without a second's hesitation, because the correct answer to that question is always yes. Fenris looked. It was exactly what it appeared to be, a personal gun old enough that a person could be sentimental about it. She had gone home and picked the oldest thing she owned because a shiny new Army sidearm would have made the story fall apart. The last piece of doubt went out of Li Chang's eye, and he pointed at her and laughed. Next time, don't steal someone's gun. You get attached to a gun after using it a long time. No wonder Brother Wang cares so much. Yes, Chief, I was wrong. If there's nothing else, I'll be going. Go ahead. And I stood up too. It's getting late. Now that I've got the gun back, I'll head back. Objective achieved, because if I am not very much mistaken, there is something inside that pistol. I did one last thing before I left. I opened the gene lock and swept the entire shelter with mental strength. No He Jian. The room where the two of them had been kept was empty and cleaned. But I did find Tang Ming, young master of the Fenris family, Third Order, currently in bed, recovering from the several extremely unpleasant things that happened to him during the tide. And, unsurprisingly, he noticed me looking. So, I hit him with the exact mental attack technique I learned by having it used on me by his own people, and he went out like a light. His men, Wu Lei, Pan Hong, Tong Bo, panicked in a way I could feel from 300 meters. I could tell from the feedback that I hadn't done anything fatal. That was on purpose. What I told the dying woman about coming to the shelter to kill him was theater. The odds of pulling it off are decent, but the odds of the officials noticing are also decent, and killing one young master doesn't remove the 1,000-year family standing behind him. Right now, they're in the open, and I am in the dark. That is the best position I will ever be in, and I am not throwing it away to feel good for an evening. But I did not hold back on the blow itself. Whatever nerve you use to think with, his is going to be sore for a while. I felt fantastic. I got on my dog and left. Half an hour later, we came into the west suburb, and I looked at my watch, 3:11 in the afternoon. And it was almost completely dark. That was wrong. Autumn dark comes about 3:40. Both of us have night vision, so the dark itself didn't matter, but the clock did. Shadowbane, full speed. It looks like the world's about to change. His red eye flashed and he stretched out. 3 minutes later, my ears twitched at a sound like sand on paper. Hail. We were 5 minutes from Wolong Village at his speed, which was 4 minutes too many. I looked around, picked a building, and told him to jump. Fenris put us on a balcony 3 meters up without breaking stride, and we had barely stopped moving when the sky opened. This was not the last hailstorm. Some of these were the size of a human head. With a helmet on, one of those gives you a concussion on the way to giving you a broken neck. Woof! Fenris looked into the apartment behind us and then at me, asking whether we were staying the night. The floor-to-ceiling windows were smashed. There were old black bloodstains inside, and source beast droppings on the living room carpet, and everything usable had been stripped out months ago. His disgust was visible from space. Hailstorms don't last long, I said, patting the dog's head. We'll head back in a bit. Fenris cheered up immediately. And then he spent 20 minutes sticking one enormous paw out into the storm, catching hailstones and licking them. Then he started batting them out of the air, which turned into a game, which turned into a 3-meter apex predator playing handball with the weather while the world cratered around him. When it stopped, it was full dark and the temperature had fallen past 60 below, and neither of us cared. I flipped up onto his back and we went home. Generator, lights, heat, gear off. And then I lay down on the sofa and took the pistol apart. I am quick with a pistol. In a minute, it was a pile of components, and among the components there was a slip of paper as thin as a leaf. A smart girl, I said, out loud, to nobody. I unfolded it. It was covered edge to edge in handwriting the size of mung beans, very neat, absolutely packed. And this is what happened in the shelter the night before, while I was on a mountaintop learning that my father was not my father. Zhongxin got back with her unit, was taken straight to the medical institute for her arm, and was told to rest until the army decided what to do with her. She went to her quarters, sat down, checked the time, and went to collect her meal. Soldiers get fed. Evolutionaries the same. Fixed times, mostly cooked food, and they serve dinner in the afternoon because after dark, the shelter has to burn electricity for the lights. On the way back, she saw Tang Bo, in disguise, doing a very good job of it, But Tang Bo is one of the Fenris family's people, and had been teasing her that same afternoon. And Jiang Xin has a freakishly good memory for faces. And Tang Bo was injured and hadn't been made up properly by his handler, and he was carrying a bowl. Not a normal bowl, a bowl of paste worse than anything the canteen produces. Now Jiang Xin's brain does a thing here that I want to point out, because it is the whole reason any of the rest of this happened. She did not think, that's odd. She thought, Tang Ming is the young master of a hidden family. He would not eat that. Therefore that food is going to a person. Therefore there is a person in this shelter nobody knows about. She put her own dinner down on the ground and followed him. 5th floor of the round building. She watched him go into a room from around the corner. Fenris was clearly avoiding being seen, which only made it worse. The corridor was empty because it was dinner and it was getting dark. So, she strolled up, leaned against the door like a tired person, and listened. Inside was Hejian and Gao Feng, tied to beds where they had been for days. Fed by hand, emptied where they lay, and worked on in between. 2 people who used to run a shelter, reduced to a smell and a pair of eyes. Tang Bo grabbed Hejian, untied the cloth from his mouth, and poured most of the bowl into him. Fenris swallowed it like a machine. Half of it ran down his chin. "You're like an animal," said Tang Bo, who resented being assigned feeding duty while injured. "What? You don't even grunt when I feed you?" And Jian finally produced an expression, wide-eyed and stuffed full of humiliation and hatred and regret in roughly equal parts. This man was a deputy chief. Fenris was doing extremely well for himself. Fenris got here by trying to buy his way into the good graces of the hidden families, and for a man like him, this is worse than dying. Fenris made a sound through the gag. It meant kill me. Tang Bo punched him in the stomach and told him what would happen if he raised his voice again. Gao Feng, tied to the next bed, cried without making any noise at all. Then Tang Bo fed her, turned to leave, remembered something, and turned back around with a nasty little smile, and said he'd forgotten to bring water, but luckily he had some. Outside, Jiangxin was so locked onto the door that she completely missed a man walking up the corridor behind her. His name was Chen Gu. Fenris is a newly promoted evolutionary who has spent the last month discovering that in this world, the rank on your file is a currency, and he was coming back from the canteen, and he found a pretty young woman leaning against his own door. "Little beauty, are you here to curry favor with this old man? You know how to pick your time." The rooms up there are small and packed tight. Jiang Xin was standing exactly between his door and the door she was actually listening at, and Chen Gu had done the obvious arithmetic. She had about 1 second, and the door next to her opened. Jiang Xin turned her back to it so Tang Bo wouldn't see her face, and, in a voice she later described in her own handwriting as making her own skin crawl, said, "I've been waiting for you for ages. Why did it take you so long?" Tang Bo came out with murder already halfway up his arm. Then he saw who it was, Chen Gu, whose entire biography is available to anyone who asks 2 neighbors, and put it away. Not a threat. A man too busy chasing women to notice anything. Chen Gu, grinning, "I just went to get food. Can't you even wait? How can you have the energy to exercise if you don't eat your fill?" And Tang Bo, entirely satisfied, locked the door and left. Jiang Xin kept up the conversation for another few minutes to be sure. Then she turned around and looked at Chen Gu with an expression he did not understand at all. "What did you just say? You want to go back to your room?" "Yes, little beauty, come on, let's go inside." "Good," she said, and she made a fist. Because here is the problem she was solving. She needs that door open. She cannot be caught breaking into a hidden family's safe house. What she needs is a legitimate, loud, public reason for that specific door to come off its hinges. So she took hold of Chen Gu's collar with her one good arm and used him as the ram. Bang! The door Tang Bo had just locked came in, and Chen Gu went through it, and the sound brought the patrol at a dead run. They came around the corner, ready for anything, saw Jiang Xin, and saluted. "Sir, what's going on here?" Doors opened all down that floor, and not one person came out, because it was night, in the apocalypse, and only an idiot walks toward other people's problems. And Jiang Xin pointed at Chen Gu, who had not yet worked out that this was not his room, and said, with murder on her face, "This person harassed me and told me to go back to his room, so I tore his door down." And then, from inside, before he could get a syllable out, came the sound of 2 gagged people trying to scream. The soldiers went in and found the deputy chief of the apocalypse shelter tied to a bed. What happened next was not in Jiang Xin's plan either. They cut the 2 of them loose and took them into custody. And when Jiang Xin got a proper look at the second body in that room, her eyes went blank, because she had not been expecting to see her own mother. Soldiers asked who they were. Jian hesitated, worked out that he had nothing left to trade, and admitted it. "I am the deputy chief of the apocalypse shelter. I have been arrested and imprisoned here. I hope you can release us." And a survivor rubbernecking from the next doorway said cheerfully, "Apocalypse shelter? Wasn't that breached by the beast tide?" Jian's head came up. What? What beast hide? What breach? They told him. A few days away from home, and the ground he'd sold everything for had stopped existing. Fenris had traded his name, his position, and his wife's son to buy standing with the hidden families, and the thing he'd bought had already been eaten while he was tied to a bed. Fenris fainted. Zhao Lei arrived, took one look, and said, "Take them to the interrogation room," and Jiang Xin talked her way into the escort. They did not get there. Tang Ming was standing in the corridor with his injured men behind him. "Where are you going?" Zhao Lei stepped up. "We've found a few suspicious individuals, and we're taking them for questioning. This has nothing to do with young Master Fenris. Please step aside." Tang Ming looked at the two people on the stretchers, the way you look at furniture you are about to throw out. "I'm the one who locked these two people up." Behind him, Tang Bo went pale and started shaking because Tang Bo had had one job. "May I know why young Master Fenris kidnapped these two people?" "Kidnapped?" Tang Ming laughed, and it wasn't a nice laugh. "I didn't kidnap them. They came to me, Captain Wang. Do you remember when I came to your shelter looking for someone?" Zhao Lei remembered. "These two hired somebody to pretend to be that person. I hate it when people lie to me, so I lock them both up. Anyway, they're not your people. It's none of your business what I do with them." And then his eyes went over Gao Feng's face, and something moved behind them. Fenris had intended to stay in Sha City a while longer. Now that this was out in the open, the tidy option was to take them away and finish it. "No, don't let him take me away." Gao Feng got that out through pure terror. "They're devils. They're not human. Don't hand me over to them." Zhao Lei did the arithmetic. Two people who are not his versus a hidden family versus a direct order from his chief not to give the hidden families a reason. Fenris started to say, "If that's the case, then..." "No." That was Jiang Xin. It came out before she'd decided to say it. Everybody looked at her. Nobody had any idea why she'd opened her mouth. Behind Tang Ming, one of his people gave her a very unfriendly look and asked whether she was declaring herself an enemy of the hidden families. Zhao Lei tried to catch her eye and tell her to shut up, and Jiang Xin stood there for 2 seconds with something enormous going on behind her face. She hates that woman. She has every right to. Gao Feng walked out on her when she was small and spent the next decade being somebody else's mother. Then she stepped in front of the stretcher. "I have a way to make sure she can never reveal any secrets. Can you spare her life?" Every person in that corridor stared at her, including Gao Feng. An officer barked, "Jiang Xin, what are you saying?" And she bit her lip and said it clearly the second time. "Actually, she is my mother. Her name is Gao Feng, and my name is Liu Mei." The most shocked person in that corridor was not Tang Ming, and it was not Zhao Lei. It was the woman on the stretcher, because the name Liu Mei stirred up something she had not thought about in over 10 years. You're Xiaojia?" She had forgotten she had a daughter. Jiang Xin looked back at her and did not answer. Tang Ming clicked his tongue twice. "Tsk, tisk. What kind of script are you trying to play here? I don't care who these two are, and I don't care who you are. You're not taking either of them. Meaning, come through us." And Zhao Lei stopped the officer who was about to shout at her and said, "Seriously, the only question that mattered? Jiang Xin, think it through. Is this person really your family?" She drew a dagger from her waist. Tang Ming's people got ready. And Jiang Xin said, "To the young master of a 1,000-year family in the corridor of a residential block holding a knife. You say she knows your secrets? Then I'll make sure she can never tell anyone anything again. And then you'll spare her life." I read that on a slip of paper the size of my palm, and I sat in my own living room for a while with the pieces of a pistol on the table in front of me. Jiang Xin paid it. Whatever the price was, she paid it in that room, herself, with her own hands, and Tang Ming stood there and raised it twice. And by the end of it, Gao Feng could not speak, could not see, could not hear, and could not hold a pen. And then he let her go. "He Jian, he took." The note said all of that in about 3 lines, brief and very clear. Jiang Xin does not decorate things. No wonder I couldn't find He Jian today. I put the pistol back together, stood up, and threw the paper in the fireplace. And it was ash in about a second and a half. And my hatred for that woman went with it. Think about it. She cannot hear a voice. She cannot see a face. She cannot say a word or write one down. She is going to spend the rest of her life inside her own head in the dark, with nothing coming in and nothing going out. There is no punishment I could have invented that beats that. A cheerful, sociable person would lose their mind in a month. I have no idea how much of it was family feeling, and how much was a daughter making absolutely sure her mother lived long enough to serve the full sentence. Probably both. Jiang Xin is more ruthless than I gave her credit for, and I did not give her a small amount of credit. I sincerely wish Gao Feng a long and healthy life. I hope she doesn't die too soon. I heard myself think that and smiled at the fire. I'm so awful. As for He Jian, whatever Tang Ming did with him, I hope it took a while. That is 2 lifetimes of hatred closed out in one evening. Both of them. Done, finished, and something came off my chest. I mean that physically. Something that had been sitting on my ribs since I was 15 years old picked itself up and left, and my head went light, like the whole thing had been lowered into warm water. Is this what revenge feels like? I blinked, enjoying it, and then the source power in my body caught fire. I know that feeling. That is advancement. Except I had checked my panel that morning, and I was still 75 points of mental strength short. There was no time to think about it. The room went black, and I went straight over backwards and hit the floor, and out. Meanwhile, in the space, a wolf, a panda, a leopard, and 79 other animals had no idea they were about to go hungry again. I woke up in total darkness on my own floor. The vigilance the apocalypse installs in you does not switch off. I sat up and checked the room before I checked myself. Still the safe house. The generator had run dry, which meant the power had been out long enough for a full tank to burn. I did not go and refuel it. I opened the panel. Wong Min, 20, male, evolutionary level, gene lock, stage 4, source power, 3040, mental strength, 325. Ha ha ha. It really is tier 4, I jumped, which nearly put my head through my own ceiling and had to twist in midair like an idiot. Then I sat down and looked at the number again because the number was insane. Mental strength 225 to 325, 100 points, in one moment, and I knew exactly when it happened. It happened in front of the fireplace. Mental strength is not only built by grinding, it is also built by carrying something enormous for a very long time, and then, all at once, putting it down. You do not get to schedule that. That is not a training method, that is a once-in-a-life event, and I had just spent it. Fine, I'll take it. First thing I did was check on my household, because if I'd been out for 3 days, those half-tame wolves would be redecorating with each other. Everyone was lying down and listless, hungry, but not the green-eyed kind of hungry. I moved 20 corpses out of the vacuum side into the living space, and they came off the ground like a landslide. Everyone except the Shadowbane, who looked up and barked at the sky. Fenris wasn't asking about food, Fenris was asking if I was alive. I explained. Then I asked how long. Fenris told me with his claws, 4 missed meals, a day and a night. Fine. I came out of the space absolutely starving, which happens every time. Advancement costs energy the way a war costs money. And I remembered there was a plate of grilled meat in the kitchen. And the kitchen appeared in my head. Not the memory of it, the kitchen. Everything on the counters, everything inside the cupboards, laid out in my mind in one piece. Spiritual power scan? That is the sensing ability that comes with a gene lock, except my gene lock was closed. This is the ability after 4th order evolution. 30 meters. That is the passive radius. All day, every day. No cost, no cooldown, close lock. Which means from now on, anything hiding within 30 meters of me is not hiding. If I open the lock, based on the old pattern, that should be 300 meters. It was not 300 meters. My stomach made a noise like plumbing, and I gave up and ate first. Then I went outside and measured myself. Strength nearly doubled. 1,500 jin in one hand, where I'd had 800. 50 meters a second, which is faster than an ordinary human eye can track. Defense improves slowest. An ordinary blade won't scratch the skin, muscle will trap an ordinary bullet, but armor-piercing rounds still get through the flesh, so I am tougher than a man and softer than a 4th-tier animal. 10-meter standing jump. A shallow cut closes in minutes. That is the closed lock version. That is me at rest. I was about to test the open lock version when a 3rd-tier monkey came down the mountain with a dozen friends. Better to arrive at the right time than to arrive early, I said. I'll let you test my current fighting power. Gene lock, stage 4. Open. How fast is 100 meters a second? It is fast enough that if you filmed it on an ordinary security camera and played it back at the maximum 20 times slow, all you would get is a blur leaving the frame. I was standing in front of my house, and then I was standing in the middle of the pack. The 3rd tier saw me. The other 12 did not have time to. The axe came out of nothing into my hand, and 3 heads came off in one swing. The 3rd tier took one look at what I was and ran. I swapped the axe for the sword I took off Taming, lighter. I don't love it, it's too small for me, but the material is invisible to the naked eye, and it drinks source power like it was made for it, and with power in it, that blade goes through iron like tofu. Each flash of it was a monkey. 12 seconds, 12 monkeys. Then I went after the 3rd tier, which had a 700 or 800 meter head, start down the mountain, and which turned out to be a speed build, which I only found out by chasing it. I jumped off the mountainside rather than take the slope. It's only a dozen meters. I landed, went into a crouch, kicked off, left a hole in the snow, and was 40 meters away before the snow finished falling. 2 kilometers, a few dozen seconds, into the town nearest Wolong village. I could see the panic in its eyes from behind. 10 seconds and I'd have it. And then it changed direction, went up the face of a building and put itself through a 5th-floor window. I went after it, 10 meters up, over the sill, into the room. And there was a woman screaming. There were people living in there. The monkey had her off the floor with one hand. She was fighting it, and it did not notice. There was a man in the room as well who had gone down on the floor when the window came in, and who was now getting as far from her as the walls allowed. Let me go. Ah, June. Fenris did not look at her. Fenris found a door, went through it, and shut it. She watched him do it, with tears all over her face, and I could read the exact thought going through her. What happened to the promise? The monkey bared its teeth and held her up at me. A third tier is about as smart as a person, and it had worked out that it could not outrun me and had decided to negotiate. I paused at the window for 1 second. Not to think about it, to sweep the apartment. Then I went in with the sword out. Red light went through its eyes, and it broke her neck and threw the body at me. I kicked the body aside, kicked the monkey that came in behind the body, and it screamed and came again with its claws out, and it lasted about 4 seconds. I put the corpse in my space and looked at the woman on the floor and felt nothing at all. Because in that 1 second at the window, my scan had gone through the whole apartment, and in one of the back rooms, there was a child's skeleton, and there were teeth marks on it. In the first months, people ran out of food. A lot of people died then. If you want to know how this particular couple got through that stretch, the answer is lying in the second bedroom. I kicked open the door the man had gone through. Empty room, open window. Fenris had already made 100 meters. When disaster comes, everybody runs. Every second you spend is a second lost. I understand it perfectly. I took out a gun, stood at the window, and put 1 round through the back of his head. Fenris ran another 2 steps and went down in the snow. That's how a family gets to stay together. I went home. By then I had numbers for the open lock version, and I want to read them out because I am not going to pretend I wasn't enjoying myself. 3,000 jin in one hand. Burst speed, 100 meters a second, 20-meter jump. Ordinary bullets do not break the skin. Armor-piercing rounds get into the meat and stop being interesting. And the scan is not 300 meters. It is 600 to 700 in all directions, and about 1,400 in a straight line. With my current body, it would not be an exaggeration to say I'm comparable to Superman, except for the flying. I want to come back to that sentence later, because it aged in an interesting direction. In the days after that, Shaw City went quiet. Between me, the army, and everyone else with a weapon, the beasts in the city were finished. The survivors went back into the mountains. The tide was over, and the city was as calm as it had been before it. My legion came out of it looking like this. The Shadowbane, 4th tier. The Panda, 3rd. The Mist Stalker, 3rd. The long-armed ape had gone to 3rd as well while I wasn't watching. And one of the original 2nd-tier white wolves in the pack had made it to 3rd, and the Shadowbane had personally given that one a name, and the name he chose was Luna, which I want everyone to understand was not my idea. 26 first tiers I dragged up to 2nd by feeding them corpses until they stopped being first tiers. With half the legion at 2nd or better, I stopped being in a hurry to go up the mountain and stayed home and worked on my head, which is how I discovered the good one. I was sitting on my bed with my eyes shut, running mental strength around my own living room. On the coffee table, the kitten was watching the tablet. She was still 2nd tier. I'm not pushing her rank until I understand what she does, because both she and the panda are cubs and can't execute properly yet. And rank without control is just a bigger accident. On the screen, a middle-aged woman in work clothes was teaching the history of Chiming country. The kitten was locked on with round, serious eyes. And then, the kitten disappeared off the sofa and reappeared on the dining table. Meow! She arched her back and looked around the entire room with genuine alarm because everything was normal and nothing had happened, and she was 2 meters from where she had been. Then she vanished off the table and was back on the sofa in front of the tablet and the history teacher and let out another meow and sat there with a question visible on her whole face. I was in the bedroom with my hand over my mouth. Playing with cats is such a stress reliever. That was me. That is the second thing the 4th tier gave me, and it is worth more than the strength. Anything inside my scan can go into my space, and anything in my space can come out of it, anywhere I want, inside that scan. The catch. It only works with the gene lock closed, which means 32 meters across, or 74 in a straight line. Now, think about that in a fight. Imagine you're swinging at me, and behind you, out of empty air, there is suddenly a 3-meter wolf biting the back of your neck. Unless you are a rank above both of us and your danger sense is superb, there is no dodging that. There is not even a warning. The air is empty, and then it is a wolf. It needs practice. A lot of practice with the Shadowbane until the timing is automatic. But the day I get that clean, anyone at my level who fights me is fighting 2 of us, and does not find out until it is over. Lunch that day was braised tiger brains. I want to be clear that I do not enjoy this ingredient. But it is the brain of a 4th tier source beast, and I am not throwing that away, so I put chili and Sichuan peppercorns and star anise and bay leaves in it, until it at least looked like food. The tiger meat had stopped working, by the way. Once you cross 300 mental strength, that particular animal has nothing left to give you. There's presumably a ceiling on what a saber-tooth's own mind was worth. Source power, it still hands over. But I'm not in a hurry on source power. I have almost 2,000 gene pills in the space and several hundred corpses. If I dumped the lot in, I could probably take source power to 5th tier levels tomorrow. It wouldn't matter, because the thing standing between me and the 5th rank is not source power. It has never been source power. It's mental strength. And mental strength has no shortcuts. And the trick that gave me 100 points in one evening cannot be repeated because I only had one father to avenge. 8 points a day, best case, which is agonizingly slow. Although, if any ordinary person heard me complain about 8 points a day, they would probably burst into tears. For a normal human, before the 4th tier, the only method that exists is training your body and mind until something in you breaks, and a lot of people do break. It is only after the 4th tier that you can do what I do, which is empty the tank and sleep it off. And the number of ordinary people who reach the 4th tier before something eats them is approximately none. So, replant the mutated potatoes, which will be a mountain of them in 2 or 3 months. Send the ape and the leopard out to clear the mountaintop, because it snows every day now. And spar with the dog, because the new trick needs a partner. We were about 10 minutes into that when my head came up. Somebody was coming up my mountain. Before I get to who it was, I want to show you a room across town, because the two things happened the same afternoon. Tang Ming had a suite in the official shelter. Not a room, a suite. Li Chang had given it to him the way you give a wasp its own jar. Fenris was on a worn sofa, mostly recovered, with Wu Lei and Tong Bo standing in front of him. Wu Lei is down one arm, the saber tooth aided. It cannot be reattached for the excellent reason that the tiger already dealt with that. Also, in the 2 months since, Wu Lei has clawed his way to the Third Order, which happened because at the Fenris family, waste is disposed of regularly, and a one-armed servant is waste. Nothing motivates like a deadline. Tang Bo had healed too, and had picked up some new marks I decided not to ask about. Chen Li was not there because Chen Li is in my space. Still no news from Wang Min? Tang Ming was staring at a corner of the room, unfocused. We have checked everyone in the shelter and found nobody matching the portrait, said Wu Lei. We reviewed the new arrivals. 3 of them are disfigured so we can't see the faces, but the ages don't match. Then look somewhere else. Maybe some slipped through. Tang Bo risked it. The survivors in Sha City have mostly been gathered up by Li Qiang. The people left outside are migrants from elsewhere. Perhaps Wang Min is no longer in Sha City. Or dead. It's a big apocalypse. Fenris could be under a snowdrift somewhere and they'd never know. Tang Ming sat up and his eyes went flat. I don't care how long you search. I want to see him alive or dead. If you can't find him, keep searching until you die. Yes. They both shut up. Then he remembered something. How's the investigation into Lin Yong going? Tang Bo started very carefully. Our inside source says Lin Yong is already 3rd tier, and his battle pet is 3rd tier. The day you were hit with a mental strength attack, this Lin Yong happened to be in the shelter. The time before that on the city wall, probably the same. Young master, your suspicion is likely right. This Lin Yong may be someone secretly trained by another family. And Tang Ming said, the thing I have been waiting for somebody in that family to say, and I want you to appreciate how close he got. Do you think this Lin Yong could be Wang Min? Both of them stared. Wu Lei thought about it properly and answered honestly, which saved my life. Young master, according to the information we got from Wang Min's foster mother, Wang Min was an ordinary person from childhood. Good at studying, nothing else. This Lin Yong is decisive, ruthless, and has more combat experience than someone who's been living on the edge for years. Those are 2 different lives. Yes, said Tang Bo, warming up. Young master, I'm usually very good at judging people. Lin Yong has never shown his face, but his manner gives me the feeling that he's at least 30. At least 30? I'd like that framed. Tang Ming rubbed his forehead. Fenris knew they were telling the truth. From every angle, Lin Yong could not possibly be Wang Min. Fenris also could not shake the feeling that Lin Yong was Wang Min. Fenris let it go. Find this Lin Yong first, whoever he is. Li Chang and the others are trying to butter him up, aren't they? Has our source found out where he stays? No, Lin Yong is elusive. Our insider doesn't know where he lives. Fenris has a very strong sense of counter-tracking. Chen Li lost him last time. And then, with a small, pleased smile, however, young master, I've discovered something interesting. A group of suspicious people arrived outside the shelter yesterday. They weren't from our country, and they were after the shelter. Hold that thought. Back on my mountain, the person coming up was wrapped head to foot and shouting before he was in range. Li Gay! Oh no! Something terrible has happened! Fenris pulled his mask down, panting, and it was Wu Tian. What terrible thing? Someone at the shelter is looking for you with your portrait. They've been at it for days. The shelter was closed so I couldn't get out, and the moment it opened I came straight here. The neighbors say the people looking for you are very powerful. Li Gay, you need to be careful. I let him get all the way to the end of it before I said, I already know. Li Gay, you know? I've been to the shelter. It was the day before the beast tide. Fenris sagged with relief. Now. There are exactly two people in Shaw City who know that the masked man is called Wang Min. One is a fat Taoist I signed a land agreement with. The other is this man. When I found out Tang Ming had my portrait, I spent a couple of very cold hours doing arithmetic about Wu Tian. And instead of selling me, he had climbed a mountain in a hailstorm to warn me. You came all this way just for that? Then I looked at him properly, and there were source power fluctuations coming off him. You're an evolutionary now? Fenris straightened his coat, delighted, and did the thing where a man makes you ask. Nothing can be hidden from the boss. Li Gay, do you know whose child that baby was? The one I was raising. Whose? I brought him to the shelter and settled him. Then I asked the soldiers whether anyone had lost a child. A lot of people came forward. Most of them were lying. They couldn't even tell me about the birthmark. I thought I'd gone to the wrong place. Then that evening, a couple showed up with several soldiers, and it turned out to be theirs, and it turned out they're researchers at the shelter. The nanny had lost him. They'd given up. To thank me, they gave me 10 blue pills. Gene pills. I ate 3 and it worked. And he pulled a cloth bag out of his inner pocket, unwrapped it, and held out 7 gene pills. To a man he knows can kill him. On a mountaintop, with no witnesses. You just take it out like that? Aren't you afraid I'll snatch it away? Fenris smiled and pushed it toward me. Li Gay, take it if you want. If it weren't for you, I'd be dead. What do I care about a gene pill? And if you're afraid I'll reveal your secret, you can kill me. My pupils moved. Why do you think that? For the record, I had considered it. I had considered it seriously. And every time I got to the actual arithmetic, this man's behavior over the past year kept getting in the way, and I could never find the place to start. I kill decisively. That does not mean I kill indiscriminately. There are 2 people alive right now purely because they were good to me, when they had no reason to be, and Wu Tian is one of them. Li Gay, I've thought it through. You've saved me 5 times. Fenris turned and looked at the mountains while he counted them off, which was somehow worse. First time, you brought me to Shaw City. I'm not stupid. If it weren't for you, I'd still be in San Yuan City working days and drinking nights. And when the cold came, I'd have died the first night like everyone else did. Second time, you had me prepare supplies. Without those supplies, I'd have gone early. Third time, you gave me all that medicine, and I got through the viral cold that killed half the block. Fourth time, you pulled me out from under those bastards, me and the child both. Fifth time, you let me stay inside the shelter for a few days, and that's the only reason the beast tide didn't get me. Fenris is not wrong about any of it, and I want to be honest. At least 2 of those were side effects. When I hired him to build my safe house, I promised him a $500,000 annual salary I never intended to pay, because the world was ending in 3 months and salaries were about to stop meaning anything. Fenris was a meticulous man. Fenris must have known. Fenris was still grateful. His eyes had gone red. Li Gay, I was an orphan. I struggled for more than 10 years after I left the orphanage. I've seen the dark and I've seen a little bit of light. Apart from my parents whose names I don't know, you are the only person who has given me my life this many times. Even if you asked me to die, it would be worth it. I know a lot of your secrets, boss, and I know they make you uneasy. If you want to kill me, I won't blame you. Fenris had been waiting a long time to say that. I looked down and made a face like I was considering it. Are you really willing to die? Fenris looked straight back with no fear in him at all and nodded. No regrets. And then he closed his eyes and stood there like a man waiting for a bus. Nothing happened. Fenris waited. Still nothing. Fenris frowned and opened his eyes, and I was gone. And what was in front of him was an enormous dog head tilted sideways, examining him with an expression of open bafflement, as if to say, "Why would you volunteer for this?" They stared at each other for a while. Then Wu Tian, who had decided the wolf had been left behind to do the job, said with a bitter little smile, "Could you bite the head first? The sooner the better. Thank you, wolf bro." Nothing continued to happen. Fenris opened his eyes again. The Shadowbane had gotten bored and was playing in the snow. I came out of the safe house and handed him a small sealed bag with a fingernail-sized piece of metal in it. Don't you know people at the Research Institute? Take this back and have someone analyze what it's made of. Ideally, how it was made. That fragment is the tip of Tang Ming's sword. I had just spent an unreasonable amount of effort sawing it off. The sword is a beautiful piece of work, and it is useless to me. It's too light, it's too small. My hands are wrong for it, but if I can find out what's in it, I can make something that isn't. If they find out, I said, it's fine. Say you picked it up. If the shelter's people press you, say you found it near the east suburb port. If they offer a reward, take it. But you absolutely must get me the composition and the casting method. Fenris nodded like a man taking an oath. Because here is the thing I had already accepted. They were going to catch him. Any researcher on Earth who is handed a metal that conducts source power reports it. And they should for everybody's sake. Tang Ming has 2 of these swords. If I lose the fragment, so be it. And if the shelter learns to make them, the people who lose out are not me. It's the hidden families, who have been the only ones with this toy for 1,000 years. I'd like to see their faces. Also, I had already made a copy of the whole sword before I cut it. The next 2 weeks I stayed home, mental strength in the mornings, sparring in the afternoons. On the days I couldn't be bothered, I'd send the Shadowbane out with the pack, and he'd feed them and come home with 2 or 3 extra corpses, because he is a fully qualified Wolf King now, and it shows. I also worked out what the kitten does. She hits, not with her body, stays with her mind. It's like my mental attack except broader. I call it a mental shock. She can aim it at one thing, or spray it across a group, and she does it by reflex the instant she feels threatened. At second tier, she can stun a third tier source beast for about 1 second. Do not laugh at 1 second. 1 second is everything. 1 second is the gap you drop the Shadowbane into. Everything else about her is unremarkable. So, she is support. Extremely important support. Put her somewhere safe, have her open the enemy, walk the Shadowbane through the hole. I could already see the whole move. The only real cost is that it shows people the space exists, which means anyone who sees it does not get to leave. Once I understood that, I stopped holding her back and put her at third tier inside a few days, and gave her a name because the kitten was getting silly. Jinxing. She's a girl. She learns terrifyingly fast. She understands most of what I say now. She is nowhere near the Shadowbane, but nothing is. I named the panda too. Atlas. Fenris is becoming more of a tyrant by the day, and he is now, by mass, the largest animal I own, which is absurd because he is not even 4th tier yet. Fenris is bigger than the Shadowbane. Fenris is a national treasure, and I feed him accordingly, and his standard of living is second only to the dog's, and he has attached himself to the dog completely. He even barks like a dog now. From a distance, the two of them look like a pair of black and white brothers, one of whom has made some bad decisions. 2 weeks after Wu Tian went down the mountain with a scrap of metal, he came back up it. Fenris knocked. Nothing. Fenris knocked again. By then, the world had moved on again. The first New Year's Day of the apocalypse had come and gone. In a month, it would be the first spring festival since the freeze. Shaw City averaged 60 below in the day and could hit 80 below at night. And the light was going wrong. Dark when you go out at 10 in the morning, dark again before 3. It was 1 in the afternoon, and he'd driven since first light, and at that temperature, an ordinary person gets hypothermia in about a minute outdoors. Fenris is an evolutionary now, so he could take it. But he'd been standing at my door for 20 minutes and was starting to do the arithmetic on whether he'd make it home. Wu Tian? Fenris spun around. Ligue! Oh my. I've finally waited for you. I knocked so long I thought you were asleep. My hands are red from clapping. Fenris was making a joke. Fenris was also completely unaware that on the next ridge there was a wolf the size of a truck, most of a wolf pack, and a panda the size of a house, all watching him. I'd taken everyone out for a stretch. If he'd turned around, he'd have died on the spot. Have you been waiting long? Is there a result? Yes. Fenris pulled a piece of paper out of his coat with hands that were shaking, and he'd like it noted that they were shaking from cold. I read it. Every metal on that list I recognized. Most of them are the same metals I used to forge my own axe, except the last line. Source material? What's that? Fenris done his homework, which is why I keep him. They say it's an extremely rare material. It has to be the hard part of some strange beast. Material extracted from the beasts that can be worked into a weapon is called source material. If you add it during forging, then once the weapon is finished, you can pour source power into it, and it becomes indestructible. The official name is source artifact. Then he lowered his head. I'm sorry, boss. The business with the fragment was discovered. They took it. Who questioned you? Li Xiang? Yes. Chief Xiao. Fenris didn't make things difficult. Fenris asked where the fragment came from, asked me a few personal questions, and let me go. Fenris gave me a lot of things as a reward. And he reached back into his coat and started producing plastic bags. Fenris kept producing them. 5 bags. I swept them. 200 each. 1,000 gene pills. Li Chang gave you 1,000 gene pills. Think about what that means. An ordinary person can't use 1,000 gene pills. A gene pill gets you across the first threshold, and after that, without more mental strength, it's just very expensive medicine. If Wu Tian were simply a first-order evolutionary who found a shiny rock, Li Chang pays him in food. Chief Xiao is very easy to talk to, said Wu Tian unhappily. I said I didn't need that much. Fenris insisted. Fenris even said I just needed to take it to the person behind me. And then he looked at me like a man confessing. Li Gay, I don't know when I got exposed. I never mentioned you in the shelter at all. I gave him a tired smile. Just as I expected. Of course Li Chang knows. Think about it from his side. A 4th-tier Beast King vanishes off the map on the same day the Masked Man vanishes. Tang Ming's sword vanishes with the tiger. And then a first-order evolutionary, who once stayed inside the shelter for a few days, walks up to the research institute carrying a piece of that exact sword. The man is one-eyed. Fenris is not blind. The 1,000 gene pills weren't a reward. They were a message, and the message was, I know who you work for, and here is a gift for him, and I am not going to say anything about it out loud. It's not your fault. You did well. Keep the food. Thank you, boss. Then I explained the Lin Yong business and how the name happened, and his face did something remarkable. So the Shuguang everybody's been talking about in the shelter is you? I touched my nose. If anyone presses you for my location in future, I'd rather die than tell, Fenris said that instantly, as a complete sentence, like a man who had already rehearsed it in the shower. By the way, boss, have you been to the east suburbs these past few days? Have you heard anything? What happened? Since the tide broke, the streets past the east suburb have started getting called the wilderness. Occasional beasts, occasional new tides, and traveling alone is a genuinely bad idea, even for an evolutionary, which is another way of saying Wu Tian had risked his life twice now to bring me paperwork. I heard that a lot of people coming into Sha City have been running into foreigners around the edges of the city. Some of them have been taken. It's been getting more frequent. Everyone in the shelter is saying the foreigners might start a war with us. I sent him home and told him not to come back for a while. His visits are a line drawn straight to my front door, and it isn't safe out there. And then I stood on my mountaintop looking at a buried town and thought about a conversation I'd had in a locked office. Because Li Chang had already told me this was coming. That's what he locked the door for. Fenris had asked me a question. Do you know what the situation is like in other countries right now? I hadn't thought about it. Almost nobody has. If you cannot feed yourself and your family, the fate of continents does not come up. Most people think that after the solar storm and the freeze, once we lost planes and ships and trains and freight, humans just can't travel far anymore. So, all you have to do is survive until technology comes back. Then he leaned forward and stared at me with his one good eye. Have you ever thought about the fact that what used to separate the continents was ocean? The sea level is frozen. Every continent in the world is connected now. With transport or enough patience, a person can walk from one side of the world to the other. I said the obvious thing. In this environment, leaving home is a good way to die. That's true, he said. But what if they die even if they don't travel? And then he told me what the icebreaker crews had seen. Entire countries occupied by beasts with barely a living person in them. Small nations merging into tribes. And every single one of them drifting toward the equator. Because near the equator, the temperature is stable, and there is still light. The far north is polar night now. Nothing lives up there, not even source beasts. So, the whole surviving population of a planet is being funneled into one band of land. There is plenty of room. That has never once stopped anybody. In the good old days, people fought over a river, a hillside, or a woman, and Chiming country still has icebreakers. Before all this, there were only a dozen or so of them on the whole planet, and we had 4. Now, exactly one of ours works, and it's here, in Sha City. And it can pull tens to hundreds of tons of fish out of a sea that is holding temperature better than the land is. As long as there's diesel, this city could feed twice as many people as it has. They call it a national treasure, and it is not a figure of speech. While he explained the rarity of icebreakers, I sat there and thought about the 10 of them parked in my space. There are probably fewer working icebreakers in the rest of the world than I am personally sitting on. I did not mention this. Sha City's ship has been going out and coming back and stopping to look at other coastlines, and other people have noticed. Several neighboring countries have formed a coalition. Before the tide, their envoys came to Li Qiang with a speech about how humanity faces a critical juncture and must help one another. And would he please lend them the icebreaker? Fenris wasn't going to. They weren't really asking. Both sides understood it was a temperature check. When everyone in the world is standing on the same strip of land, he said, the war starts. And right now, Sha City is the richest, best-fed target on it. Then he said the part he had actually locked the door for. Without fighter jets, without tanks, without artillery, and our special rounds can't even get through a high-tier beast's skin, high-level evolutionaries are the strategic weapons of this land. And you are, as far as we know, the strongest fighter that exists outside the hidden families. Join us. We'll put resources into you. We'll build you into a hero and a war god. I said I needed to think about it. That was a little over 20 days ago. And now foreigners were already grabbing people around Sha City. I went inside and opened the world map I'd stashed before the freeze, and looked at the handful of small countries south of us, just over the provincial line, and the ones Li Chang had named, the Dongye tribes. While I was doing that, a group of uninvited guests walked up to the front gate of the official shelter. After the tide, the shelter reopened, but only 2 doors, one in, one out, no exceptions, and the old supply distribution gate sealed off entirely. Most of Sha City's survivors are inside now, and everything runs on work points. Too many open doors is how you lose a city in 10 minutes. It was a little after 1 in the afternoon. About 100 people came up the approach, and they came up it wrong. Not like refugees, like a work crew arriving at a job. The one in front had dark skin, a scar running from his brow to his cheek, and a pair of triangular eyes with something bad living behind them. Everyone behind him had the same flat look, and you could feel it off them at 40 meters. The soldiers at the gate did their job. Show your residence permit. Every survivor shows a permit. That is the rule, and it has never been complicated. The man with the triangular eyes did not move. Somebody behind him did. There was a flash, and the head of the soldier blocking the way came off. The second soldier got as far as enemy and did not finish the word. That's when everyone saw the machete. Fenris had drawn it and used it and put it back inside the time it took for the first man to fall. Enemy attack! The wall opened up on them, and a man stepped out from behind the leader and went through the incoming fire-batting bullets out of the air with his weapon, and the soldiers went backwards shouting for officers. By the time it stopped, there were dozens of dead soldiers in front of the gate, and by the time Li Shang got there, his men were standing in a line, breathing hard, red in the face, physically shaking with the effort of not charging because he had given an order to contain and not engage. And then the visitors did the thing that broke it. The leader made a speech in a language nobody understood, pointing at the bodies on the ground, and the tone made translation unnecessary. And then his men walked forward, picked up the dead soldiers, and put them over their shoulders to carry away. I do not have to tell you what for. Those were men who had shared a barracks in a winter with the people watching. Several soldiers went straight through the order and out the gate, and there were a dozen more bodies on the ground about 4 seconds later. Li Chang came through the crowd and saw all of it, and this famously good-tempered man went red in both eyes at once. "Damn it, these bastards! Sir, I'm going to kill them!" An officer had his pistol out and Zhao Lei had him by the arms. "Zhao Lei, if you stop me again, I'll beat you to death." And Zhao Lei, who wanted this at least as much as he did, roared right back into his face. "Enough! Didn't you see that group is waiting for you to make a move? The leader is right here. It's not your place to show off." Because Zhao Lei had already noticed the thing that mattered. Under 100 people, walking up to a fortified city of 50,000 and executing guards at the door for fun. Nobody does that unless they know something. Li Kang got his voice level, with the veins standing out on his forehead, and said, "Where's the translator? Come out here." A man in uniform and gold-rimmed glasses came forward. "Have you come here to declare war on us?" The translator got 2 languages out, and then the man with the triangular eyes answered in broken Chiming country. "Are you the leader here?" "I am. I am the leader of the Dongye Kingdom. My name is Ma Long. My men already relayed a message to you last time." Li Chang's hand closed. "The icebreaker." Ma Long nodded and grinned. Fenris had the yellow teeth of a man who stopped caring about a great many things some time ago, and he never took his eyes off the wall while he did it. "Yes, since you know, hand over the icebreaker, or we'll kill all the soldiers here today and turn your shelter into my pig farm." The wall came apart. "You dare! Chief, let me fight them to the death. There are so many of us. What are we afraid of?" "Chief, give the order. Let's teach these animals how to be human." Li Chang's face went very still, which is what that man does instead of shouting, and then a second one stepped out. Flat nose, high cheekbones, and much better Chiming country than his boss. "Our leader isn't joking with you. Do you really think we only have this many people?" Fenris took a bamboo whistle off his belt and blew it, and on the white horizon around the shelter, source beasts stood up, about 200 of them, spread into a ring. "Those are our mounts. We rode them here. I hear you call people with special powers evolutionaries. So, let me tell you the truth. We 100 are evolutionary warriors chosen out of a slaughter, and our leader is the strongest of us. If all 100 of us attacked him together, we could not beat him. I urge you to think carefully about whether you want to lend us the icebreaker." 3 days, said Ma Long, standing up. 3 days. I want to see your icebreaker in port." And he turned to leave with his men and the bodies. "Wait." Ma Long turned around. "How?" "Put down the bodies of our soldiers." The whole approach went silent. Ma Long pulled his mouth sideways. "We've come from afar, and we're quite hungry. It's only right that you treat us to some meat, isn't it?" And Li Chang said, in a voice so level it came out worse than shouting, "Are you even human? You're a pack of animals that walked a long way. Did I say you could leave?" And he made a small gesture, and a soldier hit the switch. The shelter's gate is a heavy alloy door on power, designed to shut fast, and it shut. The man with the cheekbones threw himself at it and got a wall of gunfire in the face for his trouble, and the door came down with a boom that separated 100 of the best fighters those tribes have from 200 of their mounts. Ma Long's eyes lit up, and he came off the line straight at Li Qiang, cutting bullets out of the air as he came, and Zhao Lei got in front of his chief and put a round into the space where his head was going to be, and Ma Long smiled at it and kept walking. "Kill." Fenris said it in his own language, and the 100 men behind him put down the bodies and drew. I heard about the rest secondhand, the way you hear about most things. That evening, Wu Tian got back to the shelter and found soldiers scrubbing the approach and the gate shut again, and had to talk his way through a very thorough search to get in. An old man he knows grabbed his sleeve immediately. "Old Wu, let me tell you, those savages, they've all got blue faces and fangs. I heard one of the soldiers was eaten alive and left his bones. That's so scary, Uncle Chen. You shouldn't go out for walks these days. Wu Tian knew perfectly well the old man was embroidering. Fenris also knew there is no upside in telling a frightened man he's wrong. There was a boy standing next to him, young and with an expression too settled for his age. Xiao Yu. The two of them had become friends the honest way. Xiao Yu got bullied at work for being small. Wu Tian stood up for him, and after that, they were stuck with each other. Wu Tian had also given him one of the 7 gene pills. One pill. And Xiao Yu unlocked the gene lock and became an evolutionary, and when the army tested his source power absorption, he came out grade A, which is the rating they give to about one person in a very large number. Fenris had joined an evolutionary squad a few days before. They went back to Wu Tian's room and shut the door. Brother He. This afternoon about 100 foreigners stormed the gate and killed dozens of soldiers. Then Captain Wang got us reformed and we killed dozens of theirs, let about a dozen escape, and lost over 30 of our own. That heavy? Don't we have hundreds of evolutionaries now? Xiao Yu counted it out on his fingers, which is a detail I like, because he is a 12-year-old giving a casualty report. Mainly that leader. They say he's a third order. Most of the rest that got away were second order. That third order, Ma Long, was extremely ruthless. Most of our dead were his. Luckily, there was a woman in our group who blocked him. Her name's Jiang Xin. I heard she used to be a squad captain and got moved down to vice captain for some reason. She's really amazing. The leader said Sister Jiang Xin unlocked the third order gene lock today. Otherwise, a few more of us would have died. Jiang Xin went to third order in the middle of that fight. That girl is going to be a problem for somebody. Oh, and these people can tame beasts too. About 200 first tiers came in from outside the city. More than 100 of them got shot off the wall. I saw Granny Lin next door, heading out to go and look at them. Wu Tian listened to all of it and nodded and asked good follow-up questions, and while he was doing it, he was thinking a thought that I want to lay out plainly. Fenris had initially felt sorry for the boy. No family, nobody in the world. Then the boy accidentally became a grade A evolutionary in an evolutionary squad with access to everything the military says out loud. And Wu Tian decided to use him. Not cruelly. Fenris simply started asking the right questions and letting a lonely 12-year-old talk because Wu Tian's life belongs to me, and this is what he can contribute. Meanwhile, Jiang Xin was doing exactly the same thing, in a different direction, to make herself useful to me. And Xiao Yu was building himself up as fast as he could specifically, so he could one day repay the 2 people who saved him, being Wu Tian and me. 3 people, all quietly working for the same man, none of them aware of the other 2. And that man has never asked a single one of them for anything. Anyway, I was at home with a map. The countries that could reach us fast were the small ones, a single province south. The kind of places that were already full of gray market violence before the world ended. And where the collapse ran hotter and faster than it did here. Anywhere else on the planet is too far to reach Shaw City in a hurry, because Qiming country is enormous, and our own garrisons can't reach each other, never mind help. I put the map away. Shaw City had been a pretty good place to live. Quiet, well run. I sat on my mountain and got stronger, and nobody bothered me. And now there were vegetable thieves standing outside the fence looking at my garden, which meant that sooner or later, whether I liked it or not, it was going to come to my door. I ate a fast dinner and went back to training. Tomorrow I'd go into the city and have a look. And if I happen to run into any of those bedbugs, well, the basin absorbs source power from source beasts. It also absorbs source power from evolutionaries. That same night, in a factory in the North Industrial Zone, a dozen men were sitting around fires eating, and the wire they were cooking on was hissing and dripping fat. Ma Long's face in the firelight was not the face from the gate. Chief, are we just going to let this go? That was the one with the cheekbones. His name is Wang Bing. Fenris is from a country not much bigger than a district by our standards, and before all this, he was a tour guide. When the storm hit and his country came apart, he got lucky, unlocked the gene lock, gathered some people, rose up, and declared himself king, and stayed king for about a month before a neighboring country invaded, which really means their people came over the border to burn and take, because their country was small and their food was gone. Those countries ate each other faster and harder than anywhere in Qiming country did. Everyone at that fire had come out of hell. It shows. Never mind, said Ma Long, and looked at him. Wang Bing's spine went cold, and he changed his sentence in midair. I, Wang Bing, cannot swallow this insult, nor can my brothers. Chief, what do we do? Say the word, and we'll fight those Qiming country people to the death. Ha! Ma Long looked around at what was left in that factory. His voice is hoarse and unpleasant at the best of times. 83 of our men have died. 124 of our beasts are dead, and 36 ran. There are under 40 left outside. This grudge does not go unresolved. So what do we do? Wait, there's no shortage of meat here, so what's wrong with staying a little longer? We'll find an opportunity. This place is heaven. I'm gonna turn it into hell. Wang Bing tried one more question. Fenris asked about the people back in the tribe, the ones who weren't elite, the ones waiting for their fighters to come home. They'd brought their best out and left everyone else behind. And Ma Long said, "Those useless pieces of trash, let them die. There are plenty more here, aren't there?" Nobody else understood, because they were speaking Chiming country. Wang Bing understood perfectly, and broke out in a cold sweat on a night that was 70 below, and nodded with a smile on his face. Then the weather took a hand. The next morning I opened my door to go hunting, and shut it again, because outside was a blizzard that could strip paint. I let the leopard and the ape out to shovel and went back to training and assumed it would blow through by evening. It lasted more than a month. The longest storm in the history of the apocalypse, and it broke 3 days before the first Lunar New Year, and when it broke, Shaw City was a different planet. I opened my door onto a wall of snow. Last night alone had buried the house again. I sent the leopard and the ape out onto the snow layer, onto it, not into it, and they cleared the entrance in a few minutes with the bored competence of animals who now do this professionally. Then I stepped out and stood in actual sunlight for the first time in 5 weeks. It wasn't warm, I didn't care. Nobody wants to live somewhere the sun doesn't come. Wolong Village was gone, not damaged, gone. My own hill had lost more than half its height to the snow. The town below was buried past the roofs, and there was no way to tell where a road had been, because the answer was, wherever nothing is sticking up. If most of those survivors hadn't been moved into the shelter before this hit, that storm would have finished Shaw City on its own. I put the animals away, stepped into my skis, and went down the mountain. And I want to tell you about the ride down, because it is one of the few genuinely good memories I have from that winter. There was no snow falling. There was no wind. The whole city was one unbroken white surface with not a single footprint on it, from the west suburb all the way to the center, and I went across it at speed with nobody alive in any direction. It was as if the entire world was my personal ski resort. Then, a few streets from the center, I saw people. Little groups of them, out with shovels, digging into the snow to find whatever was under it. Anything you can trade for food, anything you can eat. I did that. In my last life, on the rare sunny day, I dug all day for the chance of finding a can. I glided through them, and for about 4 seconds, I was somewhere else. Then I put the skis away and started looking for somewhere quiet to let the dog out. And someone started screaming for help. 5th floor, up ahead. A woman in rags at a window with a child on her hip, waving both arms. "Help! Help us! We're trapped! Could you please help my child get down? Please, kind people. My child's too small to climb, and I'm just a weak woman. I can't carry him." There was a rope out the window, running all the way to the ground. I glanced up and kept walking. The shouting got louder and more expensive. "Kind person, please help us. I can give you food as a reward." I did not look up again. I kept walking at a normal pace, on a normal line, directly under her window. Then something came off the roofline with a whoosh. I moved. A block of ice the size of a wash basin hit the road where I had been about to be, and went a meter deep into packed snow, and left a crater. Do the arithmetic on what that does to a skull. "You're so vicious! If you won't save us, you might as well die." She was already hauling the rope back in, which is the tell. She knew that if she left it, somebody might climb up. Then she saw me standing there, undamaged, looking up at her, and kept going. "Pah! Why didn't I just smash you to death? What a waste of my huge block of ice. I curse you to die a horrible death, to be eaten by wild beasts outside." I narrowed my eyes and crouched down. 2 deep footprints appeared in the snow, and I was level with her window. Her hand stopped. The rope fell out of it. She was still working on the arithmetic when I came in over the sill, put a foot in her chest, and put her across the room, and climbed inside. Then she was on her knees on the freezing floor, banging her forehead on it. "Evolutionary, have mercy. Have mercy. I was just talking nonsense. Please just ignore me." Every internal door in that flat was open. Every room had been picked cleaner than a typhoon would have left it. And there was the child, wrapped up to the eyes, who ran to her and buried his face in her, shaking with his back to me. "My child is so young. Please let us go. I was blinded by greed. I promise I won't do it again." She held him tight. She sobbed, and then she shoved him at me. "Little darling, run!" There was a knife coming up out of the bundle before the sentence finished. The scarf came loose off the child's face, and underneath it was a bearded, middle-aged man, not a child, a dwarf, wrapped up small, which from 100 meters and 5 floors up reads exactly like a boy. And the woman had a silenced pistol out of her coat and up at my head, shrieking with delight. "Ha ha ha! Didn't expect that, did you? You filthy man, die." Gun at my head, knife at my heart, point blank. 2 people who had never missed, doing the routine they had done many times before. Because here's how the routine works. First they try sympathy, a mother, a small child, a rope. If you're decent, you climb, and you find a helpless woman and a toddler in an empty flat, and you relax completely, and some men relax in other ways too, and then it's over. If you don't take the bait, She drops ice on you because a corpse in the street can be collected at leisure. And if you survive that and come up angry, that's the best outcome of all, because now you're inside the room. I had scanned that flat from the street. I caught the dwarf's knife in my bare hand. I turned my head about 4 centimeters, and the bullet went past my ear. The knife snapped. I flicked the broken half at the woman as she was lining up a second shot. She did not get the second shot. The rifle hit the floor, and she went down after it, and whatever she was screaming, the whole building heard it. The dwarf lost his weapon and gained a hand around his throat, and his face went dark red while he tried to pry a steel bar off his windpipe. Spare me, spare my life. Fenris had no idea yet that he had run into a wall. I put a foot on the woman so she would stay where she was, took the dwarf's hands apart, and asked, "How many people have you fooled with this trick?" Fenris gave me every name, every single one. Fenris wanted so badly to live that he became an accountant. 16. 3 of them died because they came up to carry a little boy down out of pure kindness. Most of the rest died angry, which they had planned for. And 2 of the 16 were soldiers, alone, out on a route, who saw a mother and child in a window and went up to actually help. Lin Gang's face went through my head. Lin Gang is a kid in the shelter who once wanted to help me carry a woman I'd rescued, and who is exactly the sort of person who takes that bait. The dwarf's eyes came up hopeful because he'd noticed my expression change, and he made his pitch. "Dage, can you let us go? I'll tell you where I've hidden supplies. You won't get anything if you kill us." Fenris had already decided that once he was outside, he'd find another woman and start again somewhere else. His partner, the one bleeding out 2 meters away, had ceased to exist for him entirely. I had come up there to kill 2 suicidal idiots quickly. After the list, I stopped being in a hurry. I was in that apartment about 15 minutes. I'm not going to describe it. When I went out the window, that room was not a room anymore, and anybody who walks in there is going to have a bad month. I don't think I was cruel. There is no method that is too much for that. I'm not a good person, and I know exactly what I am, but I am at least a person, and those 2 had stopped qualifying as animals. I summoned the Shadowbane, and we ran east until the road stopped making sense. Somebody had been digging, not a few holes. The entire east suburb was pitted with them, and the Shadowbane cleared one crater and nearly went into the next. I put him away and walked. There are 10 times more survivors in the east suburb than anywhere else, and the patrols run through it, which is why people call it the safe zone. After 5 weeks locked indoors, the second the sun came out, the entire population came outside with shovels, and the whole district looks like it's being farmed by moles. The officials had already marked several main roads as no digging, or the district would have been impassable. I found one of those roads, and a long way off, there was gunfire and shouting. Another tide? No. 5 people came down my road on the backs of 5 giant wolves, moving fast. Ferocious faces, bright bloodthirsty eyes. Source power off all 5. 3 second order, 2 first. And every wolf under them was a source beast. My first thought was that the army's tamed animals had gotten loose. My second thought corrected the first, because slung over the back of one of the wolves was a survivor who was past caring about anything. The gunfire was behind them. Soldiers on foot cannot catch wolves. A couple of evolutionaries were trying and losing ground with every step. 2 of the riders turned around in the saddle to make gestures at them and laugh. Then they came around the corner and saw a thin man in casual clothes standing in the middle of the road. They did not slow down. They sped up, and one of them drew a sickle and said something to the others. This is a thing they do. They ride into a district with people in it, run down whoever they can, sling a body over the wolf, and leave. The captured are killed immediately so they can't struggle. Survivors who've been clipped by one of those animals at speed do not get up. And looking at my clothes, thin, ordinary, obviously not army, they concluded I was a speed bump. They got the beginning right and never reached the end. I dropped low as the first wolf came in and took its foreleg off with my military knife. It went down and the rider went over the top. The other 4 are men who have been living on the edge for years, and their reactions were not slow. Weapons came out immediately. I was faster. Second wolf's leg, third wolf's leg. The man on the third wolf had the sickle. Fenris leaned over sideways, got a fistful of fur, and swung at my head with a very committed expression. Now I could jump. Riders are up high, and if I don't jump I can't reach anything that matters. But if you jump, you are in the air, and if there's anyone good waiting for that, you have just handed them your whole life. So I never fight mounted men in the air, I take the mount. But when a man leans down off a wolf to reach you, he is doing your work for you. I turned my wrist, and his head went into the snow and rolled a long way, because momentum doesn't stop when you do. 4 wolves crippled, 1 man dead, 4 men on the ground, looking extremely confused about the sequence of events. They looked at each other, shouted something, and charged. When the evolutionary squad finally caught up, all they found were the bodies of 5 survivors and a lot of blood. 5 foreigners and 5 wolves had gone. Where are the beasts? They ran away? No. Look at the bloodstains. There's far more here than 5 people. And the wolf tracks end here. Maybe they were killed by other beasts, or by evolutionaries. There are no other beast tracks here, only human footprints. Could they have all been killed by a human? Who could possibly have that kind of speed and that kind of strength? Nobody had an answer because with fourth tier strength, that fight took a few breaths and they never even saw it happen. That is a scale of violence they don't have a category for yet. Meanwhile, I put 5 wolves and 5 foreign evolutionaries into my space. I don't feed human remains to my legion. That is a line and it is not moving. But the basin will take source power out of an evolutionary's body, and that is not waste. That's inventory. I got back on the dog once the road smoothed out, and 10 minutes later, I was at the shelter, which caused the usual small riot, and Zhao Lei jogging out to meet me. Comrade 6, it's been a long time. Our leader is already making tea in his office. Please come with me. There were far more people out and about than the last time, so I got looked at the entire way. Also, the shelter has clearly done its homework about the Shadowbane, because this time, nobody ran. They stood at a respectful distance and gawked like it was a parade. Among them, on their way to collect lunch, were Wu Tian and Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu lit up like a lamp and got as far as big before he remembered where he was and shut his mouth so hard it clicked. Wu Tian's expression did not move at all, which is a skill, and then he looked at the boy sideways. What's wrong, Shaolin? Seeing such a big wolf is terrifying. The chief said before that the man and the wolf are friends of our shelter. There's nothing to be afraid of. And he stood there watching me go past with his chest out and a feeling in it that I did not learn about until much later, which was, that's my boss. That wolf saved my life. I came to the shelter that day for exactly one reason. I wanted a source artifact. I have been swinging a wheel battle axe since before the freeze. It is 2 meters of forged metal shaped like a bad idea, and I love it. And ever since I used Tang Ming's little sword, my axe has felt like a stick. If I could recast that axe in source artifact material, the weight, my strength, and source power running through it, the thing would be effectively indestructible, and my combat power goes up a category. So, I brought the Shadowbane inside with me, which I do partly as a deterrent and partly as an insurance policy. I don't think the officials would move on me without a reason. I have never once bet my life on what I think people won't do. I left the dog at the foot of the office building and went up, and about halfway up the stairs, I swept the office out of habit. Li Qiang was not alone. There were 2 old men in there with gray hair, and my feet actually broke stride because I knew both of them. Gao Lin and Wang Tao. If you did not grow up in Qiming country, I cannot fully explain this. These 2 men were the pillars of the state. I have seen those faces on a screen more times than I can count, in 2 separate lifetimes, always at a distance of about 1,000 kilometers and 1 social class. And they were sitting in a prefabricated office in a frozen city waiting for me. I took a very quiet breath, put the excess emotion somewhere, and walked in. Li Chang got up smiling. Brother Wang, you've arrived. Come, sit down, have some hot tea first. Fenris poured from a thermos. It came out steaming, and stopped steaming almost immediately, because indoors at that temperature, most liquids are already thinking about freezing. I picked the cup up, smelled it, made a small performance of appreciating it, and put it down. Tea is a genuinely precious thing now. You cannot grow it anywhere on this planet anymore. I don't drink things other people pour. It's not personal. Do you know these 2? I don't need to introduce them, do I? I know, I said. I used to watch TV too. Gao Lin smiled and inclined his head. Wang Tao boomed at me. Haha, you're the Lin Yong that Ah Jun keeps talking about? Not bad. Just for your composure and courage, I'll think more highly of you. Anyone else in this country would have gone bright red and started performing. I said nothing at all. The temperature in the room dropped about 4 degrees. I should explain that I have a defect. Socially, I am somewhere between reserved and defective, and it has gotten considerably worse since a girl I trusted for 3 years handed me to a man who wanted me dead. Li Shang rescued it. Brother Wang, is there something you need this time? Because all 3 of them knew I don't visit. That's why the other 2 were in the room at all. They'd been wanting a close look at me, and I'd finally given them a reason. I've come because I need Chief Xiao's help with something. Fenris sat up straight. Brother Wang, just tell me. You've helped us so many times. If it's within my power, I will do it. I smiled. I wonder to what extent you have mastered the casting of source artifacts. While that conversation was starting across the square, somebody was reporting to Tang Ming that I was in the building. Fenris had stopped having his people check everyone at the gates, too high profile, and Li Chang was starting to look at him strangely. But the arrival of a masked man on a wolf the size of a bus is not something you can miss, and Tang Bo came in at a run. Young master, that person is here again. Should we attack him this time? She made a throat-cutting gesture with her eyes full of intent. Wu Lei, standing next to Tang Ming, said nothing. Tang Ming was reading, an actual paper book. Fenris looked up. You're going to kill him? Tangbo's face stiffened. That person's battle pet is completely different in size from what our source told us. It's very likely it has evolved. Fourth tier? You've all experienced what that kind of combat power does. With just the few of us, we should probably take a break. Tangbo was not satisfied. Did we just suffer in silence last time? That wolf advanced that fast. The saber-toothed tiger must have been taken by this person. Young master, I cannot swallow this insult. And Tang Ming, without lifting his eyes from the page, you'll breathe your last when you die. Nobody in that room had any idea what he was thinking. Fenris had lost his sword, lost his prey, been tricked, been knocked unconscious in his own bed by a mental attack, and he did not appear to be angry at all. Fenris closed the book. Is there still no news from Pan Hong? Not yet, said Wu Lei. But judging by the timeline, Pan Hong should already be on the way with the clan elders. They might arrive soon. Hold that thought too. Back upstairs, Li Chang had said yes before I finished asking. As long as Brother Wang can bring in the source material, I'll cover the cost of everything else needed for the production, which sounds enormously generous until you understand the numbers. Since the military figured out how to forge these things, they have produced exactly 3 source artifacts. 3. In total. Not because it's hard to forge, because there is no material. Not every source beast has a part that conducts source power. And there's a pattern. The higher the tier, the better the odds. On a first tier, the chance is essentially 0. The official forces have killed a truly obscene number of source beasts and gotten 3 pieces out of all of it. So, Li Chang isn't being stingy. Fenris simply cannot afford it. How do you determine which materials conduct source power? Brother Wang, wait a minute. Fenris went to the door and sent a soldier to the research institute with an order to bring up a source artifact. Then he explained, our research team has developed a measuring machine that takes in source power. We call it the Source Artifact Measurement Machine. It stores 100 points. You put it against the material, and if it's source material, a yellow light comes on. If it isn't, red. And it doesn't need electricity. It just consumes 10 points of source power each time. I sat up. The measurement device you're talking about runs on source power? 2 months. 2 months from being handed a broken sword tip to building a machine that runs on a form of energy that did not exist on this planet 3 seasons ago. Li Chang looked extremely pleased with himself. That's good, isn't it? Our shelter has some of the best researchers in Qiming country. And source power is a very magical form of energy. And using it isn't as complicated as we uncouth people imagine. I won't explain the specifics because I can't explain it clearly anyway. While we waited for the machine, I asked Gao Lin a question I have wanted to ask a specific person for a very long time. When did you know the solar storm was coming? The 2 old men looked at each other. Gao Lin's face went somewhere between bitter and relieved. Actually, none of our space monitoring equipment detected that solar storm. It was as if some mysterious force was shielding it from detection until it was almost on top of us. Sit with that sentence. The entire planet's early warning system, and something switched it off. But before we found it, one of my staff saw a post online. So when we confirmed the storm was real, I immediately made every preparation I could. I am very glad I was wearing a mask, because I wrote that post. I wrote it in a rented room in San Yuan City with about 11 weeks left on the clock, knowing exactly what was coming, because I had already lived through it, and I posted it in the certainty that it would be read by nobody and laughed at by anyone who did. Somebody read it. Somebody with a badge read it, and took it upstairs, and got a hearing. A post? I said. Somebody posted online that they knew that solar storm was coming. Who has that kind of ability? I don't know. There was too little time. When we confirmed it was really coming, there was an enormous amount to do, and it was all very rushed. Tracing an IP takes time, and by the time the storm hit, every electronic record on the planet was gone. We could never find them. Fenris sighed. I blinked and did not trust myself to speak for a second. Every researcher in that institute is alive because of 11 paragraphs I wrote at 2 in the morning and expected nothing from. Then the door went and the machine arrived, escorted by 2 evolutionaries, which tells you the value. Inside a padded box was something that looked like a mobile phone from about 30 years ago. 1 button, 1 small display, and nothing else. Li Chang picked it up and fed it. The numbers on the display climbed 1, 5, 15, 27, 49. I could feel the source power going out of him. It stopped at 100. It can only hold 100 units. Any more may damage it. So, Li Chang is an evolutionary. Second order. I'd known that since the first time I stood close to him. What surprised me was that he'd just shown me, casually, in front of 2 people, without making a thing of it. It's very simple to use. Put it on the material, press this button, and a yellow light means it's source material. Brother Wang, how about giving it a try? I took it. Cool, smooth, metal, ugly, and running on an energy source that didn't exist last summer. I scanned it with mental strength while I held it, which is when it got interesting. There are no circuit boards in there. There are no wires. There is a metal tube connecting the light, the screen, and the button. That's it. That is not a machine. That is a pipe. I put it against a stainless steel cup and watched the stored power run out through that tube and simply cease to exist on contact with air. Red light, 3 seconds, off. Finished? That was the test, and it's over. I handed it back. If this is how you test materials, you don't need the machine. Just have an evolutionary push source power into the thing and see whether it goes in. Making it store power first seems redundant. Gao Lin, who had been quiet the whole time, said, with a snap in it, "This can be used by ordinary people." Oh, yes it can, because if you charge it in advance, an ordinary human being can operate it. Which means if they can build one thing that runs on source power without needing an evolutionary to hold it, they can build another, and then another. And one day, an ordinary person kills a source beast without ever unlocking anything. That is what those two old men were doing in that room. Not looking at me, working on the actual problem. We talked for a while after that about where the shelter goes next, and I understood perfectly what the tea and the machine and the two national figures were for. They were showing me the assets. And then Li Chang asked, "Brother Wang, have you thought about my suggestion, specially invited officer?" I sat with it a while because it deserved that much, and then gave him my actual answer. Cooperation is possible. Joining is out of the question. I'm used to being free. 3 reasons, and I'll give them to you honestly. 1, we get on. If I flatly refuse, that ends, and I may need this shelter again. Fenris has never once shortchanged me on payment, and I'm not going to sour it over a title. 2, cooperation means whatever enemies or purges or coups this organization generates are not my problem. I can walk away from a partnership at any time and owe nobody an explanation. Membership is a leash with good food on the end of it. 3, Dassing, and this is the one that actually decided it. I have been in Shaw City long enough to watch these people work. They genuinely are trying to get humanity, or at least the people of this country, through this alive. That is not what I saw in San Yuan City in my last life. San Yuan City taught me what a shelter looks like when the men at the top are the worst people in it. So, worth trying. The 100 free gene pills a month is icing. Also, I said, drop the officer title. To the outside world, I have no connection with you. When you need something, I'll consider whether to do it. Easy job with a good payout, yes. Something likely to kill me, no, and I will not pretend otherwise. The 3 of them looked at each other. Gao Lin nodded. Wang Tao nodded. They'd already worked out my terms before I got there. They'd guessed right. Li Chang stood up and put his hand out. "Then let's do as you say, Brother Wang. Please take care of me in the future." "I'll go and get the materials," I said. "I'll be back this afternoon with the design drawings." They walked me to the door and watched me leave, and only when I was completely out of sight did Gao Lin say, "To nobody." Very good. Now, the materials. I went out of the shelter, made sure nothing was following me, found an empty building nobody had lived in for a year, climbed in, scanned twice, and started taking pieces of dead animal out of my pocket dimension. I started with the saber-tooth's fangs because if anything on that animal was going to be special, it was the part that did the work. 2 of them, about half a meter each, still with blood on them. When I cut them out of the skull, I put a notch in a bone-chopping knife doing it. I pushed source power in. It went in like the fang wanted it. The other one worked too. I tried a leg bone. Resistance. Not it. I went through the rest of the animal piece by piece and found one more. The tail. Skinned, a saber-tooth's tail is basically a long bone whip. Holding it with power running through it, my hand told me it was a weapon before my head did. So, a single source beast can carry more than one. Then I worked down through everything 3rd tier I owned, which took a while, and came out with 5 more. 7 pieces on the floor in front of me, 2 saber-tooth fangs and a tail, a lion's teeth, a wolf's pelt, a boar's hide, a leopard's hind leg bone, and a lynx's paw. 18 claws on it, but small, so it counts as 1. I stacked them all together. I put my hand on the pile, and I said, in my head, the 2 words that make everything else about my life work. Item, duplication. There was a second pile. I picked up a fang out of it and pushed power in, and it took it, and it went unnaturally sharp in my hand. The copies work. That costs 1 use. The counter now reads 1,507, and that's after everything I've already spent. The officials have 3 of these in existence. I can make 1,500. I'm not going to. There's no point flooding a market I have to keep buying in, but it does mean the price of a source artifact, for me, is the effort of picking it up. I kept the copies. I put the originals somewhere sensible. I packed everything into a hiking backpack along with the drawings for the wheel battle axe, checked the time, fed myself and the dog and a space full of howling animals, and went back. The gate let me straight through, and a soldier escorted me all the way to the office block, glancing sideways at us the whole time. I could feel that look without turning my head. It's not fear exactly. It's the way a man looks at a piece of artillery on his own side. Upstairs, the two old men had gone. Li Chang was working through a stack of paper. Brother Wang, please wait a moment. I'll be right there. A few minutes later, he came over. I opened the backpack. These are all source material. Something happened to his face. Can I take a look? I handed it over. It weighed several dozen kilos, which for either of us is nothing. Fenris laid all 7 on the coffee table and looked at them for a while. As expected of you, Brother Wang, you have more of these things than our entire army's inventory. Fenris didn't need the machine. Fenris tested all 7 himself with his own power, one after another. I gave him the drawings. I want you to help me make a weapon of this size and shape. Fenris looked and laughed out loud. Isn't this the weapon you used before? Ha 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 ha. I like this thing at first sight. It's so imposing. And then silently he did the sum for the materials, and stopped laughing quite so much, because the military's actual reserves are thinner than anyone outside that room understands, and he had already promised. Good, good, leave it to me, but we'll have to ask the Research Institute exactly how much source material it takes. The matter of compensation wasn't settled properly, I said. For forging this, I'll give the shelter the lynx claws as payment. I had decided that before I walked in. The axe is enormous. Whatever it eats in materials, it eats a lot of it, and I am going to want more from these people later. Short weapons, armor, other things. There are rare metals in that alloy, and there's the process and the sheer electricity of the casting itself. And I don't like being carried. We have a partnership, not a dependency. If I take everything for free, even a man like Li Chang ends up with people in his own building asking why. Also, obviously I can copy the thing I'm paying with. I pushed the lynx paw across the table. Li Chang looked at it with a complicated expression, and I want to tell you what was actually happening in his head, because I learned it later. Fenris had been intending to overdraw his own personal supply allocation for the next several months to cover my axe. Out of his own quota, to avoid a fairness problem inside his own shelter. Fenris had not expected me to pay. I may need to forge other source artifacts in the future, I said. I'll have to trouble Chief Xiao then. His opinion of me went up another floor, which I could see happening. All right, since Brother Wang has said so, I'll accept. I'll have someone assess the value of this and convert it into contribution points in your name. From then on, materials and labor for anything you cast get deducted from your account. What do you think? Extremely thorough, no objections. Brother Wang, if you don't mind, stay at the shelter for the next few days. I'll have a room prepared. Once your source artifact is finished, you can leave or stay as you please. I had been going to ask. Not because I distrust him. I don't think Li Chang would skim my materials. I have no opinion at all about the other several hundred people in that building, and those are extremely valuable objects, and a man watching the forge is a man whose forge does not develop mysterious quality problems. Fenris had said about 10 days. I can afford 10 days. Then I'll have to trouble Chief Xiao. Can I personally watch the casting? Of course, I'll take you to see where we make them right now. The Research Institute is under the central square, down through a heavily guarded building with doors and no windows, through several checkpoints, into what turned out to be a lift. I assumed a few meters down. The lift took 10 full seconds. 13 meters underground, the doors opened onto incandescent lights and cold blank walls. And it did not look like the high-tech laboratory I'd been imagining. It looked clean, and it had a great many doors. And I went to sweep it with mental strength and hit a wall, not metaphorically. My power went into that wall and stopped, and I had not experienced that in a very long time. Although this was built in a hurry and doesn't look pretty, Li Chang was saying, we actually used the best materials we could find. There are special materials in the walls, high density. It isolates electromagnetic fields and it's waterproof, frostproof, and fireproof. Our researchers are confident that if that solar storm happened again, it wouldn't affect this area. I put my hand on it. Cold, solid, and extremely unfriendly to me, personally. At that point, my mental strength had grown enough that my closed-lock scan reached 80 meters. Down there, it dropped to a bit over 20. And that institute is a great deal bigger than 20 meters. Then, a thick metal door. And when he opened it, a wall of heat came out and my goggles fogged instantly. The lab's heated for the convenience of the research. If Brother Wang feels hot, you can hang your clothes here. There are cameras, nothing gets stolen. Fenris took off his military coat. I said I was fine. I wasn't wearing much to begin with. I just took the goggles off and put them in my bag, which meant that for the first time, Li Chang saw my eyes properly. Fenris didn't say anything, but I felt it land, clear whites, smooth skin around them. Those are a young person's eyes, and there is no faking it. They had guessed I was young. They had not guessed this young. Down a corridor, another door, and finally the laboratory I'd been picturing. The researchers glanced up and went straight back to work, which I appreciated. And then an old man came at us like a thrown object. Chen Yi, director of the Research Institute. 60-something, hair going, and the first thing he saw was not the leader of the largest shelter in the country. It was a stranger in his lab. Chief Xiao, Why did you bring outsiders into the research institute? Old song, this is Comrade Lin Yong. You're Lin Yong? His eyes went round. If that man had a beard, I think it would have gone up on end. I nodded. Fenris crossed the room at a speed that had no business coming out of a body that shape. With a light in his eyes, I could not interpret it all, and grabbed for my arm. Are there any more mutant plants left? Li Chang got between us. Dean Song, Brother Wang is here to build a source artifact. Building a source artifact? Fenris came back to Earth. No, there are no materials to build any source artifact. We agreed to invest in researching those two source material items. I want to note that at no point did this man's tone contain any awareness that he was speaking to the head of state of a frozen city, or to a person who had recently killed a beast king. Li Cheng gave me a look that said, "Please be patient," took out the lynx paw and handed it over. "This is the payment from Brother Wong. Have someone estimate how many contribution points these claws are worth." Fenris supplied the source material for his own source artifact. Fenris didn't use anything of yours. The old man's eyes lit up, and I finally identified the emotion. It's not greed, it's fanaticism. Are you sure? Li Chang confirmed it, and a 60-year-old man produced a smile I would describe as childlike and said, "Ha ha 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 ha, great. We have research materials again," and walked off with my payment, having entirely forgotten that either of us existed. Li Chang gave me a tired look. "Brother Wong, please don't mind him. That's just how he is. Fenris has given his whole life to research, and he's persistent about it. Fenris isn't very polite, and sometimes he's rude, but he's a very simple, very honest old man." I shook my head. I didn't mind. I have watched scientists on television my whole life, and always thought they seemed a bit odd. I now understood that television was going easy on them. We followed him into the next lab and walked into the sound of a room losing its mind. "It's a third-order source material. Source power capacity 2,110. That's higher than anything we've had. Dean Song, is this the latest find from the military? With this, our progress accelerates enormously." Chen Yi remembered we existed, and told the room, pointing at me, "This material was brought over by this kid." And every head in that laboratory turned around. I have stood in front of a fourth-tier beast king. I wanted on record that the scientists were worse. I swept them out of habit, and every single one of them was an ordinary human being with no source power at all. And I still had the distinct feeling of being an item on a menu. Li Qiang, sensing that the meeting was getting away from him. "Dean Song, let's estimate the contribution points for this material first. Then it can go into the warehouse. Now. Source material is so new and so rare that no private individual has ever handed one in, and the shelter has no exchange standard for it, which meant they had to invent a price. In front of me. Out loud. Chen Yi glanced at me, and I could see him remembering that I had cleaned out his entire stock of gene medicine the last time I was here, and deciding that this time he was going to win. "This piece is actually quite nice. As for the price," and a bespectacled researcher next to him looked at the numbers on the instrument and said earnestly, "A third-order source material would need at least 2 million contribution points, right?" Chen Yi's eyebrow twitched. 2 million? Are you kidding me? Another researcher, older, gave the first one a disapproving look. This one was a student Chen Yi had personally trained for over a decade, and Chen Yi visibly relaxed because his boy was about to talk the price down. Under his director's approving gaze, the man said, "Personally, I think 3 million is a reasonable offer. Think about it. This is a third-order source material, not a first or second. Something this precious deserves more contribution points, doesn't it?" Chen Yi said nothing, in a very loud way. And then the rest of the room joined in, because scientists cannot help themselves. And within 90 seconds, it had stopped being a valuation and become an auction where every bidder was on the buying side. 3.5 million. Chen Yi could not get a word in. "Cough, cough!" Li Chang got in there fast before it hit 10. "Then let's go for 4 million. Brother Wang, what do you think of this price? You don't know the cost of rice until you run the household." If Li Chang could have seen the corners of my mouth under the mask, he would have known exactly what I thought of that price. "I think it's acceptable. Let's go with the price Chief Xiao mentioned. 4 million contribution points. That's 400 gene pills worth. For a copy. I had estimated 3 at most, so I'd like to publicly thank the entire staff of the Research Institute." Then Li Chang handed over my drawings and asked how much material a weapon like that would take, and Chen Yi's face went dark because he was still sulking about being outbid by his own students, whom he was mentally referring to as pig brains. Fenris snatched the drawings out of my hand and glanced at them. And then he stopped being a sulking old man and became a professional, instantly, like a switch. "Such a large weapon? Making the entire thing a source artifact? That would require a lot of materials." "My requirement," I said, "is that once it's forged, source power can be poured through the whole weapon to get maximum attack power. As for the materials, don't worry about them, as long as it can be done. Fenris looked up over the drawings with pure suspicion. For a source artifact that size, it may take 3 source materials on its own. Do you have that much? And let me be clear first, you can't take back the one you already gave us. Otherwise, I won't make it. And behind him, the researchers physically packed the lynx paw away and put it somewhere, as if that would stop me. Li Chang rubbed his temples. Fenris told me later that every time he comes down here, he feels like an adult who has walked into a playground. I put my backpack down and opened it. Can you help me see which of these I can use? I usually like to kill source beasts. The moment that bag came open, the room lit up. Chen Yi crossed the floor again at that same impossible speed and started pulling things out one at a time. These are all source material? My God, I've never seen this much source material in my life. What species has teeth this big? Chen Bo, look, doesn't that piece look like the Tier 3 wolf pelt in our warehouse? And in the middle of all that, one of them stopped. Source beast? Did you just say source beast? My heart moved about a centimeter. The official term is mythical beast, monster. Nobody in that shelter says source beast. Nobody in the world says source beast, except me, because I have spent one full previous lifetime hearing what everyone would eventually call them. I blinked twice, unhurried. What? They're all beasts that evolved through source power. Wouldn't source beast be more appropriate? I usually call them source beasts. And the researcher said, you think so too? We've wanted to rename them source beast for ages. I want you to understand the relief. The word monster came from survivors. The Research Institute has been quietly furious about it for months, because as rigorous people they know these animals exist, because they absorbed source power, and the name should say so. But monster caught on across every city with a radio, and Li Chang's position had been that it's just a name and there are bigger problems, so the correction kept getting postponed. I had just accidentally become the first outsider to agree with them about anything. Actually, I said, source beast is better, more fitting. Chief Xiao, did you hear that? I hope you can get this name change implemented as soon as possible, said by a researcher to the leader of the shelter in the tone of a man addressing his subordinate. Li Chang nodded with a small pained smile. I see. Then they started running my materials. The first several were fine. Third order after third order, impressive. But after the initial shock, the room adjusted. Then Chen Yi put the tiger's tail into the machine. The numbers climbed and stopped. And the laboratory was paused. 5,150. Anything above 3,000 means the animal it came from was 4th tier. And there has been exactly one 4th tier source beast in Sha City. The Beast King of the Last Tide, a saber-toothed tiger with atavistic traits, which is a research target every one of those people had been dreaming about. 3 seconds of silence, and then the room started breathing hard. 4th tier? Am I seeing things? Is that the Beast King? Beastmaster? The Beastmaster I've been dreaming of studying? Am I dreaming? Somebody pinch me. Chen Yi, at his age, abandoned all dignity, grabbed my arm and shook it. Is that the Beast King? Is this the source material from the Beast King? Every eye in that room was trying to burn a hole in me. Even Li Chang was staring, because after Zhao Lei's report, he had suspected I couldn't have handled that tiger, and then his men found no trace of the corpse in the cleanup, and he'd told himself it had probably fled to the deep mountains. Fenris now knew otherwise. I detached my arm from the old man and said flatly, "Which Beast King are you talking about? I've killed more than one 4th order source beast. I want to be clear that I knew bringing that tail in here would expose me as the man who killed the tiger. I decided that was survivable. Killing it didn't hurt the officials. I solved a problem they couldn't. The only people whose interests I damaged were Tang Ming's, so the precaution I actually needed was against the Fenris family, and I had already taken it. Before coming in, I'd reshaped the second pair of fangs into a different profile and weight, so they'd read as a different animal. I really did go all out for this axe. What? You have more? Chen Yi does not carry complicated thoughts around. Fenris believed me on the spot. That's what my reputation is for. Everyone in the official shelter knows the name Lin Yong, so when Lin Yong says something absurd, the room's instinct is to update its model of the world rather than doubt the man. Can I take a look? I didn't bring it today. I'll show Dean Song when I have the chance. I can lie without moving my face. Okay. Fenris said good 3 times. Don't worry, Kid Wang. I'll personally oversee the casting this time, and I guarantee it'll be done beautifully. Fenris had entirely forgotten that 90 seconds earlier, he wanted me dead over 4 million points. Then I'll have to trouble Dean Song, I said. You're a really nice person. Haha, no trouble at all. It took most of the day to settle the design. The final build takes the 2 fangs, the tail, and the teeth of a 3rd-tier giant lion, plus a list of auxiliary metals as long as my arm, all of which I specified at the highest available grade, because I was not going to skimp on the one thing I plan to hold when something tries to kill me. Estimated cost, over 2 million contribution points, over a week of casting, and an amount of electricity that made two of the researchers wince. There is nobody else in that shelter who could pay for this. Not one person. Not even Li Qiang. He runs the place. But moving resources on that scale needs a vote of the entire senior leadership, and everybody else would need to hunt source beasts until the sun came back. By the time we came up, it was going dark. "Brother Wang, it's late. Come and have dinner with me. Let me show you some hospitality." I was about to refuse and then remembered that I had not eaten in front of anyone in this shelter, ever, and that a man who never eats or drinks starts to look like something other than a man. So, I thought about my appetite, and then about the Shadowbanes. "My battle pet and I probably have a big appetite." Fenris laughed. "The military tames source beasts now, so he knows what they cost to feed." "It's okay, I can afford to treat you. I'll make sure you're full. Only, we don't light fires in the unit, so if you want it hot, it has to be the mess hall. I usually eat there, but if Brother Wang minds, I'll have it delivered." There is no special catering in that shelter, and there is none specifically because Li Qiang refuses it first, which means no capital official can demand it either. My opinion of him went up again. "No need, I don't mind eating in the mess hall." Walking over, the soldiers going to collect food saluted him from a distance, and then completely failed to stop staring at me and the dog. With the chief physically present, nobody dared cluster, so they simply kept turning around. Li Qiang shook his head, entertained. "Brother Wang, you don't know. These guys in my unit see you as a hero and a role model. They dream about taming a battle pet like your Shadowbane. Look at them. If I weren't here, they'd have you surrounded. Isn't it a bit too much? No? Ha 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 ha. Brother Wang, you've underestimated your charm." And then, still smiling, with something else behind his eye, "No matter the era, the strong and those who are crowned with the name of justice become the heroes of that era. Even if they never become kings, they leave marks on history, especially in chaotic times. Isn't Brother Wang just such a figure?" I did not answer that. Fenris didn't push. "We've arrived." The mess hall was enormous and full. The Shadowbane was never getting through the door, and Li Qiang had thought of that in advance. On the open ground to the right of the entrance, several soldiers were standing guard over the corpse of a first-tier source beast, brought over on his orders. A whole source beast carcass, for a dog, in a city where meat is currency. "Shadowbane," he said, walking up to a 3-meter wolf. "Eat as much as you can until you're full. It's on me." The Shadowbane looked at a frozen first-tier wild boar lying in the snow, and then at Li Qiang, with an expression of deep social pain. Because this animal has not eaten anything below 3rd tier since the beast tide, and at home he gets his meat fresh, warm, and frequently grilled. But he is a clever dog, and he can read a room, so he walked over with small, polite steps, tore a leg off, and started gnawing on it. I went inside. I was not worried about leaving him. Nobody in that shelter could hurt him, and if somebody found a way, I was 40 meters and half a second away. Trouble arrived about 15 minutes later. Just as the gate was closing for the night, the soldiers on the switch did a last sweep, saw nothing, and pressed the button. And in the moment between the door starting to move and the door closing, 5 people came through it like a draft. "Who goes there?" The doors boomed shut behind them. One of the 5 stepped forward, thin man, thinner than he used to be, exhausted. And the guards recognized him, Pan Hong, who had been out of Sha City for a long time. "These are 4 elders of our Fenris family," he said. "Why don't you have your leader come out to greet them?" The soldiers looked at each other. They know exactly how much trouble the hidden families are, so the little captain said he'd report it and jogged off. The 5 of them waited and waited. Pan Hong had been traveling for days and wanted very badly to lie down, and after a while, impatience got onto his face, and he turned to the elders with a smile. "Elders, why don't we go to the young master's place first? At this hour, Li Qiang and the others might be having dinner." The 4 Fenris family elders were in black robes with gold trim, in fabric that had no business existing in this world anymore. Different heights, different builds, all middle-aged. The short, thin one with the goatee is called Zhou Sheng. Zhou Sheng stroked his beard and said slowly, "Now that we're here, we should greet the leader here first. Otherwise, it would seem our Fenris family is impolite." Pan Hong laughed a dry little laugh. "Yes, then let's wait a little longer. I'll have someone inform the young master." 10 minutes later, the little captain came back, alone. "Distinguished guests who have traveled from afar. It is getting dark, and the chief instructed me to arrange accommodation for you first. The chief has important business right now. Once your rooms are ready, our soldiers will bring dinner and daily necessities. I would have paid money to see that." "What earth-shattering matter does your leader have to discuss?" said Zhou Sheng. "Have you told him who we are?" "I've already said that, but the chief is very busy. Fenris said that since you elders have come from afar, it would be better for you to go and rest first." "Humph. The leader of a tiny Sha city these days has quite the airs. That was the fat one. Greasy hair, considerable width. His name is Ma Ping. They were winding themselves up to say something worse when Tong Ming arrived with Wu Lei and Tong Bo. Elder. Meanwhile, inside the mess hall, I was having dinner. Since the fourth gene lock, my appetite has stopped being a normal biological function. By that point, I had eaten enough food for 10 men and was still going, on the principle that I was here and somebody else was paying. Halfway through, some soldiers came in and reported something quietly to Li Qiang, and since it was clearly meant to be quiet, I did not listen in. Fenris came back looking normal, so I went back to eating. Then more soldiers came, and this time, they didn't bother avoiding me. Chief, that wild boar over there has been eaten. Li Qiang nodded. It's okay. Didn't I say if it can finish a whole one, let it eat as much as it wants? The soldier hesitated. Then he glanced at me, working through my 13th boxed meal, and said, but that giant wolf doesn't seem to be full yet. Li Qiang looked at me. I did not look up, and he finally understood what I had meant when I said the two of us had a big appetite. It is indeed, he said later, a tiny bit big. Have someone go to the warehouse and bring another one over. One good thing about an extreme cold apocalypse is that meat does not spoil. Any dead source beast flash freezes. You put the corpses in a big open area, and the environment does the rest. I was finishing my 15th box when my ears moved. I could almost hear the Shadowbane outside. I opened the scan out of pure habit, and there was Tang Ming standing next to my dog with several people. The Shadowbane had put his food down. Fenris was standing up, watching them, and making a low sound in his chest. The group had been on their way to find Li Qiang. They had walked past the mess hall and stopped because there was a wolf outside it, the size of a house. Tang Ming opened his mouth to explain what he was looking at, and I made a mistake. I had my scan on them, and I had not been careful because I had gotten used to being the strongest sensor in any room. Zhou Sheng's head came up. Who? And a mental attack came at me across the square like a thrown blade. I felt fourth order source power on him about a quarter of a second before it arrived, and I pulled my scan in and let it go past. Not because I couldn't have met it, because meeting it tells him exactly how big I am. I had already practiced this with Jinx. If you gather source power inside your body and wrap it in your own mental strength, anyone at your level or below cannot feel you at all. There was now a fourth order elder standing 40 meters from my dog with 3 third orders around him. Tang Ming looked at Zhou Sheng's face. Elder, what happened? Someone was spying on us using mental strength. All 4 of them changed expression at once. Somebody had swept them, and none of them had noticed until it was too late to catch. That means whoever it was is stronger than all 4. Then Zhou Sheng scanned the area himself. Fenris paused on Li Qiang, inside. Fenris paused on Jiang Xin, walking across the square, and he said, that fluctuation wasn't strong. It was something that just advanced to the 3rd tier, and only recently activated its mental strength sensing. Its ability to conceal itself is likely very strong. Highly probable this is a tier 3 mental strength talent. Fenris was reading it off the fact that my scan had been closed lock, which produces almost no signal, and he could not conceive of a 4th order existing outside the hidden families, so he built a story that fit his assumptions. Fenris decided it was Jiang Xin. The other 3 exhaled. A natural mental strength talent is much easier to deal with than a 4th stage evolver. And then, having settled that, they went back to looking at the wolf. The soldiers assigned to guard the Shadowbane's dinner had been pushed aside by the group. They didn't hear the conversation. One of them spoke up. Young Master Fenris, this is our leader's esteemed guest's battle pet, not one of our troops. Please leave, otherwise we cannot guarantee the consequences if it goes berserk. And Ma Ping, the fat one, said, what a joke, you beast. If you dare to move, I can kill you with one punch. Now, Tang Ming had not yet told Pan Hong or the elders anything about me or my dog. Those 4 had no idea what they were standing next to. Before Tang Ming could open his mouth, Zhou Sheng spoke first. Don't kill it. I think this beast is quite intelligent. I should take it as my mount, so I don't have to run on 2 legs next time we travel. The soldier swallowed his temper. Gentlemen, this is our leader's honored guest's battle pet. It is already taken. And 3 of the 4 elders laughed, exchanged a look, and one of them said, if it has an owner, then killing its owner would make it ownerless. Here's the thing about my dog that those men did not have in their files. Fenris understands every word of that language. Nobody saw him move. There was a gust of wind, and then an elder of the Fenris family was on his back with a wolf's claws in his chest. Zhou Sheng reacted fastest, and put a fist into the space where the Shadowbane's head had been, and hit air because it wasn't there anymore. And then Tang Ming's voice, 1 full second too late to be an accident. Watch out, that's a 4th order source beast. At the same moment, Li Qiang's voice came from the mess hall door. What happened? We came out together. The soldiers started explaining, and Zhou Sheng drew a sword off his back with a sound like a bell and went straight at my dog. Stop, said Li Qiang. Zhou Sheng did not hear him, in the way that people do not hear things. Tong Ming and another elder were feeding the injured one a blue pill. Li Chang's eyebrows came down. "Young Master Fenris, tell your people to stop." And Tang Ming stood up, glanced at Li Chang, glanced at me, and gave him a lazy little smile. "I can't command the elders of our Fenris family. Even my father has to give them some face. The clan elders are still angry. Chief Xiao, it's best not to meddle." Translation: that is not your animal, and if you put your body in front of it, you are choosing a side against the 1,000-year family. Out on the snow, my dog put his forepaws up, as if he intended to catch a sword. Zhou Sheng's face did something contemptuous, because a beast is a beast, and this one was apparently going to try and grab a source artifact with its hands. Fenris poured power into the blade, and the cold light on it doubled. Every soldier in that yard was worried for the Shadowbane. I stood there and did not move, because I know what I own. If the saber-toothed tiger's combat power was 100, the Shadowbane's, after the amount of training I have put through him, is 200. Fenris is not just strong. Fenris is experienced. He has been fighting alongside me for a year, and he does not only use force, he cheats. If I did not know him inside out, he would have taken me apart the first time we sparred. Zhou Sheng's sword went through the space where the claws were. The claws weren't there. "Careful!" Fenris heard the shout, and then took a hind leg in the back, and went into the snow, and only stayed off his face because he is genuinely quick. That is a source beast throwing a feint. Under the eyes of everyone in that square, an elder of the Fenris family, a man addressed as elder by direct descendants, who has served the family head for decades, had just been kicked over by an animal. Fenris went red to the ears. Fenris came up to do it again, and Li Chang and I both walked out onto the snow. Li Chang put himself in front of my dog. I went past him and scratched the dog's neck. "Get out of my way!" Zhou Sheng came round with a sword up and murder all over him, ready to go through whoever was standing there, and about 150 rifles came up at once, in a single clean sound. Every evolutionary in that yard had already moved between him and their chief, and was one thought away from opening a gene lock. Being on the wrong end of that many barrels at once will calm anyone down. A fourth stage evolver shrugs off ordinary rounds. Armor piercing at that density will absolutely get through, and even a fourth-tier source beast takes damage from it. Humans are softer than the beasts. Zhou Sheng stopped, and finally looked at the one-eyed man in front of him properly. "Are you the leader here? I am Li Qiang, the leader of this shelter. Then you know who I am. That beast hurt our people." Fenris put the sword up into a rest position, which is not the same as putting it away. "My soldiers have already told me everything that happened. Then step aside and hand over that beast. My soldiers say that you started it by disturbing the Shadowbane's meal, and then tried to take it away and kill its master, which angered it and caused it to attack." Zhou Sheng produced the sneer of a man who has never once had to care. "So what if it is? We haven't done anything yet, and this beast has already injured our people. That's a fact. Hand it over, and we'll let this drop. Otherwise, you're declaring war on the Fenris family. That is not a bluff. That family can do it. And normally what happens next is that whoever they set it to swallows it, because peace is cheaper." Li Chang's face went completely cold. His hands were behind his back, and I was close enough to see the veins standing up on them. I want to be extremely clear about what he did next, because a lot of people have described it since, and most of them get it wrong. Fenris was furious, not at the insult, at the arithmetic. "Is your Fenris family trying to use this as a reason to oppose us, young Master Fenris?" Tang Ming had watched an elder of his own family walk into a fourth-tier source beast without saying a word to stop him. Fenris knew what the Shadowbane was. Fenris had said nothing until Zhou Sheng was already committed. Fenris shrugged, and then, deciding the timing was right, he pointed at me. A man leaning on a wolf, watching, with no visible opinion. "Elder, you've got the wrong person. That source beast is that kid's battle pet." And every head turned. I was combing the mess out of the Shadowbane's neck fur. I stopped and met Zhou Sheng's eyes. "This is my battle pet, old man. Are you blind?" There is a particular silence you get when about 200 soldiers all decide at the same instant that they should not laugh. Several of the less disciplined ones did anyway. That fight had gotten loud enough that somebody had sent for Gao Lin, and by then, he and a group of capital officials were standing at the edge of the crowd. And I want to give you what they were saying, because it matters later. What is Ah Jun doing? How could he offend the hidden families for the sake of an outsider? The hidden families have sent more people this time. They look like men who've been at the top for a long while. The one with the sword is very strong. Ah Jun's insistence may bring annihilation on our shelter. How can a leader be so irrational? Is he trying to drag the whole shelter down with him? These are the men who came south on the icebreaker with Gao Lin. They have never been enthusiastic about Gao Lin backing Li Qiang, and here was an opportunity to say so out loud. Wang Tao's face went black. "What? When did we start having lackeys of the hidden families standing among us? If you're so afraid of death, why don't you go and lick the stinking feet of those hidden families? Maybe you'll even get a chance to change your names and identities before you die. Fenris said it in front of everybody, with no attempt to soften it, and several old men went a color I'd describe as thunderous. They argued back. Of course they did. The hidden families are strong, they said, and who wants to swallow their pride? But look at us. Do we have the strength to go head to head? Gujian endured hardship and humiliation. Han Xin crawled between a man's legs. We should cultivate good relations until we're strong enough, and it's unwise to damage that over an outsider. According to you, said Wang Tao, isn't Lin Yong also very strong? Why don't you go and fawn over him? And the old men laughed. Lin Yong, Fenris is one person. How can he possibly stand against the entire hidden families? I want that quote kept somewhere safe. I'll wait. Because out on the snow, Zhou Sheng had gone from beard to eyebrows in about 2 seconds. Kid, what did you say? Nobody could see my face. Everybody could hear my tone, and I made sure the tone was pitying. Can't you hear me? I didn't expect you to be not only blind, but also deaf. Okay then, considering you're deaf and blind, elderly, and a level 3 disabled person, I'll make an exception. If you break one of your legs, I won't hold it against you for disturbing my battle pet's dinner. How's that? Court death. I have been informed since that nobody had ever spoken to Zhou Sheng like that in his life, which I believe. Fenris came off the ground at me with the sword out, past Li Qiang, past everybody. From where he stood, I was a low-level evolutionary with a faint flicker of source power and an unusually good pet. Keep an eye on the wolf, kill the boy, done. Speak properly, I said, drawing my military knife. Why are you hitting me? If that's the case, you can't blame me for being disrespectful to the elderly when I fight back. Our blades met, and the military knife I'd carried for months snapped in half. Of course it did. Ordinary steel against a source artifact is a formality. Ha ha ha! You think you can block my sword with this piece of junk? Kid, you'll regret it in hell. Fenris flicked his wrist, and the light of that blade came round from my neck. Fenris was going to kill me, publicly, over a dog. And here's the thing about my broken knife. I knew it was going to break. I had known since I looked at the blade. I broke it deliberately, in a specific place, so that his sword would be on the far side of my body at the exact moment his sword arm finished its swing. I let the blade go past my throat by about the width of a finger, and I put a fist into his sword arm. Not his head, not his heart, his arm. This is a trick I learned by getting hit with it. Sparring the Shadowbane teaches you the great structural flaw of every evolutionary alive. When a mortal threat arrives, the gene lock opens automatically. And once it opens, the neural speed and the processing go up so far that beating someone of your own level becomes nearly impossible. You have to outlast them until the lock time's out. Which means, if you can take a piece of a man before he is frightened, he never gets to be the version of himself that could stop you. Zhou Sheng's danger sense had not tripped yet. Fenris was killing a nobody. Fenris never opened. There was a crack that everybody in that yard heard clearly, and his forearm came out of the swing, bent into a shape forearms do not make. I turned my head to the Shadowbane and said, at full volume, looking directly at Taming, I'll handle this, old man. You bite every single one of them to death. The Shadowbane had been coming in to help me. Fenris changed direction in the air and went at Tang Ming's group instead, and howled while he did it. 1 4th-order source beast against 4 3rd-order evolutionaries. Me against a 4th stage evolver with 1 working arm. Barring interference, that fight was already decided. Wait! There it was. The Shadowbane does not take orders from other people, and I gave no sign of stopping. I opened the gene lock and put a second punch into Zhou Sheng as his danger sense finally came online. Fenris got his left hand up, started to throw, and something in the back of his head told him not to take that punch on any part of himself. Decades of experience plus 4th-tier reflexes saved his left arm. Fenris converted the punch into a dodge. Where he had been standing, the air rippled. That's what happens when you pour source power into a fist. I got the idea off the source artifact. If a blade can conduct it, so can a hand. It multiplies the hit several times. If he'd taken it, that fight ends there. Fenris landed, and there was fear on him now. Who are you? Don't attack me yet. Let's talk this out. Because I had just displayed too much for a nobody, and he had begun to suspect I belonged to one of the other 3 families. I did not stop. When you come looking for trouble, you don't stop. You don't get to call time out when the arithmetic turns. I stepped to his right and punched the broken arm again. Fenris got the left hand across to block, and somebody screamed behind him. The elder the Shadowbane had already opened up, unable to move fast enough, taking a claw across the head. Because I had said, kill as many as you can. Zhou Sheng's eyes flicked toward the sound for a fraction of a second, and while he was blocking my right hand with his left, my left hand went into his chest. Fenris came off the ground, spraying blood, and landed badly. I picked up the sword he had dropped, poured power into it, and put it through the top of his skull. Wait, don't kill anyone. I did not stop for that either. I had just shown my hand. I was never going to get a cleaner chance at a fourth stage evolver. The whole exchange was too fast for ordinary eyes, and far too fast for anyone below third order to interrupt. And then somebody appeared between us with a steel blade up. Brother number 2, don't be impulsive, Zhao Lei. Gene lock open, moving faster than anybody expected of him. I could not pull the sword. It went into his blade, and there was a small, clear sound, and the tip came off through the far side about a hand's width from his chest. I turned my wrist and threw it instead. Zhou Sheng had just coughed up blood and was still coming up off the ground. The Fenris family's swords are longer and wider than a normal blade. That one went through his thigh and out the other side and took most of the leg with it, leaving skin and not much else. Fenris screamed and went down on his back with his face coming apart. My leg! My leg! If Zhao Lei had not put himself in that line, Zhou Sheng would have been dead about 4 seconds earlier. Brother number 2, don't be impulsive, Zhao Lei said, low and urgent. These people can't die here. On the other side, 3 elders had shoved through the crowd and put themselves between the Shadowbane and the one he was about to finish. Lin Yong, let's talk this out. The Shadowbane, mid-lunge, stopped and looked back at me with a question on his whole face. Should we kill them all together? Fenris had already hit that elder with enough force to leave most of his face unrecognizable, and the man was still alive, because a third-order body is a serious piece of engineering. I did the sums. The officials will not offend the hidden families, and they will not stand there and watch people die in their own shelter. This is everything I was going to get today. Return. Fenris came back and stood at my shoulder, watching everything at once. 2 elders with lighter injuries got Zhou Sheng on a stretcher and fed him another blue pill. The one whose face was gone was described by the family as dying, and medical staff came at a run. Tang Ming had not been touched. 3 subordinates had taken him a long way back. Fenris was standing at a distance with his eyebrows down, staring at me and thinking about something. The whole yard had gone into stalemate, and it was the hidden families who broke it first. Wu Li is dying. Where are the medical staff? Interesting detail. They did not feed him a second blue pill, which means those pills have a limit, probably 1 per person per stretch of time. Filed. 2 stretchers went up. Wait a moment. That was me, and it put the entire square back on a knife edge. Zhao Lei was standing next to his chief by then, and if you looked at his arm, you would have seen it shaking, and the web of skin between his thumb and forefinger had split open. Nobody in that shelter knew that Zhao Lei had unlocked the third order gene lock through a military program. Fenris had blocked me for one exchange, and the back of his shirt was soaked through with cold sweat, and he told me later that for one moment he had genuinely believed he was about to die. Several senior people who had assumed I would lose to Zhou Sheng were also having a difficult evening. From Tang Ming's rank and the strength Zhou Sheng had shown, they'd put him at no lower than third order, and everyone knows the hidden families run harder than ordinary evolutionaries of the same tier, and he had been taken apart in front of them in about 10 seconds. The Fenris family were somewhere between shock and rage. When has that family ever taken a loss like that? The fat one, Ma Ping, glared at me out of eyes almost invisible in his own face. Kid, don't think we're afraid of you. I chuckled and stroked the Shadowbane's fur. If you're not afraid of me, why are you leaving? Don't you want my battle pet anymore? Fenris got the words out between his teeth. No, I don't want it. I said, as long as one leg is left, I won't hold it against you for disturbing my battle pet's meal. I said it in a completely ordinary voice, the way you'd mention the weather. Ma Ping started shaking, which on a man that size is quite a lot of motion. Don't push your luck. Do you even know who you've offended? So you want me to kill them to silence them? I narrowed my eyes and let the intent off the leash for 1 second, and the 3 conscious elders' faces all changed at the same time. And then the old men from the capital arrived to help. They were the same men who, 90 seconds earlier, had been explaining to Gao Lin that Li Shang was going to get them all killed. Lin Yong, you should be lenient when you can. These people are all injured. You've vented your anger. It's unnecessary to cause a death. Look how old he is, and he's seriously injured. You're a young man. It wouldn't be right for you to take his life, would it? Young man, this fight was actually a misunderstanding. Why don't you let him get treatment first, and then we'll have him give you an explanation later. They were doing it because Lin Yong has always presented as a righteous person, and righteous people can be operated by shame in front of a crowd. The flaw in the plan is that I do not care what any of them think of me. Also, tactically, I cannot leave Zhou Sheng with 1 leg. If that old man heals up before I get another chance at him, that's a 4th stage evolver with a personal grudge walking around a city I live in. If I can't kill him, I can at least reduce him. Are you going to do it yourselves, or should I do it myself? I said. Let me tell you, I don't hold back when I start. I did not look at the old men once, and one of them, out of pure exasperation, turned to the man who had said nothing for the entire fight. Chief, aren't you going to say something? Li Chang had not spoken since Zhou Sheng came at me. Fenris had not moved from where he stood. Gao Lin and Wang Tao had somehow arrived at his shoulders. Fenris tilted his head, all 1.90 meters of him, and looked genuinely puzzled. What did you say, Mr. He? Don't interrupt when the Fenris family is speaking. How can a small place like ours meddle in the affairs of the hidden families? And then he glanced at me, and there was something behind it. Brother Wang is not one of us, so it's his freedom to do whatever he wants. I'm sorry, the elderly gentleman is a bit confused due to his age. Zhao Lei, take Elder Bai and the others back to rest. Yes, Chief. Please go back and rest, everyone, said Zhao Lei, arriving. The scene here is bloody and not suitable for you to watch any longer. Li Qiang, are you trying to rebel? The old man's name was Deng Wei, and I want you to remember it, because he was extremely angry, and he had just been told in public that his opinion was not required. Li Qiang said nothing at all. Fenris simply looked at Zhao Lei. Send them back to rest. And they were carried away physically by soldiers, shouting the whole distance. Li Qiang, you actually want to drag the shelter into the fire for an outsider. Li Qiang, you idiot, let me go. You're going to kill us. Kill the entire shelter. Gao Lin! Wang Tao! Are you just going to stand there and watch this kid bully us old folks? For the record, I disliked those men. I did not want them dead. I did not expect Li Qiang to do that. I looked at him, and he looked back and smiled. I have thought about that smile a lot since. That is the moment I stopped thinking of Li Qiang as a man I was doing business with. On the snow, the situation was now unambiguous. Zhou Sheng was outmatched. My dog was between his people and the exit, and the only voices that had been speaking for him were being walked away by soldiers. Zhou Sheng understood, and a very hard, very final look went through his old eyes, and he drew a dagger off his own belt. The leg was already only attached by skin. Fenris finished it himself. The wound had stopped bleeding after the pill. It stopped being stopped. It went across a white stretcher in about a second. Zhou Sheng, Zhou Sheng. Fenris endured it, threw the leg into the snow, and said, through a face the color of paper, let's go, get out of here. Not to the medical wing, out of the shelter entirely, right now, tonight, at 80 below, with 2 wounded and 1 dying. Fenris took a long look at me, then a longer one at Tang Ming, who was standing at a safe distance with the expression of a man watching a film. The 2 lightly injured elders picked him and Wu Li up and left. The gate was shut. They did not need it opened. Li Qiang dismissed the soldiers, and what was left in that yard was me, him, a handful of evolutionaries, and Tang Ming. Isn't young Master Fenris going with his clansmen? Tang Ming smiled, not a nervous muscle in him. No, I'm not one of them. I was quite comfortable here, and I was thinking of having my men bring some family over. I didn't expect my subordinates to be so inconsiderate, bringing along a few distant relatives I don't particularly like. Now that they're gone, I can finally have some peace and quiet. Time to go back and rest. Good night, Chief Xiao. And he strolled off to his suite with his 3 men. I stood there behind my goggles and did some arithmetic that I did not enjoy. Information about the Shadowbane is not a secret to the officials. Tang Ming cannot possibly have been unaware that my dog had gone 4th tier. When Zhou Sheng decided to take a 4th tier source beast as a riding animal, Tang Ming said nothing. When Zhou Sheng swung at it, Tang Ming said nothing. Fenris only spoke up after Zhou Sheng was committed, and what he said was, "You've got the wrong person. It's that kid's." Fenris never told those 4 men that the wolf did not belong to the officials, which means Tang Ming brought 4 of his own family's elders to the one place in this shelter where a fight with me was guaranteed to start, and then let it start. Whether he was using Zhou Sheng's knife on me or my axe on Zhou Sheng, only he knows. Brother Wang, said Li Qiang, I'll have someone take you to your place. I've got things to take care of, so I won't stay with you any longer. I nodded. Fenris turned and called a name. Zhang Xin. Please take Brother Wang to Wolong Courtyard for me. She was visibly startled to hear it. Yes. Then he left with his people, and it was the 2 of us in a yard with blood in the snow. She did not look at me. She said quietly, Come with me. Wolong Courtyard is a detached house inside the central square, roughly the footprint of a villa, with its own yard big enough that even the Shadowbane can move around in it. In that square, that is not accommodation, that is a statement. This is it. Before we went in, I opened the gene lock and swept the whole area, mostly out of curiosity about what else lives in the middle of a shelter. Everything came back clean, except the Institute underground. Then Zhang Xin, closing the gate behind her, said, Are you using mental strength? She had not said a word the entire walk. I looked at her. It's best not to use mental strength here. The military has developed an instrument that detects abnormal fluctuations in the surrounding area. Wherever mental strength covers, it registers. It's to stop anyone using it to spy. An instrument that can detect mental strength? That got a genuine reaction out of me. Yes, because there are third-order evolutionaries in the shelter now. To stop leaks of classified material from the top, the Research Institute worked overtime and built it. And now every senior officer carries one. How does it alert you? An alarm? There are two modes, vibration and alarm. You can carry it or leave it in a room. Can it locate the source? That's not possible. Why? And at that exact moment, in an officer's apartment on the far side of the square, a man named Deng Wei, who had just been carried out of a public argument by soldiers and was in a foul mood, was taking that mood out on somebody who could not stop him. The boy in that room was barely an adult, thin, pale, with upturned eyes and a face that had stopped having expressions in it. Deng Wei has always introduced him as his son. Fenris is not his son. Fenris is a servant Deng Wei acquired before the world froze and has kept his property ever since. And when the storm came, he ran without his wife and brought this one. Nobody knows. In public, Deng Wei is a highly respected veteran of the capital. If any of this got out, he would lose more than his reputation. And the mental strength detector he had deliberately placed in that room went off like a fire alarm. Who? Back in my courtyard, I pulled my scan in inside a second and put a hand over my eyes. I was overwhelmed by the spiciness of it. What happened to your eyes? It's nothing. I took my hand down. Is there anything else? If not, you can go back. Since the fourth tier, my gene lock runs 30 minutes, and I can close it at will, and I closed it, and I resolved to never again casually sweep anything inside that shelter for the rest of my natural life. Zhangxin hung around the yard a bit longer than she needed to, checked that everything was there, and left with a flashlight. It's better if the officials don't know we're acquainted. Li Chang had just shown me, in the plainest possible way, that he'd rather stand with me than with the hidden families. That doesn't make the shelter safe. That building is not a single organism yet. It has a great many internal problems. Deng Wei, for instance. It went dark, the wind got up. In a shelter with no lights, no power to spare, and no internet, everybody sleeps because there is nothing else to do. Even the traditional alternative is rare, because you need heat and calories for that, and most people have neither. I did not sleep. I lay on the bed Li Chang had prepared for me, in black, with my eyes shut, counting. After some number of hours, I opened my eyes and went out into the yard on my toes. The Shadowbane's eyes were already open. Fenris looked around, sniffed the air, and confirmed. I got on his back and wrapped both of us in mental strength, and I patted his neck and said one word: Chase. During the day, my extremely clever dog had memorized the scent of all 4 Fenris family elders. I do not let an opponent walk away when I have a chance to finish him. That is not cruelty, that is bookkeeping. Also, and this occurred to me on the way, somebody may have gotten there ahead of me. We went through the shelter in the dark without a sound, past the round building, up to the back of the outer city wall, which is over 10 meters. The Shadowbane looked up at it, and his red eye flickered, and his back legs went down. We cleared it standing, and then we went out into the black. Fenris ran, adjusting course as he went, and we left the east suburb, and then we were on the sea. The frozen sea. In the dark. At speed. Fenris only slowed after covering about half an hour of ground at that speed, which for him is a city. I did not know exactly where we were, but we were a long way past the Shaw City coastline, and possibly getting close to the waters of the Yue Kingdom. Then he stopped. 800 meters out on the ice, there was a makeshift snow hut. Sitting on that white plain, it looked like a single white chess piece somebody had left on a board. If my eyes were any worse, I would not have seen it at all. Found it. I did not go closer, and I did not scan the hut, because a 4th stage evolver will feel that. Instead, I swept around it, wide and behind, and I found something much more interesting. A few hundred meters southeast, there was a trench. At the bottom of it, more than a dozen people in full winter camouflage, so completely covered that all I could get from them was gender. Not moving, not making a sound. Every one of them watching the same person and waiting for a signal. That person, even trying to make himself small, could not do anything about being enormous. Fenris had a tactical scope in his hands, and he was watching the hut. Li Qiang and Zhao Lei, and the men who had things to take care of that afternoon. Further out, past my reach, there were a dozen first-tier source beasts and 3 more people down out of the wind. And at the exact moment my mental strength passed over the group, Li Chang reached into his coat, because the detector in his inner pocket had started to vibrate. His face changed. Somebody was scanning them. Every man in that trench was locked onto their chief for orders. They'd agreed before leaving. Once they were close, no talking, hand signals only. They had been in that trench for almost a month. Let me say that again. They had tracked the Fenris family's route in advance and then lain in a hole in the ice for the better part of a month, waiting for the night when 4 hidden families' elders would be at their most tired and least careful. That is what Li Qiang does with a problem. Fenris put the scope back on the hut for a full minute. Nothing moved. They had already confirmed that the only people out here were the four elders. So now he had a choice, and it was an ugly one. If they had been detected, then the assault goes in against two nearly intact Third Orders, one badly wounded Third Order, and one injured fourth stage Evolver, with the element of surprise gone. That is not a raid, that is a mutual funeral. Pull out or go anyway. And then, apparently, something occurred to him, because he turned the scope around and started sweeping the empty ice behind his own position. Zhao Lei and the others must have thought he'd lost his mind. On a dead sea at that hour, there is nothing. Fenris worked through several directions, and found two shapes, one large and one small, sitting perfectly still, watching him. It really is him. I had guessed on the way out that Li Chang might send somebody. I had not guessed he would come himself. Every source power reading in that trench was second order or better. There is one reason you bring that particular group to this particular patch of ice. So the moment he reached into his coat, I knew I'd been made, and that he'd known about my scanning habits since the day he walked me through his own institute and said nothing. I did not move, because if his goal is killing the Fenris family, then tonight we are on the same side. Li Chang let out a breath, put the scope back on the hut, and started rebuilding his plan around a variable that had just walked onto the board. The wind came up hard and started whistling past my ears. They went in. I watched them go, low, silent, using the wind to eat their footsteps, and they got almost all the way to that hut before anything happened, which was genuinely well done. I stayed exactly where I was. I do not fight next to strangers. I do not put my back to people, even Li Chang. Also, there was a man down there in that squad whose face I knew. He, Ming, the security officer I crossed in San Yuan City in another life, who is now, apparently, on Li Chang's personal guard detail. I took a weapon out of the space, sat on my dog, and waited to see whether the Fenris family would run so I could go and get them. Killing all four saves me a great deal of work. If Li Chang wins, I collect. If Li Chang loses, I go in and clean up. There is no version of this where I take a risk. Then the noise started. 800 meters, no obstructions, and I did not need mental strength to watch it. Li Chang had brought 18 second order evolutionaries plus Zhao Lei, and he had prepared beautifully. Silenced weapons opened first, and the elders of the Fenris family started shouting. On the Fenris side, there were only 2 people at full strength. Also, and this is a detail I noted with satisfaction, the elder my dog had opened up that afternoon had already died. 3 left. 1 third order got held by Zhao Lei. Another got held by 10 second orders together, and Li Chang, with 5 men, took Zhou Sheng. The teamwork was excellent. Those were career soldiers. They had, however, underestimated what a 4th stage evolver actually is. Zhou Sheng had 1 leg. His sword arm was broken and strapped to his side in a sheath. Fenris was holding a long sword in his offhand, and he stood on 1 foot on frozen sea and laughed at them. Ha 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 ha, very good. They dare to hunt down people from our Fenris family. It seems this extreme cold has made some people think they have the capital to contend with us. No matter who you are, you will all die here today. And after I kill you, I will make sure your relatives, your friends, and your ancestors for 18 generations all disappear from this world. Then he tapped 1 foot, left a hole in the snow, and stopped being anywhere. Careful. That was all Li Chang had time for. A shadow crossed behind a soldier, and the man went down without a sound. Understand the gap. A 4th stage evolver has at least 3,000 source power. A second order has at most 300, 10 times. And that's before you count the mental strength. That is not a gap you close with numbers. That is a gap you close with an arm and a leg. Plan B. Plan B means stall while the other teams finish and come to help. The 4 of them went from attacking to surviving. Trying to stall for time, you'll all die. And then Zhou Sheng opened his gene lock and unfolded his mental strength across the whole engagement. Everybody in that trench got hit with a weight on the head, and the inside of their skull went to fog. Fenris had already worked out which one was in charge. Fenris raised the bloody longsword and put it at Li Chang's chest. And Li Chang, with a mind full of wool, could see it coming and could not make his body do anything about it. Across the fight, Zhao Lei was winning against Ma Ping, saw his chief out of the corner of his eye, and lost his focus for 1 second, and got knocked across the ice for it. The 10 second orders were taking losses. Li Chang bit through the tip of his own tongue. Too late. His eyes cleared, and the point was already there, and a bullet came out of the dark and hit the flat of that blade. It moved half an inch. Half an inch is the distance between a heart and not a heart. The sword went into Li Chang's chest and out the other side, and missed everything that matters. Leader! Leader! In the panic, they forgot to keep his identity quiet and shouted it across open ice. Zhou Sheng did not have time to care about that, or to finish him, because he pulled his sword and jumped backwards and stared into the dark. Who goes there? Come out! Because a bullet had arrived, and there had been no mental strength attached to it at all. I walked the Shadowbane out of the dark and into his eyeline. So it was you! His eyes went red immediately. Yes, it was me. Li Chang cannot die. It is that simple. If Li Chang dies tonight, the official shelter comes apart, and without Li Chang, the first real shelter in this country never existed at all. I know that, because in my last life, it didn't. And this afternoon, when a 1,000-year family told him to hand over a stranger's dog, he put his body in the way. I am not the sort of person who lets that man die over half an inch. While Zhou Xing was looking at me, Zhao Lei and the others got their chief out and away. Ma Ping and the other elder came back and stood with him. Who exactly are you? Ma Ping, wary now. Me, I said. I'm just an ordinary person. Impossible. Even if an ordinary person activated a gene lock before the apocalypse, they could not evolve to the 4th tier this fast. Which family are you from? The 4 great hidden families are all of one blood. Are you trying to destroy an alliance that has lasted 1,000 years? Fenris got so excited he spat from a distance that made it a non-issue. If that's how you think, I said, there's nothing I can do about it. And then, past them, to the men bandaging their chief. Do you want to live or die? I don't like having anyone around when I'm fighting. Li Chang swallowed 2 gene pills and got up with a soldier under each arm, pale as the ice. And he nodded at me and said, then I'll leave it to you. It would be best if you could spare one alive. I'll repay you handsomely when we get back. And he made a gesture, and his men took the wounded and the dead and went. Zhou Xing and the other 2 watched them go and did not lift a finger to stop it, which told me everything about how the rest of the night was going to go. Only when Li Chang was out of range did Zhou Xing speak, and it cost him something to do it. Actually, we don't have to fight to the death, right? Just tell us what you want, and we'll do our best to meet your needs. There it was, the oldest sentence in the world. 2 hours ago, this man had told an entire courtyard he would erase my ancestors for 18 generations. Now he had 1 leg, no reinforcements, and a proposal. Then let's talk, I said, because I wanted something from him, and I had wanted it since the moment I learned what a 4th stage evolver actually is. Your family's gene lock method, the real one, not the version you feed to servants. The 3 of them went very still. Understand what I was asking for. In this world, there are 2 ways to open a gene lock. Buy a gene pill from the officials, which almost nobody can, or use a method the hidden families have kept in the family for 1,000 years, for exactly this reason. As long as only they can make evolutionaries, they own the future. Impossible, said Ma Ping on reflex. Zhou Xing put a hand out and shut him up. Fenris thought about it for maybe 4 seconds. Fenris was standing on 1 leg on a frozen sea in front of a man who had already beaten him twice, and he did the arithmetic that people like him always do, which is that a method can be given away and a life cannot be bought back. Fine, and he told me, it is a routine. Postures, breathing, a sequence you run until your body starts pulling source power out of the air on its own and pushing it into the lock. No pill, no equipment, no officials. Anyone can do it. Anyone. I kept my face where it was and asked the second question. That gets a person to the 2nd order. What about mental strength? Because that is the real wall. Every evolutionary in the world hits the 2nd order and stops, and the ones who don't stop are the ones who somehow found mental strength, and nobody outside the families will tell you how. There are 2 roads, said Zhou Xing. The first is asceticism. You sit on nails, you hold your hand over a flame. You go without food until the body begs. Pain, endured on purpose, over years, until the will is hard enough to leave the body. Most of our juniors take that road. And most of them fail, said Ma Ping with feeling. The 2nd road is meditation. Teach me that one. I can't. Fenris actually looked amused about it. Meditation cannot be spoken. It has no steps. You watch someone do it, and either you understand or you never will. That is why it belongs to families and not to schools. So I said the obvious thing. Then let me take a look at your meditation once. Zhou Xing lowered himself onto the ice, folded his 1 leg under him, and closed his eyes. And behind him, at the edge of my vision, both of the others smiled. Now, I want to be fair to them. It was a good trap. The instant his mind opened, it did not open like a demonstration. It came out like rope. It went around my mental strength and pulled, and my mental strength, which is stronger than his, which had already beaten his once that day, went absolutely nowhere, because he wasn't trying to overpower it. Fenris was tying it up, and a tied-up mind cannot defend. 2 more presences came in from my left and right at the same instant. Not rope, blades. If a mental strength attack lands clean, you get a few seconds of being a statue with the lights on. On a frozen sea, surrounded by 3 men who want you dead, a few seconds is not a setback. It's the whole story. They had one problem. For the entire ride out, for the entire fight, for the entire negotiation, there had been a very small white cat lying under the Shadowbane's belly. She is white. Fenris is white. She had not moved once. Jinx's eyes opened, and her pupils went to vertical slits, and Zhou Xing's mind went out like a candle in a draft, not knocked back, not pushed. Erased for about a second and a half, by something he never detected, because a fourth stage evolver scans for men and beasts, and he had scanned the ice twice and found a wolf. The rope evaporated, which meant that all of my mental strength, wound up and straining against a pull that had just stopped existing, went forward with nothing in front of it. It went into his head. Blood came down through the goatee. The two mental blades on my flanks folded before they touched me, because whatever their owners were doing, they were doing it in formation with a man who had just been switched off. All three of them hit the ice, and I got down off my dog, walked past the three most dangerous men in Shaw City, and picked up the cat. Good girl. She permitted it. Barely. I paid her and dried fish out of the space, which she ate on my arm with her eyes shut, purring like a small, badly maintained engine, while behind us, 1,000-year family bled out on the sea. Then I did what I came for. I made sure of Zhou Sheng. Then I made sure of Xu Zhen, who had spent the whole night being held off by 10 men and who never once got to be dangerous. Ma Ping I kept, fat, greasy, the weakest of the four, and by an enormous distance the most talkative. I broke what needed breaking so he'd stop being a threat, tied him up like a rice dumpling, and sat him upright so he could see the ice. Fenris asked, through his teeth, where his brothers were. They ran, I said. You were heavy. I wanted on the record that this was not entirely a lie. They had definitely stopped helping him. His face did something complicated, and I loaded him across the Shadowbane's back like luggage. I had 4 bodies worth of storage rings, a family's gene lock method in my head, and a live witness. Li Chang had asked me to spare one. I do not usually take requests. This one happened to line up. We were most of the way back to shore when 2 people came out of the dark to meet me. Zhao Lei and He Ming. Zhao Lei's face was fine. He Ming's face had a very specific expression on it, the one a man wears when he has been rehearsing a conversation for an hour. Brother Wang, said Zhao Lei, you're all right. The chief has been. Where are the 4 elders? Said He Ming. I did not answer either of them. I rode past. I do not owe a debrief to a man who was standing in the snow at 4 in the morning specifically to see whether I came back alone. Because on the retreat, while their chief was on a stretcher with a hole through him, He Ming had been working, very quietly, very reasonably. Why did Lin Yong wait so long before joining the fight? Fenris was out there the whole time, watching. Have any of you actually asked where this man came from? I have. Fenris extorted the port authority in San Yuan City, held a shipment hostage, made demands, walked away rich. A man like that doesn't change. Fenris just finds a bigger target. Consider it, brothers. Fenris didn't come out until our chief had a sword in him, every word of which is technically checkable, and every word of which is a lie by arrangement, because the reason nobody in San Yuan City ever contradicted He Ming's version is that the people who could have are dead. He Ming is the officer who put Lin Gang in front of a saber-toothed tiger to buy himself 4 seconds. Then the beast tide came through and did his housekeeping for him, so when I rode past him without a word, he turned to Zhao Lei and kept going. Look at that. Fenris didn't even stop for the chief's man. Captain Wang, you punched a respected elder in the face today for that, in front of the whole shelter, and he can't spare you a sentence. That's enough. I'm only saying that the chief is lying in a bed with a hole in his chest, and the person who could have prevented it, Zhao Lei, hit him. Properly. Once, and He Ming went down into the snow, and there were 11 of Li Chang's personal guards standing close enough to see it, which is exactly, precisely to the meter, what He Ming had come out into the dark to buy. By the time I got to Li Chang, they had him upright in a chair with a blanket over him, refusing to lie down in front of his officers, which is the single most Li Chang thing that has ever happened. I put Ma Ping down on his floor, one alive, as requested. I've crippled his limbs, but I should tell you he can still use mental attacks. Don't let anyone stand close to him for the first few days. Li Chang looked at the parcel on his floor for a long moment. Zhang Xin, Chief, you're responsible for guarding this prisoner. I did not look at her, and she did not look at me, and neither of us said anything at all. I went home and slept for 4 hours. When I came out into the courtyard the next morning, my dog had cleared it. The whole thing. All of it. Every square meter of snow that had fallen overnight, pushed into a neat wall along the west side with his claws, leaving a path from the door to the gate that you could have driven a truck down. Fenris was sitting in the middle of it, looking extremely pleased with himself. Who taught you that? Fenris yawned at me. Then I sat down on the cleared stone, with the sun coming up over the wall, and ran the Fenris family's routine for the first time. Posture, breath, sequence. And about 90 seconds in, I stopped and said a word out loud that I will not repeat, because I knew it. Not similar to, not related to. The nourishing life skill I had learned from a fat Taoist in a mountain temple in a life that hasn't happened yet, the one I have been running every day since I woke up in this body, is the same routine with the ornaments filed off. 1,000 years of a hidden family's most guarded secret, and an old man in a patched robe on a mountain was teaching it to anyone who climbed up far enough to ask. I did not have time to enjoy that because someone was knocking. Breakfast delivered. 5 meat buns the size of my palm, hot, in a lidded tin. A frozen boar for the Shadowbane, hauled in on a sled by 2 soldiers, who then started shoveling the snow my dog had already shoveled, and who kept glancing at him while they did it. 5 hot buns and a whole boar, in a shelter where an adult gets a ration that would embarrass a bird. Li Shang arrived while I was eating. Fenris should have been horizontal. Fenris was walking, slowly, with his coat over the bandages, and he sat down across from me and did not mention the hole in his chest once. I've come to ask your permission for something. Go on. The prisoner has confirmed the method. It works. Our researchers ran it last night. Fenris put his hands flat on the table. I want to teach it to everyone. Not the officers, not the evolutionaries. Everyone in the shelter, and then every shelter that will listen, and then whoever is left out there after that. Then teach it. I need you to say that properly, Brother Wong. You took it. 4 elders of a hidden family died for it. By any rule anyone has ever used, it's yours, and if you want to keep it, that is your right, and I will not raise the subject again. Here is the part I did not say out loud. I did not bring that fat old man back across 30 kilometers of frozen sea, alive, tied to my dog, because Li Chang asked nicely. A corpse can't confirm a routine. A corpse can't be tested. I needed a live one so that when I handed the method over, there would be no version of events in which it didn't work. I had already decided this on the ice before I chose which of them to keep. Teach it, I said, all of it, and don't put my name on it. Li Chang looked at me for a while. I will have your name written into the annals of extreme cold. I don't care about such empty gestures, I said with my mouth full. I'd rather have something more substantial. Fenris laughed and immediately regretted laughing and pressed his forearm against his chest. Of course you would. Come to the Institute this afternoon. Qin Yi wants to walk you through the simplified version before we distribute it. Fenris got up carefully. I'll assign you an escort, Lin Gang and He Ming. I stopped chewing. He Ming? Is there a problem? There was not a problem. There was, on the contrary, an opportunity, and I had to work quite hard not to smile about it. No problem at all. Lin Gang showed up at my gate at noon, looking like a man who had been given a live grenade and told to carry it politely. Brother Wang, the chief sent me, and, Officer Xiao is also. I know. He Ming was standing 6 paces back with a swollen face and both hands behind him, and he greeted me with enormous warmth. Shu Guang, it's an honor to escort you personally. We walked to the Institute. Fenris talked the entire way. About the weather, about the buns, about how moved everyone had been by the news that the absorption method would be shared, about how a man of my character was exactly what the shelter needed. I said nothing because I already knew what was waiting at the end of the walk. Fenris was not talking to me. Fenris was killing time. At the Institute door, 4 guards crossed their rifles. And a man came out from behind them, mid-40s, tidy uniform, the walk of somebody who has practiced being important in a mirror. Guard Captain Sun Peng. Sorry, the Research Institute is a restricted area. Please remove your mask and goggles for identity verification. Lin Gang nearly came out of his boots. Captain Wang, this is Shu Guang, the chief personally. Anyone can say they're Lin Yong, said Sun Peng. Nobody in this shelter has ever seen his face. For all we know, this is a Fenris family assassin standing in his coat, which, I will admit, is not a stupid thing to say. It would have been a much better thing to say if Sun Peng's own men had not been visibly waiting for the line. I'll get the chief, said Lin Gang, already turning, and only then, only after Lin Gang had committed, only after the boy had taken 2 running steps, did He Ming speak up, all helpfulness. Little Guo, I should mention. The leadership is in closed session all morning. Chief Xiao, Deputy Chief Song, Deputy Chief Xiao, Elder Bai, all of them. Nobody's getting in there before noon. Lin Gang stopped in the snow. Lovely. So, the man who was meant to be guarding me spent an hour walking me here at conversational pace, and the meeting that makes rescue impossible ends at exactly the hour we arrived. I looked at He Ming. Fenris had a face that had been beaten in that morning by his own captain, a chief who had nearly died on the ice while he was in a trench, and a fresh grudge from 2 lifetimes ago that he did not even know he had. And he was smiling at me with his hands folded, waiting. All right, I said, I can cooperate. Sun Peng's shoulders came down an inch. But you have to cooperate with me too. And He Ming, bless him, genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, stepped forward and said the sentence he was going to remember for the rest of his life. Naturally, as long as you cooperate to verify your identity, then whatever you ask me to do, I am willing to cooperate. Anything at all. Anything, Shu Guang. Then hold still. I have 4,000 source power. He Ming has, at a generous estimate, 90. I was standing in front of him. Then I wasn't standing anywhere, and his nose was on the other side of his face. Fenris did not fall. Fenris did not have time to fall. That is the part people always get wrong about the gap between orders. It is not that the punches are hard, it is that there is no space between them for anything to happen. Fenris was still going backwards from the first one when the fourth landed. Stop! Sun Peng got as far as the T. By the time the P arrived, I was up to about a dozen, working steadily down from the face, and I stopped only because I had made my point and because Li Chang would have been annoyed with me. He Ming sat down in the snow in sections. Silence in the courtyard. 4 rifles pointed at absolutely nothing, because none of them had seen where to point. And then, from the institute steps, an elderly researcher pushed his glasses up his nose and said, "To nobody." Fascinating. Is that speed beyond the currently recorded limits of living organisms? A second one came down the steps at a jog, knelt beside He Ming, and started counting injuries out loud with real enthusiasm. Nasal bone, zygomatic, 3 ribs at least, 4, ulna, look at the distribution, it's almost even. Was he moving during it? That's exactly what I'm saying. Fenris can't have been. I have met a lot of dangerous people. Researchers are their own category. Sun Peng's palms were wet. I could see it from where I stood. It's confirmed, he said. You are indeed Shu Guang. Arrest him! He Ming was screaming it through a face that no longer had the equipment for it. Fenris assaulted an officer. Arrest him! Nobody moved. Take off the mask, said the elderly researcher, pushing his glasses up again. Have you ever actually seen Lin Yang's real face? Has anyone? Fenris gave this shelter, the residence of the Fenris family, before lunch, and you're standing in a doorway asking him for a passport. And the doors of the research institute opened. Jiang Xin arrived about 90 seconds later, at a walk, because she had been on prisoner duty and someone had come to fetch her. She looked at He Ming on the ground. She looked at me. Her face did nothing whatsoever. Fenris needs the medical wing, she said. I'll take him. Captain Wang, you should stay with your post. 2 soldiers loaded him onto a stretcher, and she went with them, and I went inside and spent 4 hours with Chen Yi and forgot about it entirely. That evening, He Ming was electrocuted on his own treatment table. I want to be precise about what I know. I know a fault developed in the wiring of a private treatment room in the medical wing. I know that room had been in continuous use for 6 weeks without incident. I know the fault expressed itself approximately 4 hours after He Ming was moved into it. I know he was alone, and that it was more than half an hour before a nurse came past and found him, and that by then he was in shock and burned badly enough that he did not wake up. I know that Li Chang sat in his office the next morning, tapping one finger on the desk, and said to the room, 6 weeks. It leaks the day He Ming moves in. And I know that Jiang Xin, standing against the wall with her hands behind her back, looked exactly as innocent as a person can look while standing in a room. Somewhere in this shelter, a girl had made a very quiet decision about who she works for. Tang Ming was waiting for me outside the institute the next day, alone, hands in his pockets, breath steaming, radiating the calm of a man who has already priced everything in the room. Brother Wang, a word? No. 4 elders of my family went out onto the ice, and none of them came back. Fenris fell into step beside me anyway. That is going to be looked into, eventually by people much less reasonable than me. I could make that go away, entirely. Nobody would ever ask you a question about it. In exchange for, join us, not as a servant, as family, your own courtyard, your own resources, an elder's rank inside 2 years, and the full backing of a 1,000-year house behind everything you do. Fenris smiled. I know you have no one, Brother Wang. A man with no one gets tired. I stopped walking. Say that again. I only mean, I turned and started walking at him. Tang Ming is not a coward. Fenris held his ground for 2 full steps before something in his body overruled him, and he went backwards. And when he tried to go backwards a second time, he found that the alley behind him had a wolf in it. The Shadowbane had not made a sound. Fenris had simply arrived, sat down, and closed the door. Here's my counteroffer, I said. I kill you here. Then I go and kill your 3 men. Then nobody ever asks a question about the elders either, and I don't have to be family. And Tang Ming did something I did not expect. Fenris laughed, genuinely out of relief, like a man who has finally found the one person in the building he can talk to. Yes, good, that's exactly why it has to be you. Then he told me the truth, which is always more interesting than the offer. The Fenris family is not one thing. It has been 2 things for 20 years. His father holds the seat. His uncle's faction has been eating him alive, 1 elder at a time, ever since the family lost something 20 years ago that it has never publicly admitted losing. Since that loss, his father's people have been outvoted, outmaneuvered, and slowly retired. Zhou Sheng, Ma Ping, and the other 2 were his uncle's men, all 4 of them. You didn't tell them the wolf was mine, I said. You watched Zhou Sheng draw on a 4th-tier source beast, and you said nothing until he'd already swung. I said nothing, Tang Ming agreed pleasantly. It seemed rude to interrupt. Fenris had walked 4 of his uncle's old dogs into a cafeteria courtyard, where a fight with me was guaranteed to happen, and then stood at a comfortable distance to see which way it fell. If they killed me, he lost a stranger. If I killed them, he was 4 elders lighter on the wrong side of his own family at no cost, with the blame on an outsider. Fenris had used me, successfully, and he had come out here in the snow to tell me so, because he wanted to do it again, at scale, against every remaining elder in his uncle's faction. So, he said, allies? No. Consider. I said no. Because I have no interest in helping one half of the Fenris family kill the other half. I would much rather they did it themselves, slowly, at length, and preferably in public. Taming took it beautifully. Fenris produced a small jade bottle from his coat and held it out. Then accept an apology for the cafeteria. 10 source pills. Not gene pills, source pills. 30 points of source power each and no side effects. 30 points. A gene pill gives 3. I took the bottle. There was one more thing I did not say, and I am fairly proud of the fact that my face did not move while I was not saying it. I know what the Fenris family lost 20 years ago. I know what it looks like. I know it is a shallow basin about the size of a washbowl, black, unremarkable, and that everything in this world that has gone right for me since the sky came down came out of it. It is currently sitting in a space inside my own head, 4 feet from where Taming was standing, and he was telling me how badly his family wanted it back. Thank you for the pills, I said. I went straight to Li Qiang and sold Taming to him, word for word. The split in the family, the uncle's faction, the fact that the 4 elders had been walked into that courtyard on purpose, the offer, the recruitment, all of it, minus the 2 or 3 sentences that were about me. Li Qiang listened without interrupting once. And one more thing, I said on the way out. Ming, before he stopped being conscious. I'd have someone go through everything he's touched since he arrived, and I'd start with who authorized Sun Ping to stand in that doorway. I think you have a plan. That evening, in the middle of the cafeteria, at the busiest hour, Zhao Lei walked up behind guard captain Sun Peng and arrested him in front of 400 people eating dinner. Sun Peng talked, immediately and at length, and with tremendous cooperation. Unfortunately for Sun Peng, every single thing he had to trade was a thing Ming had told him, and Ming was not going to be available for confirmation for at least half a month. So Sun Peng spent the coldest winter in recorded human history in a cell, being asked the same 11 questions, having already told the truth. That is what happens when your entire value is stored in another man. That night there was a note under my foo box, folded small, jammed between the tin and the tray, in careful handwriting. Ming suffered severe burns after being electrocuted. His life is in danger. That was all. No signature, no request. Just an operational report delivered by hand to a courtyard whose location exactly one person in this shelter knows, because she was the one told to walk me there. I stood in the dark with it for a second. I had told this girl we were even. I had said it out loud, in a doorway, in that flat voice I use when I want a conversation to be finished. This girl really does care about me. I dropped the note into the space, and I ate my dinner while it was hot. On the last morning of the year, the shelter turned red. I came out of the gate and stopped because the building across the square had grown a rash overnight. Red plastic sheeting cut into strips and tied to the railings. Red rags, actual rags, somebody's shirt, somebody's blanket lining, knotted along the balconies. Red rope wound round every door handle on the ground floor. Somebody on the 4th floor had cut a fish out of red packaging plastic with a knife, badly, and taped it to their window, and the fish had one fin and a lopsided eye, and it was the best thing I had seen in 2 months. Nobody had ordered any of it. There is no red plastic ration. People had gone through their own belongings and torn up things they owned to put color on a white building. And the faces. I have walked through that square every day since I arrived, and every day it is people moving from one heated room to another with their heads down, not looking at each other, because looking at each other costs energy, and there isn't any. That morning, people were standing outside in 80 below to look at a plastic fish and laughing. Li Qiang had put out 3 orders the night before, 3 caddies of food, free, to every registered survivor, 20 pounds and a pill allowance to every soldier, and half a working day for everyone in the shelter on the last day of the year, because the world had ended in October, and human beings had made it to December 31st anyway. It was the first New Year's Eve after the sky came down. I got as far as the middle of the square before Lin Gang came sprinting across it, waving. "Brother Wang, the Institute! They need you now. They've been arguing since 5. The simplified version was not working. Understand the problem. The Fenris family's routine is 1,000 years old, and it was written for the kind of person who has been eating spirit herbs since they could walk. It has 31 postures, some of them physically unkind, and it takes about 90 minutes to run once. You cannot hand that to a warehouse worker in a shelter and expect a species-wide result. So, the Institute had spent 5 days cutting it down. 12 postures, 20 minutes, 2 problems with the 12 posture version. 1, it absorbed roughly half as much source power per session. 2, one of their own volunteers was currently in the medical wing with both shoulders strapped up because posture 7 does something to the joint capsule that the original version prevented with a step they had removed as redundant. The room had a wall screen, 40 researchers, and Chen Yi in the middle of it, 60-something years old, hair in every direction, arguing with three people at once. Young Wang, come and look at this and tell me where the energy is going. I looked at it for about 90 seconds. Then I picked up the light pen and started making corrections on the screen. Move 6 goes before 4. Posture 7 does not need the arm above the shoulder line at all. The whole point of that position is the diaphragm. And you have kept the shape and thrown away the reason. This breathing count is wrong. It is not 4. It is 4 and then a held 2. Cut 9 entirely. 9 is a courtesy from 1,000 years ago. It does nothing. It is a bow. Here is the part I did not explain to a room full of scientists. In my previous life, Shaw City's Research Institute did eventually build a public absorption routine. It was clean, it was safe, it worked on ordinary people, and it changed the shape of the human race. They finished it in year 6. I practiced it for 2 years. So I stood there with a light pen in front of 40 of the sharpest people left alive on this continent, and I rebuilt something in 10 minutes that was going to cost them 6 years, and I made it look like I was reading their own diagram carefully. Silence in the room when I put the pen down. Chen Yi walked up to the screen with his glasses pushed onto his forehead and went through it line by line with his lips moving. Fenris got to the end. This routine, he said, is perfectly feasible. I can't even find a single flaw. Then test it. They tested it on a volunteer. 31 years old, a former electrical fitter, no gene lock, no talent, no background of any kind. Sitting cross-legged on a mat in front of 40 people with sweat coming down his face inside a heated room. 20 minutes. The detector beside him ticked over. 0.5 units of source power. Nobody said anything for about 3 seconds, and then the noise in that room was loud enough that soldiers came in from the corridor to see who was being murdered. An ordinary human being, not an evolutionary, not a chosen bloodline, not somebody's grandson. A man who fixed wiring for a living had just pulled source power out of the air and put it in his own body in 20 minutes, using a routine that could be taught by a poster on a wall. 0.5 units is nothing. That is the point. Do it every day for 2 months and it is a gene lock. Do it for a year and it is a second-order evolutionary. There are 11,000 people in this shelter, and there are, somewhere out there under the snow, an unknown number of others, and every single one of them is now a candidate. Chen Yi sat down on the edge of a desk because his legs had stopped agreeing with him. Then he looked up at me with a completely different expression. Young Wang, would you be interested in becoming my student? Not interested. I'm the chief researcher of... Still not interested. Somebody at the back of the room laughed and turned it into a cough. The leadership meeting that afternoon took 9 minutes to become a shouting match. I was not in the room. I have this from 3 separate people who were, all of whom told it to me with obvious enjoyment. Li Chang put the proposal on the table. The simplified routine goes out to every person in the shelter, free, immediately, starting on New Year's Day, taught in the cafeteria in shifts. Deng Wei's block went off like a smoke alarm. To everyone, every migrant, every unregistered, every criminal we're feeding. What did he ask for in return? Fenris must have made demands. What are they? Does he want a position? Does he want a seat on this council? Does he want to become the leader? And Li Chang, who had been sitting with his arms folded through all of it, said absolutely dry, even if I wanted to hand the leadership to Lin Yong, the difficulty is that he doesn't want it. Fenris is not interested in my position. I have offered. Someone at the far end of the table put their head in their hands. They voted. 16 for, 6 against, 3 abstaining. And then Gao Lin added 1 line to the motion, which passed without a single objection, including from the 6. The routine has no name yet. Let Lin Yong name it. I found Chen Yi that evening standing in the middle of the square, alone, in a coat 2 sizes too big for him, looking up. The whole white face of the residential block, 11 stories of it, was covered in scraps of red. Rags, plastic, rope, tape, a 1-finned fish. In the last of the light, it looked like the building was on fire in a very slow, very gentle way. Fenris did not notice me for a while. Do you know what I keep thinking about? He said, eventually, still looking up. If humanity were to become extinct, how much color would go out of this world? I did not say anything. There would still be white and blue in the daytime, black at night. Fenris put his hands in his pockets. There would be no red anywhere, not one red thing on the whole planet. Nobody would make any. Fenris was quiet for a moment. I truly hope that on the day I close my eyes, I can still see this red. Chen Yi is 63 years old. Fenris is also, and I did not know this until that week, an ordinary man. No gene lock. Fenris has never had one and he never will, because at his age the odds of surviving the activation are somewhere around the odds of surviving a fall from that building. And the gene pill in my space, which mends a hole through a chest overnight, does not add a single day to anybody's life. Fenris has spent every day since the sky came down, running an institute for a species he is not going to be part of. I stood next to him in the snow and looked at a building covered in torn-up shirts and did not make a single joke. Li Chang held New Year's Eve in his own courtyard. There was a stove going in the middle of it, a real one, and on top of the stove, a pot the size of a bathtub with red oil rolling over in it. And the smell went over the wall and down the street and probably ruined the evening for about 200 people. Gao Lian, Wang Tao, Zhao Lei, Chen Yi, and two of his people. Lin Gang sitting on the end of the bench trying to be invisible and eating like a machine. And 5 bottles of liquor that Li Chang had been hoarding since October and produced with the air of a man laying down a winning hand. I sat down and everyone made a point of not looking at me, and I took off the goggles and the mask. Gao Lin put his cup down. I didn't expect Comrade Joe to be so young. They had all decided I was in my 40s, every one of them. The manner, the planning, the way I talked to people. Zhao Lei told me later he'd have bet money on 50. Wang Tao got to bottle 3 and started telling everyone about the icebreaker. You know how I got the deputy chief here? I stole a ship, an icebreaker. I took it out of the harbor without asking a single person, because he was sitting in a coastal town with the sea freezing around him and 4 days of food. You did not steal it, said Gao Lin. I took a national vessel without authorization and drove it into ice. That is not robbery. When it is done in the service of the country, it is called requisition. It's called robbery when I do it, and requisition when you're on board. Lin Gang laughed so hard, he inhaled a piece of meat and had to be hit on the back by Zhao Lei. Then, Li Qiang put an arm around my shoulder, which is a considerable amount of arm, and told the courtyard. The very first moment I laid eyes on this man, I knew he was extraordinary. I remember, I said, that at the time, you were about 300 meters away from me. I have excellent eyes. You had binoculars, and you were pointing them at my dog. We walked back through light snow, the two of us, and about halfway across the square, Li Qiang stopped being drunk in the way that only certain men can. Brother Wang, I'll ask you once sober, and then I'll never bring it up again. Fenris looked straight ahead. How about I step down and you take the shelter? I'm serious. I've thought about it for a month. No? Why not? Because I'd be terrible at it, and because you're good at it, and because I don't want 11,000 people's dinner to be my problem. I kicked a lump of ice. And because you're trying to pay me with a job. Let's give a real reward instead. Don't try to get something for nothing. Li Qiang made a noise. Then he laughed until he had to stop walking, and then until he had to put a hand against the wall, and then until there were actual tears freezing on his face. I told them, he said, when he could talk. I told the council you'd say exactly that, word for word. Gao Lin bet me a week's ration. Which is when I noticed that we had stopped directly on the other side of a wall from the ground floor window of the officers' block, and that the light in that window was on, and that a very old, very respected veteran of the capital was standing behind it with his fists shaking. Deng Wei had heard every word of it. I let him. Gene pills, I said. Whatever the number is, I want all of it in gene pills. Done. And the name? I thought about a room full of people watching a former electrical fitter pull half a unit of source power out of nothing, and about a routine that would not otherwise exist for 6 more years. Call it resonance. The Shadowbane smelled the hot pot on my coat from the far side of the courtyard. Fenris got up. Fenris walked over. Fenris put his nose against my chest and inhaled for a solid 4 seconds. And then he sat down and gave me a look that I can only describe as a formal complaint. You ate an entire boar this morning. Fenris rode in the snow with 1 claw, not the same. It was a large boar, not the same. I gave him a joint of frozen mutton out of the space, and he took it away to the corner of the yard, chewing loudly, in what I am confident was a hostile manner. I spent the next 2 days trying to crack meditation, cross-legged on cleared stone, in the cold, at hours when nobody was awake, working off half a demonstration by a man who had been trying to kill me while he gave it. I got nothing. Not slow progress. Nothing. I could not find the door, and I could not find the wall the door was in. Ma Ping, in his cell, was asked and turned out to be genuinely unable to explain it either. He can do it. He has done it since he was 11, and asking him how is like asking someone how they know their own name. It takes a talent. And it is entirely possible that I do not have it. My mental strength sat at 610 and did not move. That number matters, so I will say it plainly. Everything I have that a 4th stage evolver does not is mental strength, and mine is now capped by a thing I cannot learn. And I no longer dare do the one trick that used to raise it, running myself down to 0 on purpose. Because inside these walls, every senior officer is carrying a detector, and one of them is going to be Deng Wei. 2 days later, Li Qiang sent me a number, 10,000 gene pills. 1,000 up front, out of a reserve that I know for a fact was not designed to survive that. And the remaining 9,000 paid out every 3 months for as long as the shelter exists. I read it twice and then went and sat down for a bit, 9 days into the new year, the wall started shouting. I got up there in about 40 seconds and found 200 soldiers on the parapet and Zhao Lei gripping the stone hard enough to leave marks. Out on the road, at a comfortable 400 meters, 30-odd riders sat on sled wolves in a loose line. The one in front stood up in his stirrups, held something over his head with both hands so the whole wall could see it, and shook it at us. It was a skull. Then his men tipped 4 sacks out onto the snow and rode a slow circle around what came out, whooping. Those were survivors. 9 days ago, they were people digging supply caches out of a collapsed district 6 kilometers east, and now they were an advertisement. Nobody on that wall said anything for a while. "That's Ma Long," said Zhao Lei in a completely flat voice. "Third order. About 30 men, 10 of them second order, all mounted. They've been working the eastern districts for 3 weeks. They don't raid us. They raid the people who leave us, which is the actual strategy, and it is a good one. Shaw City's ruins are full of buried supermarkets, pharmacies, warehouses. The shelter needs what is under that snow, and every scavenging party that goes out now has to decide whether the food is worth the odds. You've engaged them? Twice." Zhao Lei's jaw moved. "I cornered them once in the industrial park. Fenris runs. Fenris knows those alleys. He's faster than us, and his second orders peel off and lead you into places you shouldn't be. I lost 4 men getting nothing." Li Chang came up the steps. Fenris looked at the skulls on the road for exactly as long as he needed to, and then said, to the wall in general, 300 gene pills for Ma Long, 100 for each second order. Whoever brings them keeps the mounts and everything on the bodies. That is an enormous number. That is a number that says, I want this finished today, and I don't care what it costs. I was already looking at the riders through the gene lock. 31 men, Ma Long at the front, third order, comfortably, 10 second orders, the rest first. And underneath Ma Long, the gray sled wolf he'd been riding for 3 weeks had quietly gone third order without anybody noticing, including, from the way he was sitting on it, Ma Long. "I'll go," I said. "Take an escort," said Zhao Lei immediately. "I'll bring 20 mounted. Your wolves do about 60. "Yes." "Then you'd be an anchor." Jiang Xin, 3 meters down the parapet, opened her mouth and closed it again. I put a hand on the stone and went off the wall. It is over 10 meters. I did not use the stairs because the Shadowbane was already standing at the bottom, and because 200 soldiers were watching, and because I am not above a little theater when it is free. Ma Long was in the middle of a speech when I arrived. I know this because I could hear him from 300 meters out, telling his men about the pens he was going to build once the shelter cracked, and about how he was going to have proper roast pork again inside the year. And his men were laughing in that loud way men laugh when the boss makes a joke. I did not slow down, and I did not announce myself. The first thing that happened to Ma Long's afternoon was that one of his men came off his mount with an armor-piercing round through him, from a range at which none of them had even registered a shape on the snow. The second thing was the Shadowbane arriving. 4 of them were down before the sound of the first shot finished getting back to the wall. To his credit, and I mean this, he was the only one of them worth anything. Ma Long did not freeze and did not charge. Fenris took one look, understood the situation completely and instantly, and made the correct decision for a man like him. "Spread out! Engage him! Hold him!" And then he turned his wolf around and went. Fenris fed 26 men into a 4th-tier source beast to buy himself a lead, and he did it in under 2 seconds, without a flicker. The lead lasted about 9 minutes. Fenris ran for the alleys, because the alleys are how he has been beating Zhao Lei for 3 weeks. The industrial park, then the collapsed residential blocks, a maze of half-buried streets and blind corners where a big pursuit falls apart into small pursuits, and small pursuits die. Fenris got into them and started cutting. Left, right, doubling, through a gap between 2 fallen roofs that a mounted man had no business fitting through. Textbook, genuinely. Behind him, the Shadowbane ran at a wall, not at an opening. At the vertical brick face of a 9-story block, at full speed, and then up it, claws into the masonry, 30 meters straight up and out onto the roof. I lay flat against his neck and watched the maze turn into a diagram. From up there, Ma Long was a mouse in a shoebox. Every clever turn he made was visible 10 seconds before he made it. Fenris went left. We crossed 2 rooftops. Fenris doubled back. We cut the corner. Fenris put a collapsed factory between himself and where he thought we were, which was excellent thinking, and would have worked beautifully on anybody at ground level, under a minute. We came off a 4-story roof and landed in the mouth of the alley he was about to come out of, and the Shadowbane made a sound, not a bark. Something lower, that came up through the ground. The gray wolf under Ma Long, a 3rd-order source beast, a good one, the reason he had never been caught, locked all 4 legs, dropped its head to the snow, and stopped being a mount. It would not have moved if he had set it on fire. Ma Long came off it, hit the ground running, and went on foot. Fenris was 3rd order. Fenris made it perhaps 60 meters. I checked the wolf afterwards because it had gone down like a switch, and I wanted to know why a third-order beast folds that hard. Its teeth came out as source material. That is a bonus I had not planned for. The axe was going to want feeding. The other one got away. I want to be honest about that because it matters for what happened afterwards. While Ma Long ran west into the alleys, his second, a heavy-shouldered man named Wang Bing, went the other way, east, out of the district, onto the ice, alone, without looking back once. And about 2 kilometers out, he ran straight into his own reinforcements. 600 or 700 people. Hundreds of sled wolves. The rest of Ma Long's operation, coming across the frozen sea toward Sha City on schedule, exactly as arranged. I have been told Wang Bing started laughing when he saw them. Fenris stood up on his mount and shouted at them and pointed back the way he had come, because he had 600 people and the shelter had a wall. Then he looked over his shoulder. There was one shape on the shoreline, black and white, not moving, not coming, sitting on the ice at the edge of the land, with a man on its back, several kilometers away, watching him. Wang Bing put his whistle in his mouth and turned 600 people around. Fenris did not stop that night. Fenris did not stop the next day. Years later, when he ran the largest horde on the northern ice and had more men under him than the shelter had survivors, people would ask him why he never crossed to this continent. Fenris gave a different answer every time. The real one was a black and white shape on a shoreline, sitting perfectly still, letting him go. Li Chang was waiting at the gate with his coat over his shoulders and an expression I recognized. It was the expression of a man preparing to be gracious about a failure. 20 minutes is not enough time to catch Ma Long. 20 minutes is enough time to lose him in the alleys and come home annoyed, and Li Chang had already built the sentence he was going to say about it. I took a cloth bag off the Shadowbane's back and turned it over. 8 right ears fell out onto the snow, and every one of them still had enough source power in it to make the detectors twitch. "That's the second orders," I said. "One got away. He was already 3 kilometers out before it started. The rest are all here." Li Chang looked at the snow. Then he started laughing and put both hands on my shoulders and said, "Good. It's good to leave one alive. Let's see whether they dare come back." Zhao Lei, behind him, was doing arithmetic on his fingers and getting a number that upset him. 800 pills. In under half an hour. From a man who had told the council he did not want a position. The axe was ready 2 days later. I had given Chen Yi a broken source artifact, 4 beast cores, a fistful of teeth, and a drawing. And I had said the words, "make it bigger," in the same tone a person uses to order lunch. I want it noted that I did not tell him how much bigger. The casting room is underground, 3 floors down, and by the time I got there, it was standing room only. Every researcher in the institute, half the technical staff, soldiers along the back wall who had absolutely no business being there and who had found reasons. In the middle of the floor, on a steel cradle, was the axe, 2.1 meters from the butt of the handle to the top of the head, 1.3 meters across the blade. It weighed by Chen Yi's scale 4 times what the old one had, which put it comfortably past the point where any ordinary human being could have lifted the handle off the ground with both hands. And along all 4 faces, from the grip to the crown, there were dragons. I did not ask for dragons. "You asked for functional," said Chen Yi, radiating innocence. "It is functional. There are dragons on it. There are 4 dragons on it, and each of them is a channel, and if you would stop looking at me like that and look at the grooves, you will notice the grooves go somewhere." Zhao Lei was already at the cradle with both hands on the haft, because somebody has to test charge a source artifact, and Zhao Lei is the strongest man in that building, who is not me. Fenris had been at it, they told me, for about 6 minutes. Fenris was the color of paper. Its chief researcher, Fenris was swaying on his feet, which is not a thing Zhao Lei does. This source artifact is absorbing source power far too fast. I've put over 1,000 points into it. It isn't full, it isn't close to full. I don't think it's noticed. 1,000 source power. That is everything Zhao Lei has, twice over, and the axe had taken it the way a dry field takes rain. Chen Yi reached past him and physically moved him off the handle. "Yes, thank you. If you're not strong enough, then you're not strong enough. That's all right. That's not a moral failing. Young Wang, front please." Somebody in the crowd laughed at exactly the wrong volume, and then tried to swallow it. I got both hands on the haft and opened the gene lock. 500, nothing. 1,000, nothing. 1,500. And the grooves in the handle finally started to fill with light, cold blue, running upward in the threads. 2,000. The blue came up out of the grip and into the carvings and went along the dragons, all 4 of them, tail to head, in about a second and a half. And every eye in that room went to the blade, because the light stopped moving at the 4 heads and stayed there. And for one moment, those things did not look carved. They looked like they were watching the room. Nobody said anything. "Chief researcher," I said, "what am I hitting?" Chen Yi pointed with the enormous casualness of a man who has been planning this since Tuesday. Against the far wall was a stack of alloy plate. naval grade, salvaged, laid flat and clamped, 1 meter thick. I heard several people behind me start moving toward the exit. The thing about a strike like that is that everybody in the room has already decided what it will sound like. There is a bang coming. There is going to be a shock through the floor, and a ringing in the teeth, and half of them had their hands over their ears before I lifted it. I brought it down. There was no sound at all. That is the part I keep coming back to. Not the fact that it went through, the fact that a meter of naval alloy offered so little argument that the room got no noise out of it. The blade went through the stack the way a spoon goes, through set custard, kept going, hit the reinforced floor of an underground casting chamber, and buried itself half its own depth in that. Then, finally, a noise. The top half of the plate stack sliding off the bottom half and hitting the ground. I pulled it out. The floor had a gash in it, 3 centimeters wide and half a meter long. Silence, and then a sound out of 40 researchers that I can only describe as a room full of people being punched gently in the stomach at the same time. Young Wang? Chen Yi's voice had gone strange. What is the limit? Where does it stop? And here is where I lied to a man I like. 2 more layers at most, I said. Maybe 3. It was starting to bind. It was not starting to bind. It had not noticed the steel. I had 2,000 points in a weapon that could hold considerably more, and I had absolutely no intention of finding out where the ceiling was in a room with 40 witnesses. Because somewhere in this shelter, there is a person who reports to the Fenris family. I have known that since the day Taming described a fight he had not attended. Whatever I say in a crowded room, a 1,000-year house will hear inside a week, and when they come for me, and they will come, because 4 of their elders went onto the ice and did not come back, and because of something else they want much more than revenge. I would like them to arrive with the wrong number in their heads. Chen Yi was not listening to me anyway. Fenris had come around the cradle and was reaching out to stroke the blade with his bare hand, the way you'd touch a horse. 2 people grabbed him. It is at 2,000 points of charge. I only want to feel the grain. Chief researcher, it just went through a meter of steel, which is precisely why I want to feel the grain. They got him out of the room. I left the next morning. 1,100 gene pills came up from the vault in 3 cases. 1,100, not 1,000. Li Cheng had counted the second order who got away onto the ice as a kill anyway, on the grounds that a man who runs 600 people off a continent has technically been dealt with. The kitchen sent up a tomahawk steak the size of my forearm and a stack of potato pancakes wrapped in cloth, still warm, for the road. Somebody had tucked a strip of red plastic into the knot. Lin Gang ran the whole way from the institute and caught me at the gate. "Brother Wang! Brother Wang! Wait!" Fenris got there with his hands on his knees. "Aren't you even going to say goodbye to the chief?" The Shadowbane was already standing. Jinx was already in my hood, doing her impression of a scarf that has opinions. "No need," I said. "I'll come again." And we went out through the gate and onto the road east, past the place where the skulls had been, and I did not look back, because I had a safe house buried up to its chimney somewhere under 2 months of snow, and 2 animals in it who had been alone since October. On the wall, Zhao Lei found Li Chang standing in the wind with the wrong expression on his face. "Chief, Fenris will be back." Fenris said he'd be back. Of course he'll be back. Li Chang did not turn around. And if he doesn't come back, then we send it after him. Every 3 months, wherever he is. Somebody find out where he lives. "Chief, go and check the Eastern Post, Captain Wang." The Eastern Post was checked at. Check it again. And Zhao Lei, who is not a stupid man, went and checked the Eastern Post. 2 months ago, I rode into the east suburb of Shaw City behind a mask on a dog nobody could identify. And a security officer at a gate looked at my papers and decided I was nobody. I rode out of it with 1,100 gene pills, a weapon that opens naval armor without making a sound, the 200-year-old absorption method of a 1,000-year family broken into 20 minutes and given away for free to 11,000 people, and my own name on the thing that is going to drag this entire species up off the floor. 4 elders of the Fenris family went out onto the ice looking for a man called Wang Min and never came home, and the family still does not know his face. They will keep looking. They have to. Because 20 years ago, they lost something. And it is the only reason their house is coming apart. And they will turn over every survivor on this continent to get it back. It is sitting in a space behind my eyes, and I take it out every morning to make breakfast.